Today we're going to find out what the true limit of Apopalypse mode is in BTD5, which means I'll be enabling all of my premium upgrades, just like I did when testing deflation mode 2 weeks ago, and of course, I'll also be playing with a maxed out monkey knowledge lab, and using different specialist buildings as I need them as well. My plan is to start with the engineers building, as this gives the tower super sentries, which are very powerful, along with the level below, also giving them the ability to pop lead balloons. That way, I can start off with a couple 1-0 engineers, and focus on getting my farms up for a while, before having to buy any more defense. The beginning of Apopalypse actually starts off pretty slow because you don't earn any money at the end of rounds anymore, so it takes a little bit longer to get your farms up, but I was using double cash mode of course, which kind of negates that. Something else that makes this game mode interesting though is the fact that the balloons are actually somewhat randomized, and it's not like you can get a Moab on round 1 or something, but there is actually an element of RNG involved in Apopalypse, whereas in a normal game, every round is 100% definitively predetermined, like round 1 will always be the same no matter what. And I guess I was getting really lucky because by round 26 there still had yet to be a single camo balloon or like anything that was tougher than a white or black balloon, even though on the wiki it literally says that you can get lead balloons on round 18, so not exactly sure what's up with that honestly. But in any case, with double cash being enabled, it really didn't take me long to get my first banana factory up, and then from there it quickly multiplied into several. And with a solid income stream established now, I also started getting 4-2 balloon chippers targeted to strong in order to handle the first Moabs, which should come on round 40 instead of 46 now, at least if the wiki's actually correct there. And it looks like they were this time, so it's a good thing I prepared. And at this point, I also swapped out my engineers for an Ice Shard Arctic Wind combo, which should be able to destroy all the non-Moab class balloons. Pretty soon I'm going to get some max temples, but right now I really want to let the farms continue cooking up tons of money, and that way I'll be able to afford a map full of balloon chippers with max temples, which is how I plan to get as far as possible. The first ZOMGs come out on round 60 instead of 85 now, and yes, that was plural, but they were simply no match for the most broken tower in BTD history. And pretty soon, I had over $5.5 million saved up, so I paused the game and quit in order to save it, which is the only way you can actually keep the next round from automatically starting in Apopalypse mode. And then, I set up my super monkeys in a way that's meant to maximize the amount of temples I can fit, but I'm sure I didn't do the best job at that. Still though, I had enough space for 12 of them, and I can't believe I never realized that the Glue Gunner and Super Monkey have the exact same range as 0-0 towers. I don't really know if that matters, but it's kind of funny regardless. Pretty soon though, I had my 12 temples ready, and I was planning to also get the balloon chippers now, but I considered the fact that they will make each round take a lot longer, so instead, I'm gonna let the temples make it as far as possible, and once they lose, I'll save and quit the game again, enable the balloon chipper specialist building, and then upgrade the 0-0s into 4-2s, along with filling up the rest of the map with them as well. I also replaced some of the farms I had sold before, and it wasn't long before I had even more money saved up than the $5.5 million that you had seen earlier, and the crazy thing is that so far, it really doesn't seem like the balloons are making it any further than they were over 20 rounds ago, so I'm thinking these temples should hold up for a while. Now I figured I would include some sped up footage of the gameplay, but I'm not planning to record the entire game because that would probably take up like 50 or 100 gigabytes of storage. When I went to around 1000 on easy mode, it took at least 36 hours of gameplay, and I'm not expecting to make it as far this time, but still, it would be quite a huge file, and I'm already working on another video that's going to have something like 20 or 30 hours of raw footage itself that I'm required to record all of, so yeah, I hope you can understand. And I definitely will still record big sections of gameplay like the one that you're watching now. Eventually I came back to my computer to see the temples had finally failed on round 226, which is pretty insane considering I wasn't even using the Call to Arms ability, and from what I understand, free play actually starts on round 40 in the Steam version of Apopalypse, so the balloons have been getting faster and stronger for a long time. But now it's time to get some balloon chippers, and I'm not going to fill the entire map yet, because getting even this many of them should be enough to take us much further than before. In fact, I'll start the game with barely any of them even upgraded, and already you can see there is a massive difference. Once I had every chipper upgraded, I quit out of the game to switch over to the chipper specialist building, and now it's time to see just how far this amount of defense is capable of going. Something I just noticed is that it really seems like I'm earning the normal amount of cash from popping balloons still, despite the fact that I'm well past round 100, which is really interesting because that means Apopalypse doesn't have the normal feature where pops become less and less valuable the further that you make it. I'm pretty sure it's like 2% once you get past round 100. Now according to the wiki, this is also true with XP as well, which normally is earned a lot more slowly during free play mode. But regardless of all that, it really is insane just how much of a difference these balloon chippers are making, and it's literally like that meme game, what would win? A literal sun god that has consumed the power of countless other towers, or an oversized wood chipper? And I've seen someone mention this in a comment before, but BTD5 late game footage always looks really funny because of this tower as well, with the balloons just endlessly getting tossed around and somehow fitting inside a funnel that's several times too small for them. Now, if you've been paying attention to the RBE, you might notice how gradually it's been increasing. It's taken like 250 rounds just to go from being around 550,000 up to just over 700,000. But there is something I haven't told you guys yet. You see, when you start getting into the higher 300s, things start to get a little weird. It only takes 16 more rounds to go up by another 170,000 RBE, and at this point, things really start to break down. By round 388, the RBE hits the 1 million mark, which becomes 1.5 million just 6 rounds later. And this is where the game is getting close to its true breaking point, as by round 397, you're up to 2.4 million. This number jumps by a full million the next round, and then by a whopping 2.9 million on round 399. At this point, you can probably imagine what's going to happen next. The game attempts to give round 400 an RBE of over 10 million, but it wasn't designed to handle such a high number, as normal free play never reaches an RBE of 10 million, and thus, the game literally just crashes. So it turns out, the limit of Apopalypse is actually determined simply by the coding of the game itself, and whether or not that was intentional, I really have no idea, but I would imagine it was, considering that this also happens on the Flash version, and it would make sense that at the time, Ninja Kiwi didn't really expect anyone to actually make it this far, because both the Bloons Chipper and Monkey Knowledge Lab did not exist yet. But there are still videos of people pulling it off back then. And the weird thing is it actually happens differently on the Flash version, because the game does freeze for a while on round 400 still, but instead of fully shutting down, eventually it actually unfreezes and then you're able to start round 401, and then once you've beaten that round, no more balloons end up coming, so I'm not sure if the RBE just thinks it should be 0 and it doesn't know to send anything or what's happening, because you'll notice that the RBE is already an extremely small number on round 400, but if you happen to know anything about it, please do let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, I think you'd also enjoy the video on screen now. I actually attempted to farm 100,000 bananas in just 1 hour of real time, so I know it's a little bit different for a BTD video, but give it a try and I promise you'll enjoy it. Just for a second, try to imagine being one of the monkeys in Bloons Tower Defense. No matter what you do, there is no escaping from the forever war against the Bloon army, and just to top it off, every time you try farming some bananas to enjoy for yourself, they're forcibly taken away from you as a means of raising even more money for a war you never asked to be a part of. Now, I don't mean to be so political, but I am the mayor of a bustling Bloons monkey city, so it's kinda my job. And I say, it's time to end monkey suffering once and for all. Well, at least in BTD5 anyways. Y'all in the 6th game got a whole 3rd dimension added, you don't need my help, okay? But as you would imagine, the rules to this challenge are pretty simple. I have 1 hour to farm as many bananas as I possibly can, and I have to use actual banana farms to do this, so I can't use the sniper supply crate for example. I also have to farm them all in a single game, and I can't use fast track mode to skip the early rounds either. One last thing, I won't be using any premium upgrades, so that means no double cash to make things easy because that'd be kinda boring. And if you want to try this in BTD6, any monkey knowledge you have is 100% allowed. I have the BTD5 equivalent of my monkey lab maxed out, which is definitely going to help me. And if you do end up enjoying the video, definitely consider subscribing because it genuinely helps the channel a lot. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is enable the Monkey Engineer special disc building, because that tower is already incredibly powerful in the early game, and now it will also get super sentries which are stronger than normal and can pop lead balloons as well. For once, I'm actually skipping right over the map express shipping and instead going with an advanced one, which is probably a bit risky, but this particular map, at least I believe, allows you to place more farms than any other in the game. Fittingly, it's literally named Cash Money, so I believe that was fully intentional by Ninja Kiwi as well. Now I am going to be playing on easy mode, and my plan is to start with a 0-0 engineer on each entrance, and I'm using the same timing rules as the BTD5 speedrunning community, so the timer officially begins when I start round 1. I also made sure auto start is disabled, because it's actually quicker to begin the round yourself by using the spacebar. With that being said, we're ready to go, and I'm actually going to start the timer first, and wait for it to hit 10 seconds before beginning the round, so I'll technically be stopping when the timer hits 1 hour and 10 seconds, but 3, 2, 1, boom, let's go. First off, I've got to get both engineers up to a 1-0 as quickly as possible, because that should be enough to hold off the balloons for a bit while I farm. Specifically, I'm going to go for 2-0 farms first, because they're the second most efficient farm for their price, behind the 4-2. Speaking of which, the banana factory is interesting because it produces crates instead of regular bunches, and they're worth 10 times as much, so I think it's fair to assume they also contain 10 bunches of bananas each. Before I can think about getting my first factory though, I'm actually going to get a couple ninja monkeys before the first camo balloon comes out on round 24. Obviously I could afford to leak it, but that would waste a few seconds, and I'm going to need camo detection anyway, so might as well take care of it now. After that, I really got to work on growing my farms, and eventually I was able to afford my first factory, and I did buy the valuable bananas upgrade on it, but even though that makes each crate worth 600 instead of 400, that doesn't mean each crate now has 15 bunches of bananas. It's just that each bunch is more valuable than before, so it's 10 more valuable bunches. And I know the title of this video is Can You Farm 100,000 Bananas, but really I am trying to get 100,000 bunches of bananas, which is probably like, what, 300,000 or 400,000 individual bananas? But like, can you imagine how lame that would be if I actually counted it that way? I'm like, I'm gonna farm 100,000 bananas, guys, but each bunch is 4 bananas, so it's really 25,000 bunches, and then I just kept on making excuses, and it was just, yeah, no. But in any case, it didn't take very long to beat easy mode, which means I'm now technically entering free play, but the next 35 rounds are still going to be normal at least. It's not until you get past round 85 that the true free play chaos begins, with dozens or even hundreds of 0MGs. On round 58, I did buy a 2-4 ninja because I remembered that the next round is camo lead balloons, and then I had the idea that if I could just get a max tempo really quick, it would be easy enough to fill the rest of the map with farms and probably not have to worry about getting much more defense for most of the run. So that's what I did. Even though there has to be more efficient ways to defend than this, like, you really don't need a max tempo yet, and I was clearly wasting some time just trying to set it up, but alas, once I did finally have it, I was able to fill the rest of the map with banana factories and position some banana farmers to make sure none of the crates got missed. So at this point, I have 44 factories, and let's do a bit of simple math on that. Each crate contains 10 bunches of bananas like we said, and a factory produces 5 crates per round. So that's 50 bunches of bananas per factory per round. Multiply that by 44, and you'll find that every single round right now, I am farming 2,200 bunches of bananas. That's a total market value of $132,000. So needless to say, these monkeys are about to be certified ballers. In order to supplement the temple, I did start finding places I could fit technological terrors in as well, and I also got some balloon sabotage ninjas. With the speed ramping that occurs in free play mode, having a slowdown that works on ZMGs is probably going to be pretty useful, but keep in mind, I've already said that I thought getting a max tempo would basically be enough defense for the whole run, so I figured adding all this extra defense in addition to that would surely allow me to just chill out for the next 40-ish minutes, and that would be it. I mean, yeah, I'll have to be here to start each round and use the abilities when they're needed, but surely that will be the extent of it. To be fair though, at this point, each round is already starting to take nearly a minute to complete, so it's not like I'm guaranteed to hit my goal exactly. Now, I do just want to say really quick, if you didn't know, I do actually have channel membership set up, and you can also use code PHENOM in the BTD5 and Bloons Card Storm shops in order to help support the channel. But of course, if you don't want to do that, engaging with the video also helps me a ton. Now, as far as the challenge goes, I have to say I was really caught off guard by the sheer power of the balloons by around the 35-minute mark. I guess I just really thought that on easy difficulty, the free play ramping wouldn't be so intense. So I did the unthinkable, and sold 3 of my farms to get more tech terrors, but I think straight up losing because I didn't have enough defense would probably be a lot worse. And it's not like I'm 58 minutes into the run or something either, where I could actually justify trying to hold out until the end. All this extra defense really did make a difference as well, and I also realized it was pretty dumb of me not to fill these 2 water areas with 2-4 monkey subs, since they have a special ability that can one-shot ZOMGs. Well, maybe not the free play ZOMGs with extra health, but still. I also did sell 3 more farms to get even more tech terrors, so now I'm down to just 38 factories or 1,900 bunches of bananas every round. So I think I really do have to try to play smart here and clear out the end of each round as quickly as I can in order to save a few seconds each time. Obviously, you can't make most of the round any quicker because there are always going to be more balloons to come, but once you're on the last wave, you can certainly try clearing that one out as soon as possible. I feel like this was allowing me to get the rounds done more quickly, but then a series of unfortunate events occurred. Okay, well, two unfortunate events occurred. First, my laptop battery warned me it was low, which should be no big deal, right? I just used my foot to get the cord up to me so I could plug it in without actually having to take both hands off the keyboard, and wow, that sounds really sad when I say it out loud. But yeah, point being, it shouldn't have been a big deal, until I realized it also froze my timer. Now, I was using live split, which has been buggy for me in the past, so I don't know what to say. I guess I have myself to blame. So I decided from here on out that I would just time it with OBS, but I had already wasted a bit of time pausing the game. And speaking of the game, it decided to freeze basically immediately afterwards, so yeah. I definitely lost some time there. But despite my annoyance, I soldiered on with the run, and wouldn't you know it, within the last few minutes, my defense was already struggling again. This time I did want to try to hold out until I hit the 1 hour mark, and I thought I was going to make it, but nope, I think that was just over a minute shy. It's hard to tell because I was already recording with OBS for over a minute before I began the run, but when I looked in CapCut, it was like exactly 59 minutes of gameplay, so I lost one round at the end and probably at least one more with the other shenanigans. But now, the big question. Did I successfully farm 100,000 bunches of bananas? Well, I had 19 factories by the start of round 63, and none of them were sold the whole time, so keeping in mind I beat round 149 before losing, that's 87 full rounds where I was getting at least 950 bunches per round, and we're gonna get to the rest of the factories, but that's already 82,650 bunches. By the start of round 84, I had my peak of 44 factories, which lasted until the end of round 119 when I had to sell a few off. So you subtract the 19 I've already accounted for the entire time, and you get 25 factories times 33 rounds for another 41,250 bunches. Of course, once I sold 6 farms, I survived for another 27 rounds, which means you can subtract the 19 accounted for factories from 38 total this time, and multiply 27 rounds by 19 factories to get an additional 25,650. This brings our grand total up to a pretty solid 149,550 bunches of bananas. Of course, there's also a ton I didn't even bother counting, like I had 41 factories by round 78 and had just forgotten to get the last 3 for a few rounds. Also, there's literally the entire beginning that would be a lot more difficult to calculate, but surely the number is a good bit higher than that 149,000 figure. So the answer to the title question is yes, you can certainly farm 100,000 bananas, or even 100,000 bunches of them in just 1 hour. And if you were more optimal than me, I'm sure the limit is far beyond what I managed to reach here. But hey, at least my monkeys are going to be eating good for a while now, and they certainly deserve it considering everything I've put them through in some of my previous challenges. Beating CHIMPS mode in BTD5 is going to be the hardest challenge I ever attempt on this channel. In fact, I've already failed it once a few months back. If you don't know, CHIMPS is a game mode in BTD6 that doesn't allow you to generate income, lose any lives, sell your towers, or use any of your powers and monkey knowledge. Now I know you might be thinking, well H-Bomb just beat every BTD game on CHIMPS, and that was really impressive, but there is one big difference. Since he played on the Flash version of BTD5, the highest difficulty available was hard mode, whereas on Steam, we have Impoppable. This makes the balloons faster than on hard mode, towers are more expensive, ceramic balloons have 50% more health than normal, which I didn't even know until today, Moab class balloons have double health, which is definitely the worst part, and you have to face 5 ZOMGs instead of just 1 on the final round. Since I'm not allowed to use any monkey knowledge, I have to disable all of my monkey lab upgrades, and I can't use any specialist buildings either. Now of course I am going to be playing on the longest map in the game, Express Shipping. On round 1, I'll start with the 0-2 Dart Monkey, since that's all that I can afford now that I don't have the starting cash bonus from my monkey lab. You can see it's already starting to struggle against the blue balloons, but thankfully it didn't take long to afford the triple dart upgrade, which is one of the most cost efficient things in the entire game. I'm going to try saving up for a Dartling Gunner now, because I really think that it is by far the best 0-0 tower in the entire game. It has global range, decent pierce, and a really high fire rate right off the bat, not to mention that I can immediately see camo balloons as well. Once I was able to afford it, I had to settle on a spot, and I went with this corner back here, where the Dartling can fire down 2 different paths, and also can help the Dart Monkey out in the meantime. I'm also going to get a couple more 0-0 Dartlings before doing anything else, but I also got to get a bomb tower for the lead balloons on round 28. I'm planning on upgrading this into a Moab Mauler soon, because I'm hoping that will be the most effective way to deal with the double HP Moab on round 46. But in the meantime, I've been managing to get by with pretty minimal defense, which is allowing me to actually save up a bit of money, and I might want to consider using a village to get a 10% discount on whatever I buy next. Since it costs $1,920 and you can never sell it under the CHIMPS rules set, you'd have to be able to spend $19,200 on defense within the range of the village just to break even, but if I invest early enough, that should be possible, and I can also upgrade the village later on to make the other towers more powerful as well. So I bought a village next to my Dartling Gunners so they'd be within range of it, and then I began upgrading them into 1-1 towers, but I also still gotta get that Moab Mauler I was planning on as well. But I went for the risky play of getting a second village up in that corner first, and I was still able to afford 2 of the Maulers, but I really feel like the Dartling Gunners actually did more of the work on that Moab here, honestly. Since I have so many of them over here now, I might as well upgrade the village to a monkey fort so that I can improve their pierce. And since I also have so much money saved up already, I'm gonna go for the next part of my plan a bit early and get a 3-2 and 2-3 ice tower combo so that no regular balloons will ever be able to pass by again. Eventually I will have to upgrade this village up here to an MIB so that they can pop all balloon types, but for now I should be good. Here comes the first BFB on round 60, and I knew this was going to be the true test because obviously double health on a BFB is very different than on just a Moab, but I was very surprised at how easily it actually went down, and this is a very good sign for my chances of beating this. The round 63 packed ceramics would normally be a problem, but since I have the ice tower so early, it's just a free money round now. The end of round 65 has a few Moabs and BFBs though, which was definitely a bit tougher for my defense. I do have a good bit of money to work with though. I'm just kinda hesitant to spend it because I know I can't sell anything since I am playing under the CHIMPS rule set. Well, these camo balloons are starting to get a bit out of hand, and my Dartling Gunners are currently the only thing I have that can detect them, so I might as well upgrade this village to an MIB now, since I was gonna need that soon anyways, and then of course the camo detection allows all the other towers up here to destroy the rest of the balloons. I also got the faster spin barrel upgrade for all my Dartling Gunners, since I was really still skeptical that they were doing more work than all my Moab Maulers. But all the BFBs on round 77 showed me that I might be wrong about that, because they were making it really far, so I also invested in some more Moab Maulers after all. This combination of defense was doing surprisingly well in the very late game, with the ice towers handling all the balloons up to ceramics, including the 500 camo regrow rainbow balloons on round 82, thanks to being in the range of an MIB of course. And then the Dartling Gunners and Moab Maulers were working well together to tear down all the Moabs and BFBs. I started buying Moab Assassin abilities at the very end because they come back pretty quickly, and this is a long map, and I also really think I'm going to need them specifically against the ZOMGs. Now round 84 is going down really well, which is definitely a good sign considering that it has 10 BFBs and 50 Moabs, but just like I thought, the double health ZOMGs on round 85 are a whole different beast entirely. They kept on tanking so much damage, and I really had to focus on just popping one at a time. I was definitely starting to make some progress though, but I also had to slow down the game and kind of take my Dartling Gunners off of them so that I could make sure that no regular balloons slipped by. I guess I should have had my ice towers at the end of the track instead of the beginning. Eventually I was able to pop the last ZOMG, but with how intense things were getting, I definitely knew I could lose at any moment. So I went and bought more of the Moab Assassin abilities when I could afford them, and I kept on using them as much as I could. I got worried when a Moab was making it this far because all it would have to do is slip by the Dartling Gunners, but thankfully they were putting out enough damage to destroy it at this point. Now I just have to destroy these last 4 BFBs, and this is the last loop, so if they make it any further, it could definitely be dangerous. The Moabs are going to make some real progress, but I have enough abilities left to destroy them, and I even had enough abilities to use some of these balloons at the end, so rather anticlimactically, I'm actually going to beat CHIMPS on my first try. I guess I should have realized I've gotten better at this game in the last few months, but still, I really did not expect it to go this well, honestly. I'm giving myself 4 days to make this video, and I'm still not sure that's enough time because I'm going to see just how far I can go in Bloons Tower Defense 5 until my laptop gives up or the balloons finally make it past my defense. And from what I can tell, this number could be pretty ridiculous. I'm also going to allow myself to use premium upgrades because the goal for this challenge is to make it the absolute furthest that I can with 0 restrictions. Thankfully, I have my monkey lab completely maxed out as well. Now for the beginning, I'm going to use the engineer specialist building because this will allow me to farm a ton in the early game. Then I'm just going to pick the longest map in the game, the ironically named Express Shipping, and play it on easy mode. This will make it so that the balloons move slower, which will allow me to go even further into free play. By round 20, the farming was already going quite well, and by round 29, I was generating an extra $126,000 per round, which would basically be enough to afford a max temple every other round. By the time I had beaten easy mode on round 50, I already had nearly $3 million saved up, along with 5,000 lives thanks to enabling the premium upgrade Healthy Bananas, which gives you an extra life per banana farm along with per upgrade, so each farm is giving 7 extra lives per round now as well. Pretty soon after, I began working on setting up my first temple, but you gotta place so many towers it's kinda hard to fit them all down. Eventually I made it work though, and I figured it was time to switch to the Super Monkey Specialist building as well, since they were going to be my primary, or really my only defense for a while. This will give every temple an activated ability that makes it attack at hyperspeed for a short time, which will definitely come in handy later potentially. I let the temple go on its own and came back to see that it had failed on round 141, but of course I wasn't there to use the ability, nor was there anything around it like a village to make it stronger. I also had 15 million saved up now, but I actually had lost quite a few lives, which is funny to say when you're still over 2,000, but now I was going to have to set up the rest of my temples, and I know my placings are far from being the best possible, but I tried to fit as many super monkeys as I could, and of course, I won't upgrade the range until I've already turned them into a temple, that way I can fit the most possible on the map. Well, that's one down, just 6 more to go. When I was finally done, I ended up with 11 temples instead of just 8, and I still think you could probably get at least one more, but this map is a bit tricky because spots like this just don't work thanks to the track being the way that it is. After I had built the temples though, I started replacing as many farms as I could. Not that I really need the money, but I figured if I'm breaking everything else, the economy might as well join in, right? I wanted to see just how far 11 temples can go on their own, and even at round 250 it wasn't looking too terrible yet. The Moabs are definitely moving a lot faster than I've ever seen before, and it's pretty funny to watch, but without any stalling or anything else to assist the temples, they're still holding their own even into this late game. But as the balloons kept on getting faster and stronger, I knew it was about time to make a decision. Should I go for the highest damage per second possible, or try to slow down the balloons for as long as possible? Then I thought about something else. With their specialist building enabled, the balloon chipper can also daze balloons briefly once they've been released, allowing even more time to damage them. With how fast Moab class balloons are moving now, I think that this might be the play. I sold all my farms to make room for the chippers, while being very careful not to accidentally click on a tempo, cause that would really suck. Now, there is only one thing left to do. Fill the map with these 4-2 chippers, making sure to target them to strong so they can go for the ZOMGs first. To see how good the chippers really are though, I started off with just a decent amount of them, but certainly far from filling the whole map. This already did a great job of holding off every balloon, although the lag is definitely going to start to become more intense with this method, so that will slow things down and make it take even longer. At round 367, the chippers were still going strong without me having to do anything. And just for a reference of how long this is actually starting to take, it's been an hour and 42 minutes since I hit round 300. I'm sorry that I haven't been including a ton of footage, but since I have to run this for such a long amount of time and I'm using my main laptop, I keep the screen dimmed with it in front of a real fan while also being on top of a cooling pad. That's probably overkill, but we are talking potentially 10 or 20 more hours of, well, this. But pretty soon after, I came back to see that the defense had failed on round 380, so I guess it's finally time to build a ton more balloon chippers, which I can't lie, I've been dreading because it's very repetitive. It's a little bit annoying when you're just spamming the hotkeys, starts to make my arm a little bit sore. Maybe that's not a good thing, but you can tell that like there's not exactly a small amount of them here. But at long last, after making sure that every single one of my chippers was set to strong, I think I am finally ready to keep it going. I checked back in after about half an hour to see this beautiful mess. The game is definitely lagging a lot more now, so only 13 rounds went by in that time. You can tell that things are going to get really crazy when every single chipper is having to work, but I'll probably just run it overnight and hope I don't wake up to my laptop exploding or something. I fell asleep without putting my laptop on the charger though, which I realized when I woke up at 3 AM, so I lost about 3 hours, but still, I woke back up at 9 AM to see I was now past round 600, and I think with all the lag, these rounds are starting to take about twice as long as they were before, even when I had a smaller amount of balloon chippers. Later on, we finally got past round 700, and keep in mind, it's taken almost 6 hours to get here from the round 600 footage that I just showed you. I think I might have underestimated my laptop though, because here I am playing Bloons Monkey City while on round 748, and it's running in the background as I record on OBS as well. Now here we are past round 800, and the game has been running for nearly 36 hours at this point, and so it's starting to feel a little ridiculous, I can't lie. When I checked in around 6 AM of the third day, I saw that the rounds were really starting to become difficult. the ZOMG appears to be making it quite far now. But a while later, I was really happy to see that I still haven't lost yet, because there is something I've wanted to achieve, which is something that I never thought I'd actually do. Round 1000 in BTD5. As a kid, I couldn't even dream of having a computer that could handle this. Plus, we didn't have the Bloons shipper available in the Flash version, so there is that as well. This is what the end of each round looks like now, by the way, and it's just crazy to think about how much health these mobs must have because they're tanking a ton of hits from the Bloons shippers. I was kinda sad to come back and see that I had failed on round 966 though, just 34 rounds short of the goal. So I retried from the same round, hoping to get better RNG that would let me go further, and with a bit of luck I did get to round 967, but there are so many ZOMGs, I don't think I'll be able to survive this round as well. Well, this is the first time I've seen a bit of lag even without me having fast forward on. I'm sure OBS is contributing, but still, sheesh bruh. But here is round 967 getting defeated as well. I'm going to run the game without fast forward because I've heard that makes your towers a bit more accurate, and I'll see if that really makes a difference. This of course is making it take even longer to get through each round, and you might be wondering why don't I just start using abilities instead? Well, I'm going to show you guys in just a minute. But here's round 987, so I guess this idea really is working because before I failed twice in a row in the 960s. Eventually I came back to see I had died on round 988 now, so close yet so far, I can't give up just yet. But without changing anything on the next try, my defense did manage to make it past this round, so RNG is definitely a huge factor right now. Here's round 992, which is just absolute chaos as you'd imagine, and it looks like I did bleed a couple hundred lives somewhere as well. Eventually, I was finally on round 999, about 6 hours after I made it to round 967 before. I think this is going to be it, and yes, let's go! Round 1000 without using any special abilities. As far as I know, this is pretty close to the limit of how far you can actually go without using any special abilities in the game, but here's the part you guys have been waiting for. While I was making this video, I figured I should see if anyone's gone further than me and how far they actually went before I invest all this time, only to discover that somebody has exceeded round 2,700, which is far beyond what I imagined possible, and they also used a strategy that I really didn't think would have been worth it. If you want to see exactly how they did it, I highly recommend watching their video, but essentially, they went way further than I did by using special abilities earlier, so technically they didn't get to even round 1000 without using special abilities. So that's how this video sort of became a two-part thing, with me seeking to find if you can get to round 1000 without using special abilities, along with finding a video of somebody who has gone far beyond that while using them and doing something really cool in the process. They played the game for over 300 hours as well, so huge respect to the guy. I'm going to be linking his video in the description and the pinned comments below. If he ends up commenting on the video, I'll pin that comment instead, but that really is all there is to say about the subject. I believe at least you could probably go a bit further by replacing some of the balloon shippers with super monkeys, but I do have to get this video out today. It's already Saturday as I'm filming this, and unfortunately each round is taking like 5 or more minutes, so if you want to test any further, certainly be my guest, but I really don't think it's going to make the difference you think it will, because at this point you're just relying on the balloon shippers to stall them. But I did get to round 1009 once I let it run, so that is my record at least. 2 weeks ago, I tested just how far I could go in Bloons TD5 without using any special abilities, and it took me 36 hours of running the game non-stop to reach round 1000. So you'd probably think I popped something like 1 billion Bloons during that whole thing, because 36 hours in real life is like, what, 10 years in the Bloons verse? But the truth is, I only managed to level up a single time, going from rank 78 to 79. And that matters quite a lot, because the only way to gain XP in this game is to literally pop Bloons. But there's a really good reason why this happened. This Sun God is probably doing 100, 200 damage per second to the ZOMG, and over the course of its run around the track, it'll do thousands of damage to its outer layer. But because of the fact it never pops it, it gets 0 pops for this. This is not Bloons Tower Defense 6 where your towers get their damage tracked. Instead, you have to pop the entire balloon, and that layer counts as just one single pop. So in order to maximize the number of pops we're getting, we want to avoid Moab class balloons entirely. So free play mode is kind of the opposite of that goal, considering it has a ton of ZOMGs, and as you get further into free play, they keep on needing more and more damage to pop as well, so that just makes the effect even worse. Here's an example of it in action. Normally, when you have the Monkey Lab upgrade called Big Bloons Sabotage maxed out, out, a balloon shipper can pop a Moab in one hit. But if you're on something like, say, round 393, it's now taking dozens of hits for each Moab to be popped. They're getting juggled around endlessly before the round can end, which is part of why it actually took so long to do this challenge. So if going to round 1000 isn't enough, what can I do to maximize the amount of balloon carnage that's possible? Well, I certainly don't plan on playing the game normally. Instead, I'll be choosing a special mission that's called Wizard Lord because it'll allow me to do something pretty, well, special. But first I just have to play it up until round 24. I also turned on the Dart Monkey special this building because I'm mainly going to be spamming down triple darts. That's because the 4/4 Wizard Lord in the center will sacrifice your most expensive tower every other round, so this just makes things easier. On round 22 I used the Phoenix ability to make sure the BFB wouldn't take me out, and then on round 23 I turned off auto start in order to give myself a chance to prepare. First, I have to turn off all my Monkey Lab upgrades that make the tower stronger because that will actually ruin the setup. Honestly, I'm just a paranoid person, so I turned off all of them besides sell price because I'm actually going to need that soon. And the reason why is because the next step is to sell all my Dart Monkeys. And then the next thing I have to do is set up a few different towers, and if you've ever gone for the Steely achievement in this game, you probably already know what I'm doing. I certainly didn't invent this strategy, and I'll link the video I followed in the description below. But normally, people only let this run for an hour or two because that's all it takes to earn the Steely achievement when you're using this strategy. However, I'm not planning to stop it after that, no. I'm going to be running this for the next 24 hours in order to see how many balloons I can pop in that time, how many levels I can gain, and also, I want to see if 24 hours is enough time to pop more balloons than I have in my entire playtime on this game, which is 270 hours. And fittingly, in that time, I've popped 270 million balloons. And if you're wondering what this strategy does, it just takes advantage of the fact that round 24 in this special mission has all regrow lead balloons, and at first the 4/4 wizard is blowing a ton of them back, which allows them to get glued and then makes them move so slowly that they regrow into a lead. Then they're either blown back again or they travel down one of these two paths, but eventually all the balloons filter to the right path for whatever reason, and that's when you can sell your two towers on the left and buy a Ray of Doom because you want to use that to reduce lag. It will of course shred all of the balloons instantly that make it past a certain point, while you can continue the regrow farm behind it. And if you're wondering just how effective this is, well, it looks like the Ray of Doom is popping about 1,000 balloons a second in fast forward mode, and that doesn't include anything that the other towers might be popping as well. Now really quick, I just wanted to let you guys know that I actually have a creator code in BTD6. I never really mention it, but if you use code PHENOM, you can actually support me. It will be no extra cost to you, and I'm not expecting anyone to go make purchases in the game to do this, but if you're gonna buy Monkey Money or something else anyways, it would definitely help me. After 10 minutes, my Dartling Gunner had popped over 500,000 balloons, which is more like 830 a second, but still not too far from 1,000. But what I didn't expect is that the Wizard has also popped another 300,000, and the Boomerang isn't far behind. That actually puts us much closer to 2,000 a second. But here's the most unexpected part of all. The Ice Tower is already sitting with over 1 million pops, which is the same as all the other towers combined. But then I accidentally moved my Dartling Gunner up for a second and it completely destroyed the setup, so I had to start it over. Thankfully it was only 10 minutes though. This time around I put the Dartling Gunner a little bit higher up, trying to reduce lag, and this allowed it to become the star of the show instead of the Ice because it popped 4.8 million balloons in the first hour. Additionally, I did get another 800,000 out of the Glaive Lord, almost 2.8 million on the Ice this time, and I'm going to carefully check the Wizard so I don't ruin it again. That has another 1.7 million, wow. That puts us at a total of just over 10 million balloons in the first hour, which works out to around 2,800 a second. But I feel like we were actually getting better rates before. So I checked back after another hour to see if there's somehow a diminishing rate of returns the longer that it runs for, and I noticed that now it seems like the Ice is somehow catching up to the Ray of Doom, but also my total pops are just under 21 million, so it's not that there's a rate of diminishing returns, but that my 10-minute test was actually more successful. So I'm going to try moving my Dartling Gunner down here so that it can pop some balloons and reduce lag while still allowing some of them to reach the Ice and Glaive Lord, just like we kind of had going on before during that 10-minute test when I got the best results. And I'm going to let this run for another 2 hours and see how it compares to the first 2 hours we've been testing for. So now it's been 4 hours and my total pops are at 43.4 million. If you subtract the 20.8 million for the first 2 hours, that leaves me with 22.6 million for the second 2. That means I was popping about 900,000 more balloons an hour than before, although I'm not sure how much of that is just from margin of error, because keep in mind even a 1% margin of error at this point could be around 100,000 balloons on its own. But 1% of an hour is still 36 seconds, and I really doubt I was off by more than maybe 30 seconds, so I would say 900,000 is substantial enough to call that a pretty big difference. I did another hour-long test where I thought I'd move the Dartling gunner even further to the right, but I should have reviewed my footage because I definitely did not when I looked back, and this actually resulted in me getting only 11.1 million pops in that hour, which is actually a little bit less, and if you multiply that number by 24, it comes out to 266.4 million pops in 24 hours, which is actually just shy of my 270 million goal. So instead of running this for another 19 hours just for it to barely fail, I'm going to look for some more ways to optimize my hourly rate first. The first thing I really want to try is buying corrosive glue for the glue gunner, because that might allow me to increase the total number of balloons that's being produced, and if it doesn't cause too much lag, that'll end up paying off. I'm going to keep everything else the same though, so that I have some level of control factor, which includes shooting this Dartling gunner straight down the path like I was in the beginning. When I checked back in, I was disappointed to see this actually cut my production nearly in half, only popping 6 million balloons in an hour. The next thing I wanted to try is allowing the balloons to travel further before they end up getting popped by the Ray of Doom, but this could also increase the lag, so let's see if it can actually increase my overall rate of production. I tried to keep the Dartling in a spot where it could pop some of the balloons, and that could therefore keep the lag reduced, while also allowing some to pass through and regrow. But this too proved to be futile, as I popped less than 7 million balloons after 1 hour, nowhere close to the 11 plus million I was getting before. So I went back to the old strategy, hoping I could find a more optimal Dartling gunner placement in the process. I looked for a spot where I could let the balloons grow as long as possible, without allowing the game to get too laggy. With this setup, I managed to pop a little over 11.3 million balloons, which is about on par with the best rate I was getting before, so I'm definitely not disappointed, but maybe it's time I stopped being so afraid of the lag after all. So I figured I would just try running it without the Dartling gunner at all, because the entire point of that is to reduce the amount of lag you experience by instantly destroying balloons after a certain point. Now this allowed me to just barely surpass 12 million pops in 1 hour, which is my best rate ever. I'm guessing that the old strategy was optimized for the Flash version, which would have been a lot more laggy than the Steam version we have today, not to mention that computers have also gotten a lot more powerful as well, especially personal computers. So this got me wondering, what would happen if I just moved the Ice Tower and Boomerang Tower lower to allow even more balloons to be produced? I came back to see this pushed me above 12.7 million for 1 hour, which is definitely enough of a difference for me to say that any marginal timing errors are definitely not causing this result. But I feel like using the special mission is going to cap me around 13 million an hour, and there is still one thing I haven't tried, which is just regular regen farming. In order to test it out, I chose the map Express Shipping because it's the longest in the game, along with choosing easy mode, because balloons move slowest on that difficulty. I'm hoping these two factors together will let me create a way larger regrow farm than I was before. I played normally until round 42, because this round has something special. It starts off with 6 rainbow regrow balloons, which you can use to then make a really big regrow farm that actually has 1 extra layer to pop compared to the lead balloon regrow farm that I was using before. I figured I would include a few clips of me getting up to round 42, but I know that isn't exactly the most thrilling thing to watch. One thing I do want to mention though, is that I actually turned back on my Monkey Lab upgrades, because that isn't going to matter, and in fact, it should allow this particular setup to be faster. That's because I'm going to be using a 3-0 wizard to begin blowing back the rainbow regen balloons, and you can see that they go far enough to actually have enough time to regrow. So having a higher attack speed on both the lightning and tornadoes will allow for more balloons to be produced. I will also be using the Ray of Doom to pop balloons near the end, which again shouldn't matter this time, because I have so much track to work with now, I can produce probably millions of balloons. I thought this method was going to allow for a ridiculous amount of regen balloons, well, based on what I just said you could tell that, but after 1 hour, the Dartling gunner hadn't quite popped 10 million. It was really hard to check the wizard monkey without letting a bunch of balloons leak and accidentally losing, but yeah, that's only at 300k, so we actually did worse than before? Well, let's just try it with 9 wizards instead. Oh yeah, I guess it was pretty dumb to place them all down at once because of course they're just going to destroy all the balloons instead of letting them regrow. So I started off with a couple ice shards and an arctic wind under a 2-3 village in order to pop everything while I'm slowly placing the wizards, because if I tried to do this with the Ray of Doom, I would just end up losing or destroying the setup. But once all my wizards are in place, I am going to sell the ice and replace it with the Ray of Doom, because as you can see, every time the ice shards work, they cause a huge lag spike. Speaking of lag though, there was still quite a ton of it even with the Dartling Gunner because I had so many wizards now, and I had to let my laptop run in front of a fan because it got hot pretty instantly, but it was definitely worth it as the Dartling Gunner had now popped over 31 million bloons in just 1 hour. Maybe I can reduce the lag with less wizards and get even more pops as well. I tried out 5 and this allowed me to achieve the holy grail of popping, at least in my eyes, 1 million pops per minute, as my Dartling Gunner was sitting with just over 60 million for the 1 hour test. So we're now talking about well over 5 times the rates that I was getting using the special mission. I wonder if 5 wizards is the limit before lag starts to become an issue, so let's find out. Well, it looks like that is actually, because with 6, the game is lagging a ton. But then I updated my drivers and reset my laptop, and that allowed me to get it running with the 6, but this also seems to be about the same efficiency as 5 was. And I know that the footage looks laggy, but that's just because I was using OBS to record, and when I was looking at my memory, having all these other applications open at the same time was definitely bringing it much higher. But when I closed those, that's what allowed me to get the game running at a max rate. So when I wasn't recording is when the game ran best. That's why there's not too much footage from it. But I guess let's see how this setup ends up faring. Unfortunately, I didn't record this part, but when I checked after 1 hour, I actually saw 71 million pops on the Dartling Gunner, and I thought this was going to be an absolutely insane project until, well, the game decided to crash. So I'm going to have to try again, but I wonder if it's just something to do with the game not being able to handle things after a certain point, because I've actually never had this game crash before, even when I went to round 1000. Unfortunately, there's no way to see how many pops I had when the game crashed, because when you have to close it in the middle of a round, it just resets you to the beginning of the rounds. So we are starting the whole thing from scratch, and as you might have guessed, it did end up crashing again, and it actually looks like it was at a pretty similar point, because if you look at my XP bar, I was at the same level and it was around the same point. I mean, I got a little bit more XP the first time, but I'm not really sure exactly if it just managed to go a little bit further or if maybe the game tracks XP in a weird way that affected it. But anyone who knows more about the game than me and wants to explain why exactly this is happening, that definitely would be appreciated, because I'm not really sure if it's just some sort of limit where a certain tower can't have a certain amount of pops, or the game just ends up like storing too much in its cache, or something else that just causes it to get overloaded. I know this game was not designed for you to pop 100 million balloons because it doesn't track damage, so definitely something interesting, but as of now, that's going to have to be the limits of this project, unfortunately. I don't know exactly how many balloons you can pop in 24 hours, but it definitely seems to be far less than I expected. The funniest part is that I actually set this up a day later right now because I ran out of footage, and it happens to be the best rate I've ever seen. I tested 1 minute, it did 1.35 million pops, which is equal to 81 million an hour, so yeah, if anyone can figure it out, please let me know, because there's definitely something well past a billion possible, maybe even 2 billion pops in 24 hours. When Bloons Tower Defense 1 came out, a lot of things didn't exist yet, like Moab class balloons, ceramics, camos, or even rainbows for that matter. So fittingly, the towers in that game aren't equipped to handle any of those things. But alas, in BTD5, you have to face all of them. So today, I'm going to attempt to beat Bloons Tower Defense 5 using only towers and upgrades from the first game. But just as this comment suggests, I will be using villages in the radar scanner as well. I won't use the villages for anything else, but this challenge would literally be impossible without some form of camo detection. Now the only map that you have in BTD1 is basically the same as Monkey Lane, so that's where I'm going to be going. Impoppable mode should be quite the challenge under this rule set though, even on a beginner map. I wanted to go for triple dart to start with, but I had to settle for a couple 1-1 dart monkeys instead. Now I only have access to 5 towers at this point, and most of them aren't very good without upgrades, so just like the first game, I found myself spamming these dart monkeys down just to make it through the early rounds. But pretty soon, I was going to have to get a village with the radar scanner in order to avoid dying to round 24, but alas, I wasn't even close to having enough money to afford that when the round came, so I restarted, and this time I just relied on 2 dart monkeys for my defense until I could afford the village, but this is when an issue arose. In order to afford the radar scanner so early, I basically had to work with 0 defense just to save up enough money by round 24, and I didn't want to use road items since that felt kinda cheap on top of already using the villages. So instead, I just got myself up to round 24 with more defense, and then sold some dart monkeys in order to afford the radar scanner before selling the village on the next round to rebuy those dart monkeys. Or at least that's what I planned to do until I discovered it's just about impossible. I would have to sell every single dart monkey I had in order to afford the radar scanner here. But see, that dart monkey was still a 1-1. If I sell everything and buy a 0-0, there is just barely enough money left to afford the camo detection I need finally. And after finally getting through that round, I immediately died on the next one because I forgot to turn off the auto start, so the balloons just came strolling right by my 0-0 dart monkey. And even though I did buy more defense, it was just too late because I guess they were regrow. But once I gave myself a second to react, I just bought as many 1-1 dart monkeys as I could, since they seemed to be doing pretty well before. On round 28, I got a 1-1 bomb tower for the lead balloons, which thankfully is in the first game despite that one not even having lead balloons in it. I also knew that round 33 was coming soon, which is the next time I'll have to face camo balloons, so I figured it was time to start saving up again. I didn't want to be in the same spot I was on round 24. And I just want to say really quick, if you're enjoying the video and don't mind subscribing to the channel, it's definitely appreciated. I think only like 3 or 4% of people are currently subscribed. I think it's probably pretty easy to not realize you aren't because YouTube just serves you the videos, but with that out of the way, I'll get right back into it. I still ended up having to sell a lot of defense to get through the round, but I thought I had things covered until one balloon managed to slip by. But once I had a second to set up the village before the round started, my towers didn't have to chase and it was completely fine. I figured at this point I would just keep the village and hope the dart monkeys I had left are enough to keep me going. On round 38, I died because I literally got caught lacking. I realized how difficult it was going to be for me to actually pop a Moab, let alone 5 ZOMGs on round 85, and I really just started wondering if this is actually going to be possible or not. The only thing I can really think of trying is to spam 1-1 tack shooters for their cheap damage per second, so I built some in a decent bend on the track, and that did make the difference for this round. And it kept on going all the way until, well, round 40 when we had to face some ceramics. But I really started to wonder if selling more dart monkeys for more tack shooters could start to be the play now. Well, that might have been a little better, but still definitely not enough firepower. There is one tower I'm still allowed to use that I have been neglecting though, the ice tower. It isn't much as a 1-1, but let's see what we can do with some balloon stalling. Well, that didn't quite go how I had hoped, but let me try it again because I do think the balloons were getting slowed down at least, but this is also when I made a pretty big mistake. It seemed like the dart monkeys would fare better at the end of the track, so I switched up my defense without considering that both the bomb tower and the ice tower cannot pop zebra balloons. Well, I've managed to make a few dumb mistakes in this run and it was kind of the test run anyway, so I think I'm just going to restart it from scratch. In order to get back to this round, I figured I should just keep on spamming the 1-1 dart monkeys instead of going for any tack shooters, and probably to nobody's surprise out there, this actually just worked completely fine. But I think the problems are really going to start when the first Moab balloons start coming out because I just don't see how we're going to pop it only doing 1 damage per shot. Well, I guess I'll just see what happens. And would you look at that, I guess I was wrong. Dart monkeys really are just that broken, even as a 1-1 tower in the 5th game. Alright, this is getting a little ridiculous now. I'm past round 50 and actually getting to save up money as the dart monkeys continue to handle everything on their own. It isn't super easy for them, but look, nothing is getting past. I failed again on round 54 though, but I still had plenty of money to spend on defense. After buying more 1-1 dart monkeys, the round went by just fine, and this is when I noticed that the dart monkeys seem to actually do better against Moabs than they do against the ceramics. So maybe I should just get a few 1-1 ice towers again, and hopefully they can slow down the ceramics enough to make them easier to deal with. Okay, I think they're working because there is no way I should have survived round 60 otherwise. I also started buying a lot of 1-1 tack shooters because I still think that they can have the best overall damage per second for their price, and this was enough to deal with the Moabs and continue on past round 60 as well. Now after that, I really wasn't surprised to see that round 63 was too much for my defenses to handle, as this is the round where you get attacked by densely packed ceramics. So I tried selling a few of my towers to get more ice towers up, hoping they could slow down everything enough, but instead they just failed to do anything against the zebra balloons since they can't affect them, and I still lost all the same. So I figured I needed to put all my ice towers at the beginning of the track to hopefully slow down every ceramic balloon and the balloons that spawn from it. But when I was placing the towers down, my wireless mouse decided to glitch and place an ice tower over here on the side, which is definitely not what I was trying to do. But even with several ice towers set up to slow all the balloons, I still couldn't quite make it through this round. So I had to buy more ice towers with the money I made during the round just to get close and still fail in the end. But I really feel like this is possible and I just had to think a little harder. So I tried to really figure out what part of the round was actually taking me out. It looks like the first wave of ceramics is getting handled, but the second wave becomes too overwhelming. So what if some of my dart monkeys were targeted as strong? Oh, it looks like that actually did even worse. Speaking of bad ideas, I tried placing some of the ice towers with tack shooters and now I could no longer even survive the first wave of ceramics anymore. I think it's pretty clear that the ice towers are making the biggest difference and I should probably be getting more of them, not less. I also got some more dart monkeys, and once again, I still didn't have quite enough firepower to survive the second wave. And the more times that I keep on selling towers and then rebuying them, of course, the more money I'm going to lose, but I really do want to at least try to get past this round. I feel like it is right on the cusp of being possible, and I just keep on barely failing with the second wave. I don't know how much harder the third wave is going to be, but I'm sure it has a lot to do with the pierce, and the towers just can't reach everything at once there's 2 waves out. So I figured at this point I would just try selling all of my tack shooters and hoping for the best here. I got even more dart monkeys, as well as jamming as many ice towers in the beginning as I could, and I was really hoping that all of them together would finally have enough pierce to slow every ceramic, but this somehow did even worse than before. I really don't understand exactly what I should be doing at this point, because I had honestly started coming to believe that the tack shooters were actually worse than the ice towers, and the problem now is that there's only so much usable real estate for tack shooters, because in a lot of spots they're just not going to be very effective. But at this point I was starting to meet the definition of insanity, because I tried going back to the strategy where I had ice towers and tack shooters together in the bend, but I thought maybe if I had enough of them, the tack shooters would pop the zebras, and then the ice could continue slowing other balloons, and then having enough dart monkeys at the end would catch everything else, since they were good in the early game at least. I don't know, I was just trying anything at this point. Once again, this did actually get a little bit closer, so I decided to just double down on the idea, and if it doesn't work, I really don't know what to do. This actually did seem a bit better, but still, I got overwhelmed. There just never seems to be enough pierce to fully handle more than 1 wave of the ceramics. I also tried selling my village for more defense, and again, this didn't seem to be doing too badly, but it definitely was not going to be enough, especially when you consider the fact that the third wave is even stronger than the first 2. I should have mentioned this earlier in the video, but I am using the Monkey Lab upgrades just because I think it would actually be impossible to do this challenge without them, especially on anything besides easy mode. I've tried CHIMPS mode before in this game, which is just you playing without farms, and you can still use tier 4 towers and have access to all of them, and yeah, that was not even possible for me personally, so I really just don't see any way to do that. However, now I am going to finally allow myself to try out specialist building since I wasn't up to this point. I'm going to start out with the Dart Monkey one, which I have a feeling all of that extra pierce from the explosions is actually going to be enough to get through the round. Now, I believe the third wave should be about to enter the screen, and this is definitely the furthest I've ever really gotten, actually having the second wave getting destroyed quite easily up here. The tack shooters are doing a pretty good job, but I definitely think it's the Dart Monkeys that are really stealing the show, and yeah. There we go, for the first time I finally made it past this round. Now, do I call this legitimate in terms of BTD1 towers? Again, no, I was using the Monkey Lab and now I'm using a specialist building, and I had to use a village for camo detection, so obviously it's not quite the same, but still a fun challenge nonetheless, and let's see if I can actually get to the end of Impoppable. Once I got to round 70, I had to switch over to using the Ice Monkey specialist building, as this would allow them to actually not only detect camo balloons, but even remove the camo from them, which would then allow my Dart Monkeys to pop them, as now I had no form of camo detection, and I would have to sell $3,000 worth of defense just to afford it, which probably is not a worthwhile sacrifice to make at this point. Now, this did in fact catch all the rainbow balloons and allow me to pop them, but unfortunately, without the Dart Monkey specialist building, I no longer had enough firepower for the end of the round. This should have probably been pretty easy otherwise, but there's no way to save and quit the round when you've beaten half of it and then switch specialist buildings, so now I was a little bit stumped on what to do again. But then I realized something else. If I enabled the Dart Monkey specialist building again, I could sell both the bomb towers, which would definitely give me a significant amount of what I needed to afford the camo village, and then if I had enough Dart Monkeys and ice towers in the range of it, that could be enough to actually defeat the round. Maybe I need to just put it in a spot where more Dart Monkeys can hit it instead. So I did my best to set up the village in the absolute best spot, and I think there was 25 Dart Monkeys in the range just about, so this seemed to be enough to at least hold off the balloons for a while, although you can see they started creeping ever so slightly forward, and then a few actually made it past, and I was about to actually do what I did not want to do and use road spikes, but alas, the Dart Monkeys at the bottom did catch the last few balloons, and you can see just how much easier the Moabs were to deal with now as well. This defense actually continued holding strong until round 76, where, as you might expect, there was far too many ceramics for us to actually pop everything. I don't know if spending that 10k is going to make a difference or not, but we'll have to see. I think this definitely did make a pretty big difference, and they were consistently keeping them below the ceramic level, but with so many rainbows stacked on top of each other and so many different things regrowing underneath where they could be hit because there's just hundreds of balloons stacked on top of each other at this point, it just still was not quite enough defense. And I guess with the Dart Monkeys being stronger than they were before, maybe I should just try selling everything else and only using those. First, I tried to keep all my ice towers because I thought maybe they were doing something, but considering that they're regrow ceramics, it's probably a lot worse to have those because they can actually get more of a chance to regrow when they're frozen. So with my army of Dart Monkeys ready, I tried try the round once more, but I feel like this was actually a worse attempt, and now the ceramics were having more of a chance to regrow, so I guess I was wrong about the ice after all. I'm not really sure. I guess just having more time to hit them is probably better than anything else. But at this point, I don't really know what else to do. And I'm sorry to say it, but I'm probably going to have to throw in the towel here just because I feel like I've exhausted every option I can think of between the specialist buildings, using different combinations of towers at different times based on whatever we're fighting. Like, I just don't really know what else there is to do at this point without just breaking the rules even more, and it's already gotten kind of to the point where, like I said, it's not super legit to begin with, so I feel like it's fair to say that I'm going to call it here. But if any of you can do it, that would definitely be awesome to see. Generally speaking, the purpose of towers in a tower defense game is to, well, provide defense in some form, but that doesn't mean they have to provide it in the form of damage. Sometimes it might be status effects, like slowing down the enemy. In Bloons Tower Defense, starting with the 4th game specifically, you have a tower called the Banana Farm. This tower provides you with extra income every round, and that's it. So that means the Banana Farm is completely passive to the balloons, as it never interacts with them in any way. This is also true of the village. Now, it does have one upgrade that allows it to attack balloons, but if you avoid getting that, this tower also doesn't interact with the balloons in any way. At least not in the 5th game. Instead, it actually provides a bunch of different buffs to the other towers that you place in its range. This can allow a 0-0 super monkey to absolutely destroy a ceramic balloon when normally it struggles a pretty good bit to one. Now, I know you aren't stupid because you watch my videos, so it's pretty obvious why I'm saying all this. I want to see just how far I can go in BTD5 using only the Banana Farm and the Monkey Village. But of course it can't just literally be them. So to actually pop the balloons, I'm also going to have to use road items. Now generally, these should never be your primary form of defense because they lose you money every time you use them. Even on easy mode where they're cheapest, every pile of road spikes you use loses you $15. So I'm really hoping that using farms for their income generation could potentially help me offset these losses enough for me to actually beat the game. And I'm starting on medium mode because I've actually already beaten the game on easy mode without any towers, albeit at the time I did use double cash because without it, it would have been literally impossible. I also want to thank this person who corrected a mistake I made in that video. At the time, I incorrectly believed that enabling the Spike Factory Specialist building would allow the road spikes I placed down to pop 50% more balloons, but it actually only affects spike piles that are dropped directly by a Spike Factory. Now the reason I believe this is because I was getting extra pops from my road spikes, it just had nothing to do with the Spike Factory Specialist building at all. Instead, it's actually because I have my Monkey Lab maxed out, and the popping power upgrade specifically provides 40% more popping power than normal, and for some reason, this actually does affect your road spikes. But if you've been watching the gameplay footage, you'll notice that each pile of road spikes is not popping 14 balloons like you might expect from a 40% increase. Instead, it actually gives you a 40% chance of your popping power doubling, so that means of course a 40% chance that the pile might pop 20 balloons instead of just 10. But if you watched that original video, this is why the odds weren't as good as I expected, because I was getting a 40% chance instead of the 50% that I thought I should be. But at least the Spike Factory Specialist building does give you one free pile of road spikes every round, so I'm still using it. And I'm sorry for a noticeable difference in the audio quality of the mic. I actually had to switch mid-video, so hopefully it doesn't affect things too much. But the first thing I foresee being an issue here is the fact that the Banana Farmer is actually a special agent, which means that once you've used enough, you unlock the pro version, and this actually spits out banana peels onto the track, which definitely is not passive because they send balloons backwards. So that means I really can't let the balloons get too far down the track, otherwise I'll fail the challenge. Now, you might be thinking, well, just sell this thing because of course you can collect them with your mouse, but unfortunately when you're holding a pile of road spikes in your hand, you actually can't collect the bananas, so I kind of need it there, otherwise I would be losing most of the income generation. Because if you don't collect them, the bananas disappear after just a few seconds. Another thing that I quickly learned is you really want to leave a small buffer of cash even when you can afford a farm, because it'd be very easy to overspend and then not be able to afford to defeat the entire round if you didn't. And this of course would be a problem because even though I have all those extra lives, again, I can't let any balloons reach the end of the track, although this certainly got dangerously close given how big that range is on the Banana Farmer. On round 28, I had to face leads for the first time, which requires you to use exploding pineapples, and this is the only time I'll be using them is when I have to pop leads, which you can probably tell why. They're pretty annoying trying to time them with the balloons, and I kept on missing them at first and wasting money, but also I almost failed the challenge right here because look at how close those black balloons were to actually getting hit by bananas, and thankfully the banana peels actually can't affect lead balloons, those just destroy them instead, so I didn't fail here either. After a little while I did develop a sort of strategy. I would try to estimate how many road spikes I was going to need based on the RB of the round, and if you don't know, RBE means red balloon equivalent, so it tells you how much damage you actually have to deal to beat that round. And then when I actually had to deal with lead balloons, I would use this loop right here and just put down a bunch of pineapples right in this spot so it could destroy them all. But on my first attempt to beat this round, I got a little too distracted trying to pop all the leads, and this ended up allowing a few of the banana peels to actually send balloons backwards, which means I'm going to have to restart the round. And yeah, this is going to be pretty annoying to deal with, I can already tell. But at least I can say that on my next try, I played a bit smarter and cleared the round without any issues. Then I failed again on round 39, but this time it wasn't a lack of focus, but rather a lack of fundage, which means I'm already going to have to sell one of my farms. So that's what I did, making sure to wait until they were done producing income so that way I could also earn some money this round from the farm. And then I got super lucky that this blue balloon just barely avoided being hit by any of the peels. But since I beat the round with some extra money, I did replace the farm I had to sell with a 1-0, which isn't as good, but at least it's something. And round 40 doesn't have as high of an RBE as round 39 did, so I should still have enough money to afford all the road spikes I need as well. But unfortunately, this round also introduces the first ceramic balloons, and the problem with them is that their outer layer takes 10 damage to pop, but it only awards you with $1. This means that even if you get lucky and get 20 pops from your road spikes, you can only pop 2 ceramic balloons, which means you're spending $25 to get $2 back. And also you can see I just barely ended up having to restart this round because I messed up at the end. But that issue with the ceramics taking more damage is only going to get a lot worse once I have to face the first Moab, because that takes 200 damage to pop and then it drops 4 ceramics. So in order to get 5 pops, which would be popping the Moab and then popping the 4 ceramic balloons into 8 rainbows, you have to deal a total of 240 damage. But since you're only popping 5 balloons, you're only going to earn $5. But in order to do that much damage with road spikes, you would have to buy 17 piles, assuming that you get average luck and 40% of them can do 20 damage instead of 10. This is because, think about it, 17 times 0.4 leaves you with 6.8, so we can round that to 7. That means you would get 7 piles with 20 pops, and 7 times 20 is 140. That leaves you with 10 piles that are each doing 10 damage each, and just to be clear, pops and damage are interchangeable, and then 10 times 10 is 100, plus that 140 will give you 240 damage exactly, which would be enough to pop those 5 balloons. But since each pile of road spikes costs $30 on medium mode, and you're buying 17 piles, you're going to be spending $510, which is literally more than 100 times what you're earning back. So every Moab is going to cost an additional $500 to pop, plus whatever you lose from popping those smaller balloons. But after a couple minutes, it was time. I had to face the Moab, and I have to say, for one, it got destroyed faster than I expected, but for two, I was really surprised that I didn't have to sell any farms on this round, especially because I wasted some money on spikes, buying too many at the end, and also buying some on that loop that ended up not getting used, because again, the Moab popped a lot faster than I expected. And there's a reason why that happened. I had completely forgotten that the Monkey Lab upgrade Big Balloon Sabotage allows all Moab class balloons to have 30% fewer health. So instead of having to do 200 damage like I thought, I actually had to do 140. This definitely makes it not quite as bad because now I can do 180 total damage, which will let me buy a few less road spikes, but still I am going to be losing a ton of money every time I do have to face a Moab, and I can only imagine what will happen with the BFB. Now my goal at this point and moving forward is to just hold on to my farms as long as possible, although I might already be failing that because I'm running out of money very quickly on round 47, and I'm also having trouble clicking fast enough to keep up with all the balloons, so they keep on reaching the banana peels, which of course I don't want to happen, but I'm using my trackpad, so I guess I'm going to have to unplug my mic, plug in my mouse to do this, and then go between the two. But when I loaded back into the game, I realized I had made a grave mistake, which is the fact that I bought road spikes before the round started last time, and now both the road spikes and my money are gone. So yeah, I have even less to work with than I did before. Just lovely. But in all seriousness, that means I'm gonna have to sell another farm already, and I'd be really surprised if I even end up beating medium mode. But since this track is designed in a way where there's a part that the balloons have to travel on 4 different times, I just kept on spamming spikes in that spot, and then I was able to clean things up and get through this round. But on round 48, I'm already running out of money again, so chances are I'm gonna have to sell yet another farm. And at this point, I'm basically on life support because I'm having to sell a farm every single round. Round 49 was the same thing. I had to sell yet another farm, bringing me down to my last one. And this is also when I realized I definitely should have sold the farms at the bottom first, so that way I wouldn't have to deal with this nonsense so much, because yeah, this is getting really old having to reset because these peels keep on hitting a few balloons. And the thing that makes it tougher is I'm trying to wait before I sell the farm because, like I said earlier, I want to let the farm generate a bit of income first. So what ends up happening is I eventually run out of money before I sell the farm, then I have to click on it and sell it and go back to putting down road spikes, and by that point, it seems like the balloons have just made it too far because the ceramics are absolutely annihilating my road spikes since they take so much extra damage to pop. So maybe it's about time for me to get rid of this banana farmer, honestly. But first, I wanted to try one last thing. Gamer clicking. Well, normal people notice jitter clicking, but doing this allowed me to easily put down enough road spikes to take out all the ceramics with a bunch left over. But there wasn't enough left over for me to actually not have to sell my last farm, which means this entire effort was in vain anyways. And it also means I'm probably not going to be able to beat round 50 because I'm going into it with less than $2,000 and no source of income. I did my best with what I had left, and I sold a banana farmer so that way I could just allow any balloons to leak, but there's way too many ceramics to even have any chance of defeating this round. And it's not like I can try again, because whatever amount of money I have is going to be the same every time. And there's no way I'm going to get luck that's so much different that I'm able to just get through. So unfortunately, this run is already dead. On my next run, I played on this map called Nazca Lines, which allowed me to actually put the banana farmer in a spot where it will not touch the track for once. And this is going to be pretty useful because now I don't have to worry about the balloons reaching a certain point and then me having to reset because of it. That was pretty annoying. So I also try to put it in a spot where it could cover a decent amount of the land, and then hopefully I could fit several farms in its range. But I think if I have to, I can put a second banana farmer right up here, and that should just barely avoid touching the track as well. But this map definitely is shorter than express shipping, so I'm gonna have less time to place road spikes. And I also did something stupid here. Since two paths merged into one, I need to put the road spikes a little bit further up. But this also got me thinking about something. Since I have so many extra lives, I don't have to buy road spikes in these early rounds. I can just let a bunch of balloons leak and focus on my farming, and therefore have a huge monetary advantage later on. Now last time on round 15, I had 1-2-0 farm, and I wasn't very close to affording my second farm yet, while this time I had, well, a 2-0 farm and a 1-0 farm, but that is still an advantage. And a big part of the reason why I didn't have more farms at this point is because I really only had enough lives to tank until round 10, and then I started having to use road spikes. Now thankfully I did have 10 free piles saved up as well, so that saved me another $300 this round. But yeah, I mean, obviously at this point it's going to probably be pretty similar to before, and I'm just going to hope that the difference of having that extra farm early on allows me to make it a little bit further at least. Otherwise this would just be kind of embarrassing. I also had a new challenge presented to me, the lead balloons, because now I don't really have a good way to pop them anymore, and I ended up failing the first time on round 30, which is not helped by the fact that I didn't leave myself any lives to work with. I literally have 4. So I developed a system where I would wait for the leads to reach a certain point on the monkey's arms down here, if you look at the bottom right, and then I would place the bombs in the center of its 2 hands. This seemed to work really well for popping them all, and you'll also notice my farms are a lot stronger this time than they were before, so having that early advantage really is actually starting to pay off. On round 34, I knew I could afford to finally get a 4-2 banana farm, which produces more income than the 9-2-0s I had. However, I can also do a trick where I start the round with a 3-0, then I upgrade it to a 4-2, and what will happen is this will actually produce 13 crates instead of 5 for this round, meaning that for a single round, I will get 2.6 rounds worth of income generation, which allowed me to afford a couple more 2-0 farms during this round as well, even though I actually wasted some money on road spikes at the end. It really is amazing being able to farm this much, but I'll tell you, the map definitely presents some challenge when you have a bunch of lead balloons and other balloons around them, because you have to just set things up just right so you can pop all the leads and then also get all the other balloons at the end. And then of course I die from being too stingy with the spikes anyways. But the extra effort on this shorter map definitely is paying off, because on round 41 I was already buying my second 4-2 factory, and then I realized I forgot to do the trick where you get extra crates, and thankfully my monkey lab also allows me to sell towers for 99% of their value, so I am going to lose around $240 selling this, but that's less than the value of one extra crate, so I'm not really too worried about it, although it is still definitely frustrating because it was an avoidable mistake. But now you can actually see the two of them side by side, or I guess up and down, with the top one being a normal factory producing 5 per round and the bottom producing 13. and you can see it actually lines up pretty well. The bottom one produced 2 and then almost a third one before the first one could even produce 1. But I just barely got by with 420 farms on this round because you can see I was about to run out of money and just barely had enough to pop those last zebra balloons, thankfully. But on round 45, I was already getting my 3rd factory, whereas last time I was struggling to even farm at all. I'm just absolutely amazed by the difference that one farm early on really has made so far. It's astronomical to me. But with that being said, I now have to face the Moab, and you can see, because of the fact that all the farms instantly generate their income, just how much money I'm really making, but also I'm easily profiting while fighting a Moab now, whereas before I was struggling and having to sell farms. And by round 50, instead of having to sell off my last farm, I was sitting with more income generation than what I was spending on road spikes still. And really the hardest part about getting through this round was just placing them down quickly enough to keep up with the ceramics. But now that I'm past round 50, I'm gonna start losing more money from my road spikes, because your income generation from balloons gets cut in half. So instead of earning $1 per pop, you earn half $1, or I guess $1 every 2 pops, really. And I have to say, the jitter clicking definitely was starting to burn even at this point. And by round 59, I had to start placing the road spikes before I started the round because for 1, that's just going to make things easier, but for 2, this round actually has a bunch of camo leads, so I did have to switch back to the explosive pineapples, which I haven't had to do for a while. And now that I've cleared this round, it's time to face something truly insane, the BFB. Although I have to say I was a bit underwhelmed by its strength, honestly. For some reason I guess I thought it was going to be more difficult to pop, but I probably shouldn't complain about something that's a good thing. And my cockiness led to me underestimating the Moabs, but thankfully I was able to pull out a pro gamer move and barely clutch up against an entire Moab that was near the end. Now if you know anything about round 63, you know the balloons are punishing me even more for underestimating their BFB, because now I had to spend what felt like 2 minutes placing road spikes all over the track, because not only does this round have something like 16,000 damage worth of ceramics to pop, but also it has leads the entire time, so I can't keep on placing road spikes, but instead I have to spend the entire round placing exploding pineapples. Man, I would have been so mad if that 3rd wave got through, but thankfully I was smart enough to place some extra spikes right at the end, and okay, we're gonna get through this round, but now it's only 2 more rounds left to defeat medium mode. And if you haven't guessed yet, the part 2 is going to be me attempting hard mode, but that is going to be a carpal tunnel endeavor that I am not looking forward to yet. So if you haven't liked the video and you're still watching, please drop a like on it. Although I felt pretty good about myself being able to click fast enough to beat round 64 without placing any spikes before it started. But with the anticipation of round 65 having a significantly higher RBE, I wasn't going to be trying that again. At first it starts off with balloons that are pretty easy to keep up with, but they ramp up in difficulty pretty quickly, and the round ends with 4 Moabs and 2 BFBs. Thankfully though, when it seemed like the spikes were starting to run low, I was able to take advantage of just how slowly the Moabs and especially the BFBs move to place way more down without having to completely destroy my wrist doing so. And by the time they had finally meandered over, there was more than enough firepower on the track to completely shred them into nothing. And there it is. That's medium mode defeated with nothing but road items. Somehow, some way, that one farm really made the biggest difference ever. And if you want to see me beat this on hard mode, I'm going to do it anyways, but again, please drop a like on the video for my suffering. Today we're going to find out what would happen if the monkeys went on strike in BTD5. This means that I can only use towers that function independently of them, like the tack shooter and the bomb tower. I want to give a quick shout out to Shy Guy Mask and Subchub, as they both have videos where they've beaten every BTD game without monkeys, but when it came to BTD5, they used beginner maps. So my goal today is to see just how difficult of a map I can beat without any help from a single monkey. And if you've been enjoying the recent content, I'd really appreciate a subscription, as only around 6% of people who watch currently are. Now I don't want to start off with a map that's way too difficult and embarrass myself, so I'll go with the advanced map called Day of the Undead, which probably should be put into intermediate if we're being honest. Now I have to think about which of my non-monkey towers would be best to start with. The tack shooter could be decent in this curve, but it would probably miss at least a few of the balloons early on, and I'm playing on Impoppable, which means I can't lose any lives at all. Starting off with a bomb tower or a balloon shipper as your first tower is just a bad idea, honestly, because they both attack too slowly. So that leaves us with the spike factory. I'm just gonna put it back as far as I can, and like I said before, Day of the Undead is definitely one of the easiest advanced maps in the game, considering it has a pretty long track and only one path to defend, both of which are a huge advantage for our spike factory here. My goal is to save up for a farm now, which is $1,200. I just can't use any banana farmers to collect the bananas for me, as those are definitely monkeys. This 0-0 spike factory is really holding things down, which allowed me to save up the necessary money to get my first farm, along with upgrading it into a 1-0. But I can tell the Bloons are about to overrun the factory now, so I've got to go for the bigger stacks upgrade. I really thought these blue Bloons were about to take me out before I could even afford it, but somehow we barely survived. Now with the factory as a 1-0, I can focus on farming again. Let me upgrade this farm into a 2-0, which will more than double its income production. Once again though, the Bloons are getting too strong for the spike factory, so now I'm going to get the faster production upgrade. With that, I can save up for my second farm, and I gotta say, this run is off to a pretty good start. I figured I would get the white hot spikes upgrade, which the factory needs in order to pop lead balloons, just a bit early, so I don't forget about it on round 28. Now I'm gonna take a risk and try upgrading my second farm into a 2-0 before I invest in any more defense, and hopefully the balloons aren't gonna become too intense. Well, I guess I should have realized round 27 was going to end up being a bit too much with all these yellow balloons. So begrudgingly, I have to immediately sell the farm I just bought so that I can get the even faster production upgrade on my spike factory, and I'll use my remaining money to get another 1-0 farm, which is what I should have just kept in the first place. Hopefully the 2-2 factory is enough, because otherwise I'm really going to look like a fool here. Alright, we got past the yellows this time, and the rest of the round just has weaker balloons. Now I think it's safe to upgrade my second farm again, but after that, I definitely want to get the spiked ball upgrade, because that will make this factory substantially more powerful than it already is. I'll also be facing the first ceramic balloons on round 40, and spiked balls do extra damage to those as well. That's especially useful here, because ceramics actually have 50% extra health when you're playing on Impoppable mode. This allowed me to get a couple more farms without having to worry about the balloons, and even though I don't need to, I'm gonna get a second factory now that I'll work on upgrading while I continue to farm. By the time round 40 came, I had it upgraded into a 3-2 as well, and you can see the first ceramic balloons were absolutely no problem at all. So I'm gonna keep on getting more farms, and I'm not exactly sure when it makes sense to sell all your 2-0s and get a 4-2, but I know that point is coming soon. But let's see how these two factories can fare against the round 46 Moab first. Honestly, that wasn't all that bad, but I think I gotta get more defense now because, yeah, round 47 is a little too strong. Thankfully though, I do have $3,000 to work with, so I'll invest that into a 1-1 factory, and it looks like this is just going to barely be enough to make it through the tough part of round 47, so I'm gonna upgrade this one into a 3-2 before doing anything else with the farms. For some reason, I didn't immediately get a banana factory after that, but instead, I upgraded a farm into a 3-0 in anticipation of making it a 4-2, and then I got another 3-2 spike factory first. After that though, I did finally sell some 2-0 farms so that I could afford to get my first banana factory. I guess it makes sense that without any monkeys to fight, automated factories are having to take over now. Now that I'm past round 50, I should also start investing in 2-3 bomb towers, because the Moab Mauler upgrade is incredibly powerful against Moab class balloons, especially for its price. You can see they do nothing against the ceramics, but the Moabs are losing a ton of health every time they get hit. Although I should have anticipated what would happen with regrow balloons, as they actually created a regrow farm on round 56 that was able to overrun my factories. So I'm gonna sell the Moab Maulers for this round, and then rebuy them after that. I'll also get another factory, just in case I need it. That was more than enough to destroy all the regrow rainbows this time, along with the Moabs that followed. Now I'm gonna start filling this little area with the Moab Maulers again, and I should also make sure to start farming some more as well, while I can afford to do so. Round 59 is more intense than I expected, but thankfully, the factories did pull through, and now we have the first BFB on round 60, which these Moab Maulers are making pretty good progress on. They did more than enough damage for the factories to clean up the rest, but round 61 has a ton of regrows again. And I stupidly got the frag bomb upgrade on all my Moab Maulers, which is the only reason the bomb towers can even pop these regrow zebras in the first place. But I'm gonna try getting the spiked mine upgrades on one of my spike factories and see if that can help out, and it looks like that actually is making the difference here. But I'm also gonna have to be prepared for the round 63 ceramics, and well, clearly I was not. But I just realized something kind of funny. I never bothered activating my spike factory specialist building which allows all spike factories to pop 50% more balloons than normal. I'm also going to get a 4-2 bomb tower as soon as I can afford it and have it set to strong, as this will give it the balloon impact upgrade. And now that I have it, you can see it's able to stun a good bit of the ceramics, which gives the factories more time to cover the track. This was easily enough to take down round 63 this time, and after that, things are going pretty smoothly. Round 65 hit you with a ton of ceramics, and then 3 Moabs and 2 BFBs, and none of this ended up being an issue whatsoever. And with 4 banana factories, I'm already generating an extra $12,000 per round, so I have plenty of money for more defense and more farms if I want to get them as well. Those 4 banana factories quickly multiplied into 8, and this allowed me to get a bunch of extra Moab maulers and even a couple more spiked mine factories, which are a very expensive tower for this game. That upgrade alone costs $15,000 on Impoppable mode. I can't see any way I could lose now, considering how powerful my defense is. Wait. Round 76 is seriously still too strong? Well fine, I'll get a few more balloon impacts and see if that helps. It's still gonna be close, but I think this is enough, and yeah, we have prevailed this time. Although I'm gonna need to prepare for the camo ceramics on round 78, since bomb towers can't hit those. I considered using a monkey village for a second to give my bomb towers camo detection, because it doesn't technically show a monkey, but like, monkey is literally in the name, so that definitely would be cheating. But once the camo ceramics actually came out, I realized I worried for nothing because they got destroyed by all the spiked mines anyways. Since it came at the end of round 78 instead of the beginning, the track was already way too covered in spikes. Now all I really have to do is continue investing in defense and prepare for the 5 ZOMGs that come out on round 85. Instead of buying a million more Moab Maulers, alright, calm down Dr. Seuss, I'm just gonna upgrade all my existing ones into Moab Assassins, which gives them an activated ability that does a ton of damage to Moab class balloons at once. Round 84 is going down well, which is always a good sign, considering it has 50 Moabs and 10 BFBs. But alright, here we go, I'm just gonna spam all the abilities at once, and it looks like that basically did the trick. Yeah, there we go. I just beat an advanced map that admittedly is relatively easy without any monkeys. I started looking for more difficult maps that I could attempt the same strategy on when I stumbled upon the perfect candidate, an expert map called Tunnels. As the name suggests, the main gimmick of this map is that the balloons spend a lot of time traveling through, well, tunnels, and they can't be hit when they're inside of them. But you see, the Spike Factory doesn't care about line of sight. So let's see what happens if I try the same strategy I used last time. I'm pretty sure this map is actually a good bit longer than the last one was, so I'm definitely feeling pretty good right now about my chances. In fact, I was able to get my first farm earlier this time, as the balloons weren't getting anywhere close to overpowering the 0-0 Factory yet. I didn't even have to bother upgrading it until round 18, and I did so here because the green balloons did nearly make it through. But just to really highlight the difference between this map and the last one, last time I failed on round 27 because I upgraded my second farm to a 2-0 instead of upgrading this factory to even faster production. Whereas this time, I'm already upgrading my third farm into a 2-0, and the yellow balloons are not making it past the 1-1 factory this time either. Of course, I do have to get white hot spikes for the leads that are coming out in a second, but honestly I think the monkey should have quit a long time ago because this is almost going too well. I already had my first banana factory before I even had to face the Moab on round 46, and by round 60, I had 7 of them. Oh, well, actually, make that 8. Last time round 63 did sneak up on me, but this time around, it's gonna get crushed. Same goes for round 65, and by round 76, things have gotten pretty out of hand when it comes to my farms, but the dense wave of regrowth ceramic balloons also pose no threat for my army of spectaries. Since I have such a ridiculous amount of money now, I'm gonna upgrade all of them to spiked mines, and I think I have over $1 million worth of towers deployed at this point. Not to mention around 100k worth of income generation per round. I never even bothered getting Moab Maulers this time because I just haven't had any need for them. I mean, look at the way round 84 is getting shredded. And sure enough, the ZOMGs move slowly enough to give all these factories ample time to completely cover the track and mines, which easily dealt enough damage to shred through all the ZOMGs, allowing us to be an expert map while the monkeys continue their strike. Now I really want to know if this could somehow be possible on an extreme map, so I booted up Main Street to give it a shot. This map has 2 paths to defend, but they intersect with each other, so if I put a factory at that intersection, it should be able to defend both paths. And would you believe me if I told you? No, I'm just kidding, it failed on round 3. But in theory, if I try again, the result could be different, since this factory throws down piles randomly. And sure enough, This time, it put them down in the right spot to catch every bloon. The same thing happened on round 5, and then on round 6, and in fact on the second try, I actually had to use one of my free piles of road spikes to keep a green bloon from escaping. So I'm gonna get faster production before getting the bigger stacks upgrade this time, because that should help it to catch more of the bloons. Doing that allowed me to stop losing every other round, so I figured that now I would also get the bigger stacks upgrade, because that one is the best value overall. And hopefully this 1-1 Spectre can hold up for a little bit, because I definitely need to start farming soon if I actually want to have any chance here. Well, so far it's survived another 4 rounds, which has allowed me to save up for my first farm, but just a couple rounds later, it is going to allow a regrow yellow to slip by. When I tried it again, I did need to use another free road spike pile, but then the Spectre kept on going for several more rounds, and I almost had enough saved up for a 2-0 farm when a pink balloon slipped by on round 21. When I retried, it took another free road spike pile, then another one on round 22, another on 23, but at least I am getting the chance to farm right now, although I'm pretty worried about round 27, knowing that I even lost to it on an advanced map. Surprisingly though, it only took a few more free road spike piles to actually hold off the yellow balloons, and everything else wasn't an issue. Of course I had to get the white hot spikes for round 28, and I figured I should also get the even faster production upgrade while I'm at it. Then I was able to upgrade my second farm to a 2-0 before I immediately died because I wasn't paying attention. Believe it or not, I then proceeded to somehow do the exact same thing on the very next round. I gotta find a better system where I'm not always thinking about the script as I'm playing the game. But it's also crazy how much differently a round can go when you actually get good RNG from your Spectre instead of bad RNG. Since I know round 33 is easy, I took the time to buy a third farm before upgrading my Spectre to a 3-2. Now things are starting to get a little bit better. I was able to upgrade my third farm, get a second Spectre, and even get a fourth and fifth farm going as well. I kept a close eye on round 40, because I know the ceramics are going to be tougher, but the 2 Spectres were even able to handle them. I'm actually starting to get a bit of confidence about this right now, but usually that's when things go wrong for me, so let's see. On round 43 I had the most annoying loss ever, where I just barely didn't catch all these escaping balloons, and when I tried again, I was able to beat the round, but I had panicked and put a third Spectre in a dumb spot, so I sold it and moved it a whole 2 pixels over, which is obviously far superior. I actually lost to the Moab in the same annoying way, where I just barely didn't place down enough road spike piles to catch all the escaping balloons. Now I wasn't taking any more chances, so I just spammed them down this time, and I definitely wasted some road spike piles, but that's better than losing for the 10th time in the same way. Oh, speaking of which, guess what I did again on round 47? At this point, I'm done playing games, so I'm just gonna get a 4-3-2 Spectre before I even think about farming again. In fact, let me get a couple Moab Maulers while I'm at it. Now this is looking much better. And finally, I can start upgrading my farms once more. On round 53, I sold the Moab Maulers to avoid creating a regrow farm because I thought that round 54 was the one that had regrow rainbows instead of round 56. This is the kind of stuff a normal person would cut out of their videos, but I really want you to truly experience the brilliance of my mind. But thankfully, that mistake didn't cost me, and it wasn't long before I could get down my first banana factory, and then a second one to boot. I ended up dying on round 57, so I sold the 5th Spectre I had just gotten so that I could rebuy a Moab Mauler, and you can see this made a huge difference. I figured I should also get a few more of them with the BFB quickly approaching, and I was surprised when it actually went down without a fight. In anticipation of round 63, I got down a 4-2 balloon impact, but it's in a pretty terrible spot, so we'll see what happens. It looks like that's still going to be enough to slow down the first wave of ceramics, which gives me time to afford a second balloon impact up here, and yeah, round 63 went off without a hitch. I made the risky decision of investing in a couple more 3-0 farms before getting any more defense for round 65, and I know you expected me to say this was a mistake, but no, this time it actually paid off. And even though I'm playing on an extreme map, it's hard to pretend like I have much chance of losing at this point. Even if a super difficult round comes up and totally blows past my defense, I can always sell a banana factory for 28,000, which is like 100,000 in BTD5. I got a couple more balloon impacts before round 76, and I honestly couldn't even believe my eyes when I saw how easily that it was going down. The one thing I am curious about though, is what will happen when I have to face the ZOMGs at the very end. Is there going to be enough time to destroy them? Well, I turned off auto start so that I could have more time to line the track with Moab Maulers, and by the time round 84 had rolled around, I amassed quite the army. I knew this was going to be powerful, but just like on round 76, I was surprised by just how powerful it actually is. You can barely even see the Moabs and BFBs. So now I'm thinking that 5 ZOMGs might be a bit tougher, but surely they're not going to make it all the way through. Well, oh boy was I wrong about that. So I retried and got some Moab assassin abilities, which seemed to be doing pretty well, but to my surprise, this still didn't end up being enough to defeat everything. So then I sold a couple banana factories and got a spiked mines factory at the end of each path, along with getting a few more assassin abilities with my remaining money, and I was certain this would do it. But of course, I wouldn't be talking this way if that had been the case. So finally, I sold the rest of my banana factories, got 2 more spiked mines factories, a million more Moab assassins, and I made sure these ZOMGs were sorry that they were ever born in the first place. And yeah, that was enough to do it. Amazingly, I even ended the game with exactly $6,969, and if that doesn't deserve a like, I don't think I could ever earn one from you. And hey, now we know it's not only possible to beat BTD5 without monkeys, but you can even beat an advanced, expert, and extreme map, all without their help. Today we're going to be finding out which towers can and cannot beat Bloons Tower Defense 5 completely on their own. And in order to test this, I'm going to be using the map Express Shipping because it's the longest map in the game, and I'll be playing on regular Impoppable mode, but for any tower that does beat this, I'll have a follow-up video to test it on Mastery Impoppable, which is even harder. Starting off with the Dart Monkey, you'll notice I'm getting one for free, and that's because I have its specialist building enabled, which of course I'll be doing for every tower. And since the Dart Monkey was free, I had enough money to immediately upgrade it to a 2-3. And let me tell you, this triple dart goes a lot further than you might expect, even being in a bad spot. Even lead balloons are no longer a match, as the Dart Monkey specialist building also gives it explosive darts. It took the rainbow balloons on round 35 for this lone triple dart to just barely fail. So as you might imagine, getting 8 more of them absolutely obliterated this round and continued doing so for quite some time. Even the Moab on round 46 got obliterated. You might be wondering why I'm not spending all my money on defense, but to be honest, I already knew the Dart Monkey was going to destroy this challenge, and I just want to see how powerful it actually is, so I'm trying to use as few of them as I can as well. And here comes the BFB now, which I thought was going to force me to buy more defense honestly, but there it goes, getting destroyed in just 2 loops. But I wasn't surprised when the infamous round 63 proved to be a little too much for them. So I got down a couple juggernauts on straight paths because they're known for destroying ceramics, and I also got a triple dart here in the quarter towards the end just to catch any stray leaks, and sure enough, this was enough to make it through the round. Now I really thought that having 3 Moabs and 2 BFBs at the end of round 65 was going to force me to finally buy more defense again, but somehow, someway, the Dart Monkeys continue to prevail. It's round 73 now, and I still haven't had to spend any more money on defense yet, so it looks like I'm playing CHIMPS mode on BTD6 and trying to save up for a tier 5 with all this extra cash. Round 76 finally exposed a weakness in the Dart Monkeys, as the super dense layer of regrow ceramics had too much pierce to be destroyed, even with a couple of juggernauts, and they just kept on regrowing every time they circled around the track. So I got 4 more juggernauts near the entrance, and go ahead, make fun of my bad placings in the comments, but this was enough to crush all the ceramics still. But I can tell from how tough round 77 is that pretty soon, the BFBs are going to be overwhelming this defense. On round 82, you have to face 10 of them, and that definitely proved to be too much. So I got a Super Monkey fan club, and with how long this map is, I was able to use it twice during the round. But I really wonder, could this somehow be enough defense to defeat the 5 ZOMGs on round 85? Well, here they are, but stupidly, I used an ability towards the end of round 84, so I don't have it immediately available. Surprisingly though, a couple of the ZOMGs popped pretty quickly here, but some of them are making it pretty far, and yeah, we're going to be leaking entire Moabs. So I got a second fan club, which lets you have basically 0 downtime, and as you might have guessed, this was enough to defeat Impoppable mode with the Dart Monkeys, while also saving up $77,000. Going from glory to abject failure, we have the tax shooter, because no matter what you do with them, they will always lose to the camo balloon on round 24. But I think this sniper should definitely have some more potential. They have no problem with camo balloons, nor with the leads that come 4 rounds later. I really wanted to make sure I started sniper farming soon, so unlike with the Dart Monkeys, I actually had a reason to save up money this time, since the supply drop upgrade cost nearly $14,000. Pretty soon though, I was actually able to afford it, and if you don't know what sniper farming is, well here you go. You buy the supply drop upgrade, use it, and then sell your sniper, and repeat. My Monkey Lab gives me back 99% of the tower's sell price, so I only lose around $187 every time I sell it, while gaining $500 to $1,500 from each crate, depending on RNG. You definitely gotta be careful though, or at least I do, because the balloons quickly became too strong for my defense and I actually lost on round 49. So I figured I should be a bit smarter and only try sniper farming for part of the round, then sell the tower completely and use all that money to buy a bunch more semi-automatic snipers, which, of course, completely destroyed it. Since my defense was now really powerful, I sold a couple snipers so that I could resume sniper farming, and despite this super close call, I was able to reach the point where it was paying off because now I had a few more supply drop snipers, which of course was going to increase my cash flow. After at least like 10 more minutes of sniper farming, I figured I had done enough because now I had so many supply drops that cash flow was no longer really a problem. And the thing is, these snipers are also pretty powerful. Look at the way that they're taking care of round 76. Eventually I was on the last 4 rounds of the game, which are definitely the hardest, but the snipers kept on breezing through everything, and as you can see, I had a ton of money coming in at this point. But not only that, a 2-3 sniper is just as strong as a 2-4, so if I needed to, I could really sell these supply crates and replace them with semi-autos, but that wasn't even necessary because despite the ZOMGs putting up a pretty good fight, they ultimately were taken down, which means the sniper is the second tower to defeat BTD5 on Impoppable. But they can't all be winners because just like the tac shooter, the boomerang fails on round 24 because the only upgrade that allows it to pop camo balloons is the Glaive Lord, and you can see you're not even within the same stratosphere as being able to afford that. At least the next tower is the Ninja Monkey, which absolutely carves through these early rounds like it's trying to set a speedrunning record. Instead of buying the Bloon Jitsu like I normally would though, I had to go for a flash bomb for the leads on round 28, and despite saving my money, I still couldn't afford it, so I also had to sell my double shot ninja, but thankfully, despite my huge blunder, the ninja is such a good tower, it carried on like absolutely nothing happened. Pretty soon after, I was able to buy a couple Bloon Jitsus, along with upgrading my flash bomb to Bloon Sabotage, which can slow all balloons on screen down by 50% for 15 seconds. Not that I needed it for the round 46 Moab, because these Bloon Jitsus have some crazy damage per second. I did use it to slow down the BFB on round 60, although I really don't think it was even necessary there. I am curious now if I can actually save up even more money with the Ninja Monkey than I did with the Dart Monkey before. On round 63, I got a second Bloon Sabotage Ninja to help deal with all the ceramic balloons, and I probably could have just gotten the flash bomb, but I really think I'm going to want at least 2 slowdown abilities for the late game instead of just 1, although funnily enough, I think round 76 is actually worse when you use the sabotage compared to when you don't. Maybe it's just from RNG though. I thought adding a couple more Bloon Sabos would have enough Pierce to stun all the balloons on round 76, but clearly I was wrong. Well, there goes my dream of saving up even more money than I did with the Dart Monkeys. But I really can't complain though. Considering how quickly we destroy Moabs and BFBs now, it was a necessary evil. As I entered the very hardest rounds, this trend continued, with the ninjas not even needing me to use their sabotage ability to handle round 84, which I would argue is almost, if not as hard, as round 85. I did use it on the ZOMGs though, but when I turn off fast forward, you can really see just how slow they're crawling along. Not only are the ninjas going to win, but they make it look quite easy, with the balloons barely getting to make any real progress. There seems to be this weird trend where towers on the left are really great and towers on the right are really terrible, because just like the tac shooter and boomerang monkey, the bomb tower has no way to pop the round 24 camo. The ice monkey is definitely going to be interesting though. With the 5% discount you get from its specialist building, you can just barely afford the snap freeze upgrade with $0 to spare, and you need that upgrade in order to be able to pop balloons. Normally, the ice monkey would just fail on round 24, but its specialist building also allows the tower to pop camo balloons without needing a 4th tier upgrade, and it allows them to pop white and zebra balloons without an MIB village. So in theory, there should be nothing stopping it from at least having a chance. Well, unless that thing is faster than a green balloon. I tried playing again without fast forward mode on, and that's when I noticed how these 2 particular yellow balloons managed to perfectly avoid the ice tower's attack every time they loop around. So I sold the other ice monkey and moved it up, but that made absolutely zero difference somehow. But I do have one last idea. Playing on fast track mode allows you to start on round 26 with 5,000 cash, or 5,400 if you have your monkey lab maxed out. This is enough money to buy 3 2-2 ice monkeys, which are doing a much better job of catching the faster balloons, including pinks and grouped yellows. In order to deal with the ceramics on round 40, I sold my 2-2 ice towers and replaced them with an Arctic Wind Ice Shard combo, since that can destroy basically every normal balloon the game throws at you. But what it can't do is help you on round 46, because ice shards can't actually attack Moab class balloons normally. The only way for them to deal damage to them is if they're attacking regular balloons that are underneath the Moab, and then the ice shards just happen to hit the Moab as well. So, this means that the only thing dealing damage was the Arctic Wind, which was far from being enough. The first thing I did was spam down as many 2-0s as I could afford to do more damage to the Moab, but that wasn't enough. Then I sold an Ice Shard and bought even more, which still wasn't enough. I sold my second one, not enough. Finally, I sold my Arctic Wind, and wouldn't you guess it, there was enough damage to barely pop the Moab, while the ceramics all escaped. No matter what I tried, they just couldn't seem to get it. And considering that we would also need to eventually pop 5 ZOMGs with 2-0 Ice Monkeys, I think it's more than likely impossible for the Ice Monkey to ever beat Impoppable mode. There isn't much to say about the Glue Gunner, but I'm going to anyways. It fails to regrow yellow balloons on round 17 because corrosive glue does damage too slowly and you can't afford the next upgrade. If you use Fast Track mode, you have to start with a 2-2 Glue Gunner for round 27, then switch to a 3-1 for the regrow pinks on round 29, which didn't even work because the glue specialist building drops glue all over the track, and those glue actually count, I guess this is the same as corrosive glue, so they're too weak as well. But that really doesn't matter anyways, because a glue gunner can never affect Moab class balloons no matter what you do, and it also needs to be a 2-4 tower for it to affect camo balloons by using the glue storm ability. But since you only have corrosive glue with the 2-4, regrow camos are also impossible to pop, producing a huge regrow farm instead. Oh, and just in case anyone was curious, using Fast Track mode with the Boomerang Monkey doesn't work because you still can't afford a Glaive Lord for the round 33 yellow camo balloons. In order to test out the Monkey Buccaneer, I'm just going to use portable lakes on the same map I've been playing on instead of playing on a water map. Now these lakes do have the ability to attack balloons, but thankfully it's only if you use an activated ability, so I don't have to worry about that being an issue. You might also notice that the Monkey Buccaneer's specialist building turns the dart it normally shoots into a fireball, which means they can pop lead balloons without having to waste money on cannon chips. And I'm just gonna say it, the destroyer is kinda overpowered now. Since the grape shot adds so much damage per second, you can also just kinda spam them down to shred through the Moab pretty quickly. I just had to know something though. Will the mini airplanes from the aircraft carrier upgrade also get fireballs? Well, that's more than a little disappointing, I can't lie. There must be something to that aircraft carrier though, cause on round 63, check out how much more quickly it gains pops compared to one of the destroyers. I knew round 76 was going to be tough, but I had plenty of money saved up. So I bought a second aircraft carrier, and after spending way too long getting 4 boats in one lake, I upgraded them into 4 more destroyers. At first this looked like it would be enough, but not everything was getting destroyed, which gave the regrows too much time to, well, regrow. So I sold my 2 aircraft carriers and built destroyers more spread out, but even with constant firepower, there still wasn't enough Pierce to destroy everything. So then I did the opposite, selling all my destroyers to get 3 aircraft carriers, which was kinda stupid because I still had to spend the rest of the money on destroyers anyways, and as you might have guessed, this still wasn't enough, which means that as far as I can tell, the Buccaneer actually can't beat Impoppable mode. Maybe I had terrible placings, and if you can do it, definitely let me know, but that was my experience. The Monkey Ace is the first tower where you can't even afford to buy it on round 1, so you have to use Fast Track mode. You might notice that its specialist building adds a little machine gun to the tower, which is extremely useful in the early game. However, unless you have one of the 4th tier upgrades, this tower has no way to pop leads, other than one thing. These random pineapples that it can drop on the track. Now I'm not sure what the chances are, but it is technically possible, so I sold my current Monkey Ace and bought 5 pineapple presents, which actually worked, but on round 30, 1 lead balloon managed to slip by. So I tried again, and again, and again, but it was all to no avail. So unless you can micro the ace extremely well and time it with the pineapple drop, I'm going to say this is pretty much impossible. Being the most expensive tower in the game, the Super Monkey also requires that you use Fast Track mode to start with it, and since you need another $5,000 to afford Plasma Vision on round 28, there's no way to pop the lead balloon, so this is where it fails. I'm a lot more hopeful for the Wizard Monkey though. Its specialist building gives it an extra seeking attack, meaning a 0-1 gets 3 different projectiles for under $1,000. When it started to struggle, I got the Lightning Bolt upgrade, adding a 4th. Unlike our last couple towers, the Wizard Monkey has 0 issue with the leads that come on round 28. When I could afford it, I got the Dragon's Breath upgrade, mainly because I want the upgrade that comes after it, the Phoenix. For its price, this upgrade should provide an incredible amount of value once you start having to deal with Moabs and larger quantities of ceramics. Eventually, I got to the point where I had 3 of them, and I have to say, even without using the Phoenix ability, this tower is pretty strong. Watch how they tear through the BFB on round 60. These guys must have a ton of Pierce as well, because as I was writing the last couple sentences of the script, 4 of them managed to defeat round 63 and round 65 without any abilities. So I had to know, is there any chance they could somehow defeat round 76 as well? Yeah, I should have realized that was asking for a little too much. So I spent the rest of my money on more defense, and sold my original 4 Phoenixes because they had the lightning upgrade, and I was worried that might be contributing to a regrow farm. It looks like once I deployed all the Phoenix abilities, they were getting really close, but it just wasn't quite there. So I tried again and the same thing happened. Then I went against my better judgment and tried putting them all close together again, hoping this would have enough Pierce to finally take out the round. This was seriously so close, and I really thought I had it for a second, but of course not. I kept on trying to get the timing right, and then I switched all the wizards to strong, but nothing seemed to work. So I figured I would at least try selling all the Phoenixes one last time to get as many Dragon Breath wizards as I can, and well, this actually worked. I honestly cannot tell you the happiness I felt here, but I guess I was completely wrong when I said the Phoenix had great value, because all the values in the Dragon's Breath, at least on a map like this, where all the balloons circle around a single square. They continued holding their own when the game gets to its hardest point past round 80, and here's the ultimate test with the ZOMGs. Wow, look at how fast they're actually getting popped. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're going all the way, and yeah, there it is, a successful run by the Wizard Monkey. This should go without saying, but the village and farm would fail immediately. The farm can never attack balloons, and the only way for the village to is with the energy beacon, which costs over 25,000 in total, and that's far from being possible even with fast track mode. Now with the mortar, I'm not really sure what'll happen, but when you have their specialist building enabled, you can actually watch them do their own micro, which is pretty funny, but also, it's the only reason why this might even have a chance of being possible. I got the Bernie stuff upgrade early on, because without it, this tower wouldn't be able to pop black balloons or zebras, and yes, it also has a way to pop the round 24 camo balloon. Once I could afford it, I got the artillery battery, because I have a feeling I'm going to have to use its ability a lot to stun the balloons later on. Even the mortar tower's other 4th tier upgrade, the big one, only does 3 damage per shot, which I can't really see being enough for BFBs, let alone ZOMGs. On round 50, I got a couple 3-1 mortars, and you can see just how much they're already struggling just to defeat a couple simple Moabs. Eventually, I did get the big one when it seemed like the mortars were struggling to regrows, and it absolutely destroyed them. I have to say, it might be better against Moab class balloons than I thought as well. Maybe its overall damage per second makes it worth getting. The BFB definitely wasn't as bad as I had originally expected either, so maybe this will be possible. It's really funny to watch round 63 get just absolutely destroyed. I've not seen that a single time during this challenge, but with 2 big ones, it's going to be the case. Round 65 was a lot more difficult, but they're still pulling through so far at least. I can't believe I'm saying this, but they're actually still alive on round 83, and with 7 big ones now, round 84 is also getting taken care of pretty well. But just like I had suspected before, the ZOMGs are still causing trouble, and the stun barely works on them as well. But there is still one thing I can try. If I keep selling the tower and rebuying it over and over, I can keep on using the stun ability every time I rebuy it, just like I did with the sniper farm, and that'll at least allow me to get a decent amount more stalling on the ZOMGs. I'm not sure how effective it'll be with my turtle micro, but you gotta try, right? I'm slowly losing money every time I do this, but that shouldn't be an issue. And here you can really see just how much more effective the stall actually is against the Moabs and BFBs than the ZOMG, because for once in its life, the ZOMG is actually passing them both. Now all the ZOMGs are popped, so I think it's actually a wrap. Just like that, the Mortar Monkey has beaten Impoppable mode all by itself. The Dirtling Gunner is another tower that's too expensive to afford without using fast track mode, but let me tell you now, that's where its shortcomings end. This tower really has no weakness. It's good against camos, leads, Moabs, and even the round 63 ceramics aren't posing a threat. The same amount of defense continue destroying difficult rounds, like 76, if you blink you might miss it. And I'm not kidding when I say I didn't even bother moving my mouse during any of the late game rounds until the ZOMGs came out on round 85. It looked a bit tough, but realistically, these balloons still had an entire loop left to complete before they would even escape, so the Dartling Gunner has officially joined the club with style. And I even could have saved up more money than I did with the Dart Monkey if I wanted to. I really think that the Spike Factory can keep our successful streak alive, but the thing about this tower is that it has to be placed towards the back of the track, so it has enough time to drop spike piles, which means these early rounds are taking way longer than usual. However, the really cool thing about the Spike Factory is that their special building allows the spike piles to pop 50% more balloons than normal, and this actually stacks with the 40% extra pierce I'm getting from my monkey lab. So altogether, this means the 0-0 Spike Factory goes from popping 5 balloons per pile all the way up to, get this, 14 balloons per pile. And I'm not even exactly sure how that applies once you get the bigger stacks upgrade. I'm guessing it doesn't go all the way up to 28, but still, this is pretty incredible. This huge boost in popping power allows the Spike Factory to be way more effective against large quantities of balloons than you would normally expect. Check out just how much this 3-2 can handle. And that 0-0 down there just tanked a whole ceramic plus a little extra. The round 46 Moab was no problem either, and my idea was to get a couple more 3-2 Spike Factories down here on the bottom, since the balloons have to pass this long section of the track twice, as well as having a couple more at the end, just in case anything starts to get past. Then I'm actually going to sell my 3-2 that's towards the center, and replace it with a 2-4, because the Spike Storm ability will be able to cover the entire map more efficiently from this position. The ability is so powerful now, and comes back so quickly, I'm pretty sure the Spike Factory should get this win. Since the spiked balls, yeah, that's what they're called, from a 3-2 factory are supposed to be extra strong against ceramics, I was curious just how well this could do against round 76, but it just smashed through everything in its path. So I tried buying a third Spike Storm, realized I couldn't afford it, and had to settle for another 3-2. Can you tell I don't want to call the 3-2 a spiked ball factory yet, by the way? This actually got really close though, so I know what I have to do. Moving all the 3-2s together allowed the Spike Factory to finally stack up enough of its spiky balls to destroy the entire round. But I was also a little worried about round 79 because it has 500 rainbow regrow balloons, and you can see how they eventually just overwhelm all the 3-2 factories even as I use the abilities. But I didn't want to give up yet, so I started the round and waited for my 3-2s to cover the track. Then I sold a couple to get a third Spike Storm because I think that'll be more effective against anything that isn't a ceramic balloon. And you can see how ineffective the 3-2s become as they try keeping up with everything, but doing all this still didn't work regardless, so I guess I'll just sell all my 3-2s to get 6 Spike Storm abilities, making sure not to waste money on the lead popping upgrade. At first I was really hopeful, but this also proved not to be enough, so I really think it's just impossible for the Spike Factory to get past round 79. I really had no idea what was going to happen with the heli pilot, because I literally never use it. You have to play on fast track mode, but you are able to afford both the enhanced instruments and razor rotors upgrade before round 28, which allow it to pop camos and lead balloons respectively. I tried to get the most out of it by placing it in a spot where the rotors could shred a lot of balloons, and hopefully this can take us pretty far. With 2 of them, I was getting so close to being able to afford the Apache Dart ship, which I knew is going to be extremely powerful, but I could tell I was about to leak, so I quickly bought a 3-1 helicopter near the end, and sold it just in time to get the Apache for the rainbow regrows. Having 2 Apaches was doing well, but I still did a bit of heli supply crate farming, and it's a good thing I did, because round 76 proved to be way too much. So, now I at least had the money to buy another Apache and a few more razor rotors, but this still wasn't working, so I set every helicopter I had to follow mouse, and with all the helicopters right on top of the balloons, they got destroyed within 3 seconds flat. The whole reason I put the Apaches in the center of the map before is because they have a really big range, and I didn't want to waste it by having them in the corner, but I guess no matter what you do, you can't escape the power of this one box in the upper left corner of express shipping. I really didn't know you could stack the helicopters on top of each other like this either, but it's definitely funny to look at and maybe going to be part of the thumbnail. Round 84 definitely got a little bit scary, but it wasn't anything they couldn't handle, and with the ZMGs out, I just want to focus on popping those first, but I also can't leak anything else either, so I'm going to have to kind of go back and forth, and look at that, the helicopter's officially done it, beating BTD5 on Impoppable mode. The Engineer is arguably the best tower in all of BTD5 when you put it in the right situation, but we're going to find out how well that carries over when it has to fight all by itself. The early game is going to be an absolute joke though, as the Engineer Specialist building turns its turrets into super sentries, which are capable of shredding through the early balloons. On round 24 I bought Cleansing Foam, which removes camo from balloons, and soon after I got the Balloon Trap upgrade, which is the key to winning this whole thing. Every time it traps balloons, it also earns extra money, and once I moved it to a better spot where the trap could catch a lot more balloons before the turrets destroyed them, my money started going up very quickly. I got a bunch of 1-0 engineers further down the track in preparation for round 46, but the first couple of engineers already destroyed the Moab before it even got that far, which is a really good sign. Now that the balloons are becoming stronger, most of them are making it past the sentries, which means more for the traps, and now that they're more effective than ever, you can really see how quickly the money is starting to add up. The BFB got destroyed quicker than I expected, so I really do think that spamming down 1-0 engineers is definitely going to be the play. Round 63 has so many balloons that all the traps instantly get filled while more ceramics continue onwards, so I got a couple extra balloon traps and that got me through the round. It's kind of ironic though how the balloons are literally giving me extra money every time they try to defeat me now. I almost feel a little bad for them honestly, but not that bad, cause I still abused the crap out of it to get all the extra cash that I could. This allowed me to get a ton of 1-0 engineers, and I figured I might as well upgrade them to 1-3 so they'd be stronger. Making them 2-3 actually isn't worth it when you're using the special disc building, because that will no longer increase sentry production rate, although I did accidentally do it for a few anyways. All this cleansing foam is really doing a good job of making sure none of these regrow camo balloons escape, and since I had well over $200,000 saved up now, I knew this wasn't going to be a problem. The defense I already have is handling round 84, and I bought some more 1-3 engineers for the ZOMGs, but those two were eventually taken care of, allowing the engineer to join the club of towers that can beat Impoppable mode all by itself. Now unfortunately for the balloon shipper, even if you have a 2-4 and a 4-2, they can never pop camo balloons. The super vac ability can suck them in, but it just holds them there for a bit and then releases them without doing any damage, so yeah, this tower is a complete bust. Which leaves us with just one last tower, the monkey sub. And I know it's only been about 25 minutes for you, but it's taken me over 20 hours to put this all together so far. Of course I'm using portable lakes for them like I did with the Buccaneer, and I really have a good feeling about this tower going all the way. Its special disc building allows airburst darts to split into 4 instead of 3, and makes them move 25% faster, which is very powerful in the early game. I bought the submerge and support sub in order to remove the camo from the round 24 green balloon, then I got the ballistic missile upgrade for the round 28 leads. Since the Bloontonium reactor is so cheap, and it's kind of in the perfect spot, I got that once I could afford it as well. I think the key to beating the later rounds is going to be spamming down 2-3 monkey subs, and you can see they definitely did quite well against the first Moab. The first BFB was also no problem, nor were the round 63 ceramics. If they're this strong against everything, I really can't see anything else being a problem. I was curious if round 76 would pose a threat, but it stood no chance against the barrage of missiles and darts. And I should definitely mention that the sub is also able to remove both camo and regrow properties from balloons when you have the special disc building enabled, so that helped a ton as well. Out of everything the sub has, I would have to say it's really the advanced intel upgrade that's carrying it here, because that's what allows every sub to fire at the balloons simultaneously. I thought I had a good idea when I decided to finish off round 85 when I sold all my subs to get first strike abilities, figuring I could just use those to destroy each ZOMG, until I realized it actually doesn't destroy the balloons inside them as well. So, with an embarrassing ending, I sold all those subs and went back to my original defense, which allowed the monkey sub to become the last tower that has defeated Impoppable mode all by itself. Today I'm on a quest to find out if any towers can beat Mastery Impoppable mode in BTD5 without help from any other type of tower. To give each one the best chance possible, I'm going to use the longest map in the game, Express Shipping. I'll also be enabling the special disc building of each tower, and I also have all the upgrades in my monkey laboratory maxed out. Starting with the dart monkey, you might notice I'm immediately facing blue balloons on round 1. If you didn't know, that's what Mastery mode does. It makes every balloon one rank higher than normal, which will include Moabs and BFBs later on. But for now, I'm just relying on a 2-3 triple dart monkey, which provides a great amount of popping power for its cheap price. I already tested which towers can beat regular Impoppable by themselves, and this single tower went all the way to round 35 before failing. Wanna guess how far it could go this time? Well, still round 26 actually, which is really respectable. Of course I have more money to spend on defense, I just wanted to compare Mastery mode to normal Impoppable. I bought 4 more triple darts, which did a great job against the early rounds. But on round 40, what's normally the first ceramic balloons will become the first Moabs, so that's going to be a real test for them. Surprisingly though, it didn't go too poorly, and neither did the BFB on round 46. Soon after that, I got a Juggernaut to help with the balloons, and needless to say, it makes an incredible difference. Round 51 would have not even been remotely possible without it destroying all those ceramics, and after just a few rounds, the first Juggernaut's already racked up well over 4,000 pops. I also got the Super Monkey Fan Club ability in anticipation of the round 60 ZOMG, but that's when I discovered that instead of converting 10 triple dart monkeys like I had anticipated, it's going to convert 8 of them and the 2 Juggernauts into Super Monkeys for some reason instead, which I definitely don't want. The Fan Club is meant to deal with the Moab class balloons, while the Jugs handle all the resulting ceramics. I tried selling the Juggernauts and using the ability again without them present, so this time it could only affect 10 of the triple dart monkeys like I wanted, but as soon as I bought the Jugs again, the ability went right back to transforming them. Still though, the dart monkeys managed to beat the ZOMG, but they really weren't a fan of the packed Moabs on round 63. So I got a couple more Juggernauts that hopefully won't be transformed, and this seemed to be going better. But then I realized something pretty interesting. Even when the 2 Jugs at the top are getting turned into Super Monkeys, they're still firing their regular projectile along with the Super Monkey darts. So I was actually completely wrong to complain, because this is pretty awesome. With round 63 out of the way now, the end of round 65 is always another good test, especially in Mastery, because you have to deal with Moabs, BFBs, and ZOMGs at the end of it. But the Dart Monkeys are certainly passing that test. I was honestly kind of surprised at just how well they're actually doing through the late game, with the triple Dart Monkeys and Super Fan Club having high damage per second for the Moabs, and the Jugs having a ton of pierce and ceramic crushing power for everything else. But eventually, things definitely started looking tougher, and I focused on getting as much defense as I could. On round 82, just a few balloons managed to slip by, but I know it's far from being impossible. So I tried it again while making sure to spend all my money on defense, but somehow a few balloons still slipped through. So I tried a third time, being careful to fit as much defense as I could in the top corner where it's most effective, and this was finally enough to pull through. But now I know I'm going to have to really be careful in round 84, which has to be the most difficult round in all of Mastery mode by far. So I played it slow and careful, making sure not to waste any time and continuing to spend all my money on more defense, and the Dart Monkeys got super close, but just like round 82, they barely failed. So I gave it another try, this time getting a few Juggernauts before I started getting triple darts again, which ended up just barely being enough for them to pull through. And like I said, round 84 really is the hardest in Mastery, because round 85 went down like absolutely nothing. So just like we already knew, the Dart Monkey really is one of the towers of all time. If you haven't already seen the video where I tested every tower on regular Impoppable, there were many towers that already failed there. And the tack shooter is certainly one of them, as it has no way to detect camo balloons regardless of whatever upgrade you get for it. That means the sniper monkey is next up, which was successful last time, but I'm really not as sure about Mastery mode because it's going to be pretty tough to handle the early game and also manage to farm with the supply crate snipers, and the thing is, that extra income is going to be essential for getting through the later rounds. I was trying to do my best just to save up for the semi-auto upgrade that you have to get before getting the supply crate, but I was finding even that to be difficult. By round 38, the snipers started struggling to keep up with the balloons in general, and round 39 was too much with all the ceramics. So I tried setting all my snipers to target the strongest balloon on screen instead of the one that's closest to the exit, which should allow them to all focus on the ceramics at once and maximize their damage output. Then I slowly started switching them back to first so that balloons wouldn't start escaping, but the snipers still weren't very close to popping everything. So I tried selling a couple to get a semi-auto sniper since they attack 3 times faster, but like I expected, this didn't really make a difference. Then I tried it with 0-0s, and I'd love to cut this part out of the video because 0-0 snipers cannot pop lead balloons, so of course that wasn't going to work. So then I replaced them with 1-0s, which definitely got closer than I was before, but still, that wasn't enough. So from everything I can tell at least, the sniper monkey cannot beat Mastery Impoppable. The boomerang does have a way to pop camo balloons, but it's locked behind a $10,000 upgrade. I knew this was going to be futile, but I wanted to see if playing on Mastery mode would make a difference, and how much money I had by round 24, which is when you had to face the first camo balloon, but just like during regular Impoppable, I had nowhere near enough. Next up we've got the Ninja Monkey, which is definitely going to be interesting. This tower is very powerful in the early game, even on Mastery mode, and a double shot can go pretty far on its own. But on round 22 you have to face the first leads, so I had to sell that tower and replace it with a Flash Bomb Ninja, which is also not too shabby. Then I saved up for a Bloon Jitsu, and this did pretty well against the first Moabs. The BFB on round 46 wasn't too bad either. So far, I definitely like the ninja's chances. The ZMG also wasn't all that bad, but just like with the Dart Monkeys, all the packed Moabs on round 63 were certainly going to be a problem. So I sold a Bloon Jitsu in order to get a Bloon Sabotage, and waited to use it at the right time so I could slow down a lot of the balloons at once. But I must have forgotten that this isn't BTD battles, as the ability only slows down newly spawned balloons, not ones that are currently on screen. So I used it earlier on my next attempt, and then I sold and rebought the Bloon Sabo so that I could use the ability more quickly, which I did on the last set of Moabs. Still though, a few balloons were escaping, so I also got a ninja at the end of the track, and this was barely enough to allow me to get through the round. The end of round 65 was also looking pretty tough, but the ninjas did prevail on their first try. After a little while, they really started cruising as well, and even the ZOMGs weren't surviving very long anymore. Anything weaker than a BFB was just getting absolutely pulverized as well. I know I don't even have the ninjas in the best spots either, with a good amount of their range being wasted. The packed Moabs on round 76 were a good test though, but unlike 63, it really wasn't all that bad for the Bloon Jitsus to handle. But on round 79, I ran into my first real issue, with the insanely difficult 500 regrow ceramic balloons. I'm gonna have to use the sabotage ability pretty well here to maybe have a chance at it. Or maybe not, because I kept it constantly active and the ninjas seemed to actually perform worse than the first time. But like I said, I don't have some ninjas in the best spots, so I'll try moving them a bit and see if that helps. Sure enough, this seems to be the difference maker, as they just cleaned up the last of the ceramics. Round 82 has a ton of camo regro ceramics, which doesn't make a difference considering that the Ninja Monkey can always detect camo balloons, but maybe they're more densely packed or something, because the ninjas actually failed pretty badly here. Maybe I have to try mixing in some flash bombs, because they are able to temporarily stun non-Moab class balloons, but this still wasn't enough, so I tried moving the flash bombs up into the square in the upper left, where balloons passed by several times. I'm hoping this will keep the ZOMGs from getting in the way of the flash bombs this time, but alas, that still didn't work. I tried selling a couple more Bloon Jitsus so I could upgrade the flash bombs into Bloon Sabotages, and it wasn't for the ability but rather because buying the Sabo actually makes the flash bombs themselves stronger as well. But I still couldn't pull this round off, so I think it might be nearly impossible for the ninja, but if you're able to do it, shoot me a message on Discord, my tag will be in the description below. Now the bomb tower has no way to pop camo balloons without the Moab Assassin ability, which you can't afford by round 24, so that's where it fails. When I tested the Ice Monkey on regular Impoppable a couple weeks ago, I couldn't figure out a way to beat the Moab on round 46, so I really don't think it could handle several Moabs by round 40. And speaking of Moabs, the Glue Gunner is the only offensive tower in BTD5 that literally has no way to ever affect Moab class balloons, so it automatically fails. Now, even though I failed with the Buccaneer on regular Impoppable, a couple other people in my comment section said they were able to pull it off by using a water map instead of placing portable lakes on express shipping like I did, so I'm going to try them out on Flooded Lane, because the map is just Monkey Lane but with water everywhere instead, which is kind of perfect for our case. And shout out to Metroid Fan 717 for letting me know that this is the map they used in order to beat regular Impoppable using only the Buccaneer. Now thankfully this tower is very cheap and powerful in the early game, even on Mastery mode, and a single 2-1 Buccaneer was able to easily last until I could afford a destroyer on round 20. I also didn't have to worry about getting a cannon ship for the round 22 leads, since the tower's special disc building turns the dart it normally fires into a literal fireball. Things were going well until the Moabs on round 40, where I leaked a few balloons. So I restarted this attempt and figured I would place the Buccaneers more towards the center of the map, since this tunnel at the bottom prevents balloons from being popped, which is what I think caused me to lose on round 40 last time. Or maybe it wasn't, because doing this ended up in basically the same exact result, where I'd lost by just a few balloons. Interestingly though, I am able to beat this round if I use portable lakes on express shipping, since the destroyers have way more time to deal damage, so I guess Flooded Lane is only better for rounds where you have densely packed regrow balloons and need to destroy them quickly. I figured I would see how much further this attempt could go, and round 49 became a really big choke point for me, so I tried switching the destroyers from first to strong so that they could focus on the Moabs, then switching them back to first before I ended up leaking a ton of balloons. This got closer than my previous attempts had been, but it still wasn't enough. So I tried moving the destroyers more towards the center of the map so I wouldn't be wasting any of their range, but this still wasn't enough. So then I figured I would try selling everything to get an aircraft carrier, only to realize I actually couldn't afford it, so then I went with my last plan instead. The Monkey Pirate's ability allows you to sink any balloon up to a BFB in one go, so I could keep on buying that tower, using the ability, and then selling the tower and rebuying it to get the ability back immediately, and do the same thing over and over until all the Moabs are gone. Well, I accidentally just used one of the portable lakes abilities instead, so I gotta restart this attempt. My micro was also terrible anyways there, so I don't really care about that, but alright, here we go. This time I'm gonna get every single Moab, and you gotta be kidding me. Just a few balloons are gonna escape this time. Alright then, let's try that again. This time my micro has definitely been better than before, and now it's actually going to be regrowth ceramics taking me out. So let me try repositioning the destroyers once again, and I'm messing up the micro, but of course, just a couple small balloons are going to end up leaking. Finally, I was quick enough to use the monkey pirate ability on all the Moabs, then sell the tower one last time to replace it with a couple destroyers that could handle all the regrowth ceramic balloons at the end of the round. But I'm gonna have to babysit this tower for every round onwards so I can keep on using the monkey pirate ability when I need it, like right here on the very next round. Round 51 had the very same issue as 49, where it's difficult to deal with all the Moabs and then also pop all the regrowth ceramic balloons. But all I had to really do was reposition my destroyers for the 10th time, and then everything was smooth sailing. I really don't like how the Buccaneer forces you to babysit it with the Monkey Pirate's ability, but at least it was getting me through the rounds, and it didn't take very long to reach the point where I no longer really had to worry about using it, as I now had enough destroyers to really get through all of the Moabs and BFBs, and this definitely came at a good time because pretty soon I'm also going to be facing a ZOMG, which the Monkey Pirate's ability cannot do anything against. Surprisingly though, my army of destroyers actually shredded the ZOMG quite easily. But the real test is going to be the packed Moabs coming in just a couple more rounds. Sure enough, they were a bit too much. I really wonder if using the Monkey Pirate's ability on these Moabs would even make a difference because there's so many of them. Well, yeah, it actually does. You just gotta be quicker than I was on my first attempt. I also got an aircraft carrier to see if that could help because I had failed several more times at this point, but that actually performed a lot worse for me. I have a lot of trouble focusing when I try to perform micro, so I was really proud of myself for not really messing up and actually keeping a good pace for a whole minute on this attempt, but alas, I guess I should have sold a few destroyers near the entrance and placed them at the end because I ended up suffering this rather frustrating defeat. I spent a solid hour trying on this round, and each time I got close, this is what always ended up happening. If you have better micro or a better strategy than me, it definitely could be possible to beat this round, but I really don't think there's any shot of beating 500 regrowth ceramics or 50 BFBs and 10 ZOMGs, both of which you would have to face pretty soon after this. The Monkey Ace is the first tower that you can't even afford to get on round 1, and it's a real shame too, because with the special disc building enabled, you're only $5 short. Of course this also goes for the Super Monkey, so it's gonna have to be the Wizard Monkey that we try next. A lot of people consider this a pretty mid tower, but there's a reason that it's so popular when you first start off. It can easily handle all the early balloons as a 1-1 tower, which allows you to quickly afford the lightning bolt upgrade, and on beginner maps like express shipping, that upgrade is incredibly powerful. I also got a second lightning wizard, and my hope is to be able to save up for the dragon's breath, which I really think I'm going to need for ceramics and especially Moabs that are going to be coming out soon from now. When I tried wizard monkeys on regular Impoppable a couple weeks ago, I underestimated the dragon's breath and ended up having to rely on it just to survive through the last few rounds. You can see how much the 2-2 lightning wizards are struggling against ceramics, so I was thankful to barely be able to afford a dragon's breath before round 40 began. Thanks to having a much higher damage per second, it performs way better against these ceramic balloons, and even the Moabs are also getting taken care of, although just a couple balloons are going to be able to escape. So I got another wizard near the end of the track, which ended up being just barely enough. But on round 43, the same thing happened, with just a few balloons slipping by my defenses. I tried selling one of my wizards to upgrade the one at the bottom to a lightning wizard, along with switching the dragon's breath between first and strong to try doing more damage to the Moabs, which culminated in this attempt where literally only 2 red balloons managed to slip by. After that, I kept trying the same strategy, thinking it was bound to work soon, but alas, it actually didn't. I tried moving my wizard at the bottom right to what I thought would be a slightly better spot where it could cover a bit more of the track, but no matter what, I couldn't get as close as I did when I only leaked those 2 red balloons. So I thought that it might be better to just have every wizard in the upper left corner, along with making sure that they get to maximize their coverage of the track as well, but this just barely didn't work. However, on my next try, it actually did work, so I guess it just depends on how well you switch your targeting between strong and first. I figured I would sell one of my lightning wizards to get a second dragon's breath since I knew the BFB was about to come out, but I ended up being just a couple $100s short, and thus I couldn't defeat the BFB. So I sold another wizard that was only 1-0 in order to afford the second Dragon's Breath, and this ended up being enough to make it through the round. But I immediately lost again on round 47, so I can tell this tower probably isn't going much further here. I tried buying another 1-0 when I could afford it during the round, but this still didn't make a difference. So then I tried just leaving both of my Dragon's Breath wizards on strong for the entire round, and that didn't work either. So I'm gonna have to call it quits here, but let me know how far you can get in the comment section below. If a tower could earn a double fail, the farm and village would both be proud recipients of this reward. Not only can you not afford to start with either one of them on round 1, but even if you could, neither one of them can attack Bloons as a 0-0 tower. That brings us to the mortar, which did end up being successful on regular Impoppable. You might notice something that looks a bit strange though, which is that the mortar now has targeting options, and that's thanks to its specialist building. I think I want to keep it on strong, kinda like you would with a sniper, so that I can get the maximum damage output possible. I also want to go for this Burny Stuff upgrade as soon as possible, because that should be very powerful for its price. But with the way we're already struggling against yellow balloons, I'm not sure how much I like this tower's chances. But hey, after a little bit, things are actually starting to look up. I have a second mortar that's upgraded to 3-2, along with a 2-3 for camo detection, and they're doing pretty well together. Like the first ceramics on round 35 weren't really even an issue. Another perk that comes from this tower's specialist building is that it allows mortars to briefly stun balloons every time they hit them with a shot, and that also is making a huge difference. But I shouldn't speak too soon, because we still have to face the first Moabs on round 40. And yeah, they're looking to be a whole lot more difficult. I'm not even sure if we're going to pop them at all. Alright, finally, here they start to go. It's going to be close, but we did manage to survive at least. Round 43 also looks to be quite difficult, and the BFB on round 46 is really giving us a test. Like, is it even going to pop at all? Okay, finally, it's gone down into Moabs, and oh man, I can't even believe I just didn't lose there. That was insanely close. But round 47 is going to be where I fail, and I'm not really sure what to change, but I'll try switching all my mortars that are targeted to strong back to first. Of course, that actually performed worse, so then I sold most of my towers to afford a 2-4, and I kept on microing its ability, which can stun all the balloons, including Moabs on screen briefly, until I literally ran out of money, which did get closer than the last attempt, but this still wasn't enough. Then I replaced the 2-4 with the 4-2, and that also didn't work, so I'm going to have to say round 47 seems to be pretty impossible for the mortar to beat. Unfortunately for the Dartling Gunner, it's too expensive to afford on round 1, which means that the Spike Factory is up next. This tower is capable of beating regular Impoppable, but I'm not so sure about Mastery Mode. I don't even know if I place it far enough back, so if I end up failing early on, I'll just have to restart this attempt. But honestly, a 1-1 Spike Factory is extremely powerful, as it has 2 different buffs being applied at once. 50% extra pops on all spike piles from its specialist building, and another 40% from the popping power upgrade in my monkey lab. I'd really like to buy the even faster production upgrade when I can, but I'm not sure if I'd have enough money to get white hot spikes for the round 22 lads, so I'll go with that upgrade first. And it's a good thing I did, because I was right, I would have barely not had enough money for both in time. But once I could afford it, I upgraded the tower from a 2-1 up to a 3-2, which I've heard is the most efficient spike factory in this game for its price. I know it certainly helped with the ceramics on round 35, as the spiked balls have extra crushing power against them. And this tower continued doing quite well against all the regular balloons, not even allowing my second spike factory to get a single pop until round 39. But the Moabs on round 40 were a different story. So I restarted the attempt with my spike factory in a much better spot, as the balloons have to travel across this part of the track twice. And there's more time to produce spikes because they have to travel so far to reach them. All this extra time allowed my spike factories to destroy the Moabs on this attempt without them even needing to loop around the track a second time. On round 43, things were definitely a little bit tougher, but you can see how much time the factories get to produce more spikes if they can't defeat everything on the first go around. By round 46, I had 2 factories upgraded to 3-2, which was more than enough to destroy the slow moving BFB. But on round 49, you have to face like 20 Moabs, which was definitely too much to handle. So I tried replacing one of my 3-2s with a 2-3, because Moab Shredder Spike should help us deal with all those Moab balloons more easily. I also put a 3-2 in front of it in order to protect the Moab Shredder Spikes from being wasted on regular balloons, but this really didn't make a difference. So I'm gonna have to say round 49 seems to be pretty impossible for the Spike Factory to beat. Thankfully, the helicopter is the last tower that is too expensive to afford on round 1, and I'm actually pretty hopeful about the monkey engineer going all the way. With the super sentries you get from its specialist building, a single 1-0 tower, which barely costs over $1,000, can easily defend the early game, but I do have to get the cleansing foam upgrade in order to take care of the round 24 camo, and I want to get the balloon trap as soon as I can as well. Not only is it incredibly powerful against regular balloons, but it also generates extra income, which is going to be the key to getting past the Moabs on round 40. My engineer definitely isn't in the best spot to take advantage of this income generation though, as the turrets keep destroying the balloons too quickly. So I tried moving it back a little bit, which definitely helps some, but this is still far from being ideal. However, as the stronger balloons came out, I was able to fill the trap several times, and I definitely had some extra money by round 40. I tried spamming down a bunch of 1-0 engineers, but I think I was too slow, and I probably also want to have a second balloon trap further down the track where balloons pass by twice. Yeah, getting that second balloon trap was definitely the key to winning here. The amazing thing about the engineer is that unlike every other tower, it's actually benefiting from the balloons becoming stronger so quickly on mastery mode, as I'm able to generate more income with my balloon traps. Like round 43 was absolutely no problem for them. I figured I should also sell all my engineers near the entrance besides the balloon trap, because all the turrets are taking away so much of my potential income now. Instead, I can spread the 1-0s around the track, and surprisingly this actually did pretty well against the BFB, and for the first time, I'm actually saving up quite a good bit of money while continuing to survive through rounds that most towers had been failing miserably. Before I even had to face the ZOMG, I could tell the engineer is likely going to win the whole thing. In a single round, I was able to make 10,000 from the balloons. I figured I should use this money to upgrade some of my 1-0s into 1-3s, and yeah, the ZOMG got beaten pretty fast. Of course, there's still the packed Moabs on round 63, and while they were putting up more of a fight, the engineers handled those as well. Round 65 was tougher than I expected, but that would also fall, and even without me bothering to collect the traps much, I quickly had over 100,000 saved up, while my defense continued shredding through the balloons. It's been a while since I've gotten to say this, but soon after, I was on round 78, where you face 2 more waves of packed Moabs, and they proved to be no issue at all. But I figured it would be smart to get as many cleansing foams and balloon traps for the 500 regrowth ceramics that were about to be coming up, and even with a bunch of them in this corner, you can see a few of the balloons are still slipping by. Alas, with the cleansing foam at the bottom of the track as well, the engineers were able to pull through. Considering I have over 300,000 saved up now, even if I do lose, there is no way I couldn't just afford enough defense to beat the next couple rounds. I don't expect to get past round 84 with my current amount of defense though, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to buy some more. But all these turrets are in my way, so I gotta sell a bunch of them to fit enough engineers down, although I won't sell the ones near the front of the track because it does take a second for the sentries to actually appear once you begin the round. And yeah, as you can see, at first, there are barely any at the back of the track, but as the new engineers produce their sentries, the track quickly becomes flooded by them. The balloons are still getting close to the end, but this looks like it will be enough to defeat round 84, and of course on mastery mode, round 85 is actually easier, since it has just 5 ZOMGs. So with that, the engineer has officially beaten mastery Impoppable mode all by itself. According to this comment I just got, the balloon chipper specialist building allows it to pop camo balloons, but that definitely isn't true in the Steam version of the game. I have the specialist building maxed out, and even when I enable it, a 2-4 and 4-2 chipper both allow a camo balloon to pass right by. When I use the super vac ability, that just holds the camo balloon in place without actually doing any damage to it. So that leaves us with our final tower of the video, the Monkey Submarine. This tower had an easy time on regular Impoppable, so I am pretty hopeful about his chances for mastery. A single 1-1 tower can easily defend against the early rounds, and once you can afford the Airburst turrets upgrade, which costs less than $1,000, the tower becomes incredibly powerful. This makes it very easy to save up for the ballistic missile upgrade, which you do need to deal with the round 22 lead balloons. But in order to deal with the first camo balloon on round 24, I actually had to sell that sub I just bought to afford getting the support and submerge upgrade, and since I had a bunch of extra money left over, I also decided to get the Bloons reactor, which can destroy most of the regular balloons from this spot. Pretty soon after that, I was able to afford another 1-2 sub, and this combination was doing really well together. I figured I should buy a little more defense before the round 40 Moabs came out though, and this ended up being enough to take care of them pretty comfortably. I would have to say the most valuable upgrade this tower has is definitely the tier 2 advanced intel, which is very cheap because it allows every single submarine, which normally has a pretty small range, to attack any balloon that's within the range of any other tower you have placed. And since they have global range and a really high damage per second for their price, I continued spamming down 2-2 subs in preparation for the round 60 ZOMG. And believe it or not, they managed to absolutely destroy it. I was also really happy to see that round 63 didn't pose much of a threat either. It didn't take very long to reach the point where I knew the submarines were very likely going to pull this off. While I did experience a good bit of lag from all the projectiles, the pack mobs on round 78 got absolutely destroyed. I didn't even bother buying any more defense for round 84, and the submarines were still able to destroy all 50 BFBs and 10 ZOMGs. And I know I just said this, but if you can beat round 84, round 85 is going to be really easy, which means the submarine is officially the last tower that can beat Mastery Impoppable all by itself. Today we're going to find out just how far every single tower can go in BTD5, and to make things interesting, each tower will be allowed one radar scanner village if they have no way to pop camo balloons otherwise. Now in order to make this a true test of each tower's limit, we're going to be playing on the longest map in the game, express shipping, and choosing easy difficulty. Additionally, I'll be playing with a maxed out monkey knowledge lab, and I'll be using each tower's specialist building as well. First off, we have the dart monkey, which is easily one of the best towers in all of BTD5, so I have very high hopes for it here. Once I had down 3 triple darts, I knew I wouldn't have to worry for a while, because it's already enough defense to handle the first ceramics on round 40, and even the first Moab on round 46. And since I had so much money saved up at this point, I figured I would set up a defense that can last for a whole lot longer. So I got 2 Super Monkey fan clubs, which combined with the reduced ability cooldown I get from my monkey lab, should be enough to have the ability constantly active. I also set up several 4-2 juggernauts on the end of straight paths where they can be the most effective. This allowed the dart monkeys to absolutely crush the first BFB, along with the notorious pack ceramics on round 63. Juggernauts are known for being especially good at dealing with ceramics, although the Super Monkey fan club was handling everything pretty easily by itself, which even includes the dense layer of regro ceramics on round 76. It didn't take long before the dart monkeys had to face the first ZOMG on round 85, and it was no problem for them either. Now that we're past that round, the balloons from here on out will all be a random combination of ceramics, Moabs, BFBs, and ZOMGs. And as we keep getting further, the balloons are going to gain more speed and health as well, but my current defense is already struggling with these first few rounds past 85, so I'm going to fill the map with as many 2-3 dart monkeys as I can afford. This took longer to do than I'd like to admit, but now I can finally move forward. All this extra defense was making a huge difference at first, but by round 95, it already seemed to be struggling again. So I filled the rest of the map with triple darts now that I could afford to, and I even sold some that I had placed down poorly towards the beginning of the game in order to make sure I didn't waste any space. Unfortunately though, for whatever reason, the Super Monkey fan club will always convert whatever monkeys are closest to the top of your map first, so every time I use it now, all the monkeys up here on the right are getting converted because they're the highest ones on the map, and I find that a bit annoying because the extra firepower would be a lot more useful over here on the left where the balloons spend most of their time. So in order to sort of get around this, I started buying a bunch of fan club abilities on monkeys that are in this area, and if I use all of them at once, each monkey with the ability also gets converted, so I get a bunch of extra super monkeys as well. And all there is left to do now is see how far the dart monkey can actually get. And it's important to note that since the balloons are random past round 85, it's always possible to retry a round you lost on, and then get lucky enough to beat it the second time because the balloons will be different. So I'm setting a rule now. Once a tower has failed 3 times in a row to the same round, it officially is done. And this rule, I would quickly come to regret, as the dart monkey decided to psych me out quite a few times. First, it failed on round 125 twice, but then managed to get lucky enough to survive on the 3rd try, and then it failed again on round 126, twice more on 127, and finally, one more time on round 128, just for good measure. Surprisingly though, the dart monkeys then went on to survive round 129 and 130 without any more fails, but round 131 was finally enough for the dart monkey to officially be done. And was it worth taking an extra 20 minutes to get 6 more rounds? Well, if you like and subscribe, it certainly will be. Next up we have the tack shooter, which is the first of several towers that is going to need a radar scanner village just to pop camo balloons. But I am really curious how far it can actually go, because honestly I think this tower is kind of underrated in BTD5. It does a lot of total damage for a cheap price, and I'm pretty sure it has the cheapest 4th tier upgrades in the entire game as well. With that said, I actually let the round 24, 33, and 37 camos leak because it's really not worth trying to get a village yet, so I just kept on spamming down 3-2 tack shooters along with the single ring of fire that I had for lead balloons, and a lot of people will use 2-3 tack shooters in this game instead of 3-2s because they are better for regular balloons, but for the late game, the former is going to be better because it fires 16 projectiles per shot instead of just 8, which means it's going to be doing double the amount of damage to all of the Moab class balloons. And on round 40, I finally got my radar scanner village up because I know round 42 is going to have more camo balloons and I do want to have some lives left. The tack shooters had an easy time taking down the first Moab and the first BFB, along with round 63 as well. Round 76 was also not an issue for the tack sprayers whatsoever, so now I'm starting to really get excited for this tower. Once I got past round 82, I actually sold the village since there's no longer going to be any camo balloons and I don't want the tack shooters to continue getting any advantage from it. Now I also think that just like with the dart monkey, the best way to go really far with a tack shooter is going to be spamming down the 3rd tier towers on the entire map and then slowly replacing them with 2-4s as I can afford to do so. Normally, the Blade Maelstrom ability is quite powerful against regular balloons while having much less effect on the bigger ones. However, when you have enough of them, this starts to change. The ability also comes back incredibly quickly, so I think that this is going to get the tack shooter even further than what I had originally expected. Before long, they made it all the way to round 125, which is where the dart monkeys had failed for the first time. And just as quickly, they left it in the dust. 131 also doesn't seem to be their limit, so at this point, I can honestly say that the tack shooter has managed to even outperform my high expectations for it. Eventually I reached the point where it wasn't possible to run out of abilities no matter how quickly I use them, and this is because unfortunately, as you use abilities and as you get into the late game, the game is going to lag more and more, which actually limits the amount of abilities that you can use per second and keeps you from using all of them at once. So I stopped replacing tack sprayers with blade maelstroms and just kept on holding down the 1 key, which activates their special ability, waiting to see how far the tack shooter can actually make it. Finally, it lost for the first time on round 155, but I'm actually thankful for my 3-strike rule now because I started playing without recording and realized the game is less laggy without OBS running, which allows for more of the Maelstrom abilities to activate. So I restarted my laptop and closed anything unnecessary with Task Manager to make the game run as optimally as possible, and I even used slow mode to reduce lag further, but round 159 ended up being the ultimate limit for the tack shooter. Now I know everyone in the comments is going to mention it if I don't try upgrading my tack sprayers into rings of fire, so I did and they still failed on the same round, but man, 159 is actually insane. That game alone took over 2 hours though, so I'm really hoping not every tower is going to be so crazy. Up next we have the sniper, which tends to struggle against group balloons more than anything else, so I started off by getting a few 0-1 snipers, which have faster firing, before saving up for a 0-3 semi-automatic sniper. Having a higher rate of fire will help it deal with larger groups of balloons, and I also have to get the 4th tier supply crate upgrade as soon as possible. That way, I can begin sniper farming, which involves buying a 0-4 sniper, using its supply crate ability, and immediately selling and rebuying it to do the same thing. This way you get around the ability cooldown, and with my monkey lab giving me back 99% of the tower's original price when I sell it, I'm only sacrificing around $140 to get a crate that's worth between $500 and $1,500. Once I could afford the supply crate upgrade, I began using it to buy 2-4 snipers, which act both as my defense and sources of extra income. I know I said the sniper can struggle with grouped balloons, but since I was getting up so much defense, the packed ceramics on round 63 went down without any fight whatsoever. Eventually I got to the point where I had so many supply crate snipers, it didn't really make sense to bother sniper farming anymore, so I just focused on continuing to get 2-4 snipers up, and this is what it looks like when you activate all 322 abilities at once, which I believe is the most snipers you can fit on the map, or very close to it, because I spent quite a lot of time getting them into this grid-like formation. They also cause some lag though, so when I switch the game to fast forward, I can actually hold down the 1 key to get an endless supply of the supply crates. Well, I guess that's kind of redundant, and I'm actually missing some of them because the game is literally bugging out and lagging so much that it won't even register my mouse being near the supply crate until it's already disappeared. But like, I already have more money than I could ever need anyways, because the only thing I'm really planning to do now is start replacing 2-4 snipers with 4-2s, which are a lot more powerful against Moab class balloons, but I don't think there's even a significant price difference between the two towers. Just for fun though, I spent a few minutes holding down the 1 key, and I kid you not, once I let it go, it took a full 75 seconds for the planes to finally stop coming. And during that time, you can't do anything else in the game either, so it's not like technically lagging, but I guess it is? I don't know, it's kind of interesting though, to say the least. Regardless of that though, I had over 7 million saved up at this point, so I figured I would just sit back and let the snipers keep doing their thing for a little bit. And that's what I should have kept on doing, but I really had it in my head that a 4-2 sniper is going to be better than a 2-4 in the long run, so I started replacing them, and this ended up actually making my snipers do worse, which I can especially tell when I look back at the footage. But I got really frustrated because I wasted over an hour just switching the towers back and forth, and it's already hard enough to fit them in the grid once, but doing it 3 or 4 times is quite the chore. So yeah, I wasn't exactly having fun at this point, but the sniper did get up to around 132, and now I'm just gonna bite the bullet and finally switch all of the 4-2s back to 2-4s and see if that can make it any further. If it doesn't, then I really am all out of ideas, and I believe that would be the true limit of the sniper. Replacing all of them this time around took me over 30 minutes to do on its own, and that's partially my fault because it took me so long to realize that you can actually make it a lot easier to place the snipers by just lining up the barrel of the sniper that you're currently placing with the one that's above it. And apparently this really helped me out because I actually have an extra 10 abilities now as well, and sure enough, this did in fact get through around 132. So I certainly wasted a lot of time on that whole side quest, but at least I now know that the 2-4 sniper is simply better than the 4-2. Well, maybe not that much better, because they still failed on round 135. But despite my wrist being sore from placing and upgrading 1,000 towers unnecessarily, I am really happy that I didn't give in to the desire I had to quit before I had actually reached the true limit of the sniper. Now it's time for the boomerang to take its shot, and this tower might have one of the best specialist buildings in the game, as it allows the boomerang to fire 2 rangs at once, which literally doubles its popping power. This makes the 2-3 bionic boomer extremely powerful, although I am going to have to save up for the glaive lord as well, because that's the only way for the boomerang to pop camo balloons. And I did have to leak them on both round 24 and 33, but once I was able to afford this upgrade, I knew I wouldn't have to worry for a bit, because the glaive lord is also extremely good at handling non-Moab class balloons in general. So I'm thinking it would make the most sense to have a couple of them in the top left corner, while spamming down 2-3 boomerangs on the rest of the map to deal the maximum DPS to the Moab class balloons. This worked extremely well, as they were able to easily handle the classic round 63 and 76 ceramics, along with tearing through the ZOMG on round 85. So I guess this is yet another tower that's going well past round 100, yay me. But at least by this point, I was smart enough to set up all the 0-0 towers preemptively while the early free play rounds were going on. That way I can at least save time by not having to set up defense between rounds, which can already take like 20 minutes on its own. As I was upgrading my boomerangs, I realized I had already accidentally bought a bunch of the turbocharged abilities, so I guess my muscle memory is still active from all the 2-4 snipers I had to create before, whereas this tower is only supposed to be a 2-3. But that doesn't really matter anyways, because I was still able to fill the entire map with 2-3 towers, and now I have a bunch of 2-4 towers right near the entrance where I already would have wanted them to be. I honestly thought this tower was going to be pretty weak, but as you can see, the boomerang is already passing through the round 125 mark, and it wasn't long before it was also surpassing the mark set by both the dart monkey and the sniper monkey. So now it's still a pretty long road to reach the tack shooters mark, but the boomerang might actually pull it off based on how things are going right now. Speaking of the tack shooter, the boomerang eventually started experiencing the same issue where the special ability was causing too much lag to be fully used on fast forward mode. So I went through the painful task of slowing down the game to activate all of them at once, but eventually even this was causing a good bit of lag as well. Still though, we're already on round 155 now, and as the boomerang managed to surpass a round that even the tack shooter had fallen to, the weight of this video really started sinking in on me. I was thinking that I could have reasonably finished this video in 4 days, but I've already spent 15 hours on the video today, and I'm not even done with the 4th tower yet. So this is my last chance to either back out and cut my losses, or fully commit 50 plus hours to a game that most people consider to be irrelevant. Well, considering you're watching the video, I think you already know which option I chose. Despite my existential crisis, the boomerang finally lost on round 165, which completely blew away any expectation that I had for it. I made the mistake of starting this run around 12 AM and got forced to play until nearly 2:30 in the morning because of it. Alright you guys, I promise I've gotten all my complaining out of the way now, and next up we have the Ninja Monkey, which is one of the few towers that can actually pop camo balloons as a 0-0, so I don't have to worry about leaking any of those for once. But to deal with lead balloons, I did have to get the Flash Bomb Ninja, which is also pretty effective against the other balloons as well, since it can temporarily stun them. Although the Bloon Jitsu definitely is going to be able to do the highest damage per second to the Moab class balloons later on, so that's the main one I'll be focusing on. I started getting down the 0-0 super early this time, and honestly I'm kinda surprised at how powerful they already are. Like the Moab got tore through pretty quickly, and even the BFB wasn't much of a match for my army of mainly 0-0 towers, but I did start upgrading them before round 63 had arrived, and the Bloon Jitsus absolutely destroyed all the ceramic balloons there, along with round 76 as well. In fact, it went by so quick, I hardly even had time to notice the balloons on screen, and pretty soon, the ZOMG was also taken down. As you can see, I had already preemptively been filling the map with 0-0 towers, which I'm planning to upgrade into Bloon Jitsus, but amongst the sea of them, you might actually notice I have a few Bloon Sabotage Ninjas, which have a special ability that can slow down all newly spawned balloons, even ZOMGs, by 50% for 15 seconds. Unlike in BTD battles, the ability can only slow down the balloons a single time though, so it won't be as effective here, but it should still make a huge difference. And on round 132, the ninjas actually lost for the first time because I wasn't using the ability, so let's see how much of a difference it actually makes. I really have to say though, I'm surprised by just how many towers are doing better than the Dart Monkey so far. I guess I've really been underestimating a lot of the other towers in this game. The Ninja Specialist building also gives each ninja you have placed the ability to spawn a 0-0 clone of itself, so I started using that as well, although I'm really not sure how much that's going to help, but every bit makes a difference of course. And using 200 plus special abilities means that you're going to have to start slowing down the game in order to get all of them activated. So that's what I started doing, just like with the last few towers, and this allowed me to continue filling the map with Bloon Jitsu ninjas, although I think that since they're more expensive than the boomerangs were, this might actually be the first time I don't get to fill the entire map with a tower at once. Now on round 168, I decided to see what would happen if I didn't use the Shadow Ninja abilities, and was surprised to see that they immediately proceeded to actually lose. So I guess those 0-0 towers really are making some difference after all. And ultimately, with me using them, along with the sabotage abilities of course, the ninja ended up making it to round 175, surpassing the previous record holder of the boomerang by 10 full rounds, the same way it did to the tack shooter. But the bomb tower has a chance to humble everything that's come before it, as it literally has multiple upgrades that are dedicated to damaging Moab class balloons. But in the early game, it isn't so hot, as this is the second tower that can't pop camo balloons on its own. Well, for the sake of full transparency, the Moab Assassin ability can actually pop camo balloons, but it only does 2 damage to them, and on round 82, there are 400 camo regrow rainbow balloons, which would constantly be, well, regrowing, along with requiring you to use hundreds, if not thousands of abilities just to take them all down, which would not be possible. So I got a radar scanner village on round 38, and I also have a 4-2 balloon impact, which is easily the best way the bomb tower has to deal with non-Moab class balloons, as it has a ton of stunning capability. But of course, with the first Moab quickly approaching, it was also time to get a couple Moab maulers. Now, I am buying the frag bomb upgrade because it gives the tower a bit of extra range, and I also really think that those frags are actually going to help us deal with the thousands of ceramics that we're facing in the free play rounds as well. And now I have 2 balloon impacts near the entrance to also help us catch them. This worked incredibly well against both round 63 and 76, so I have a good amount of confidence in this plan moving forward. And as always, the ZOMG was next to fall, so now it's time to see just how far the tower that's literally dedicated to Moab mauling can actually get in BTD5. I quickly noticed how effective they are against grouped Moab class balloons, which makes sense because this tower has a projectile with a blast radius that can damage several of them at once, whereas the ninjas, for example, had to focus on only a couple at a time. This allowed me to rely on a relatively small amount of Moab maulers while I filled the entire map with 0-0 towers, and the balloons still aren't even getting anywhere close to being a threat yet, and we're already past round 100 at this point. So I continued getting up more and more Moab maulers now, and eventually every single bomb tower had been upgraded. From that point, I figured I would let them handle things for a while before I worried about getting the Moab Assassin abilities, and I was actually able to walk away from my computer to eat something in the time that it actually took for the bomb towers to really begin struggling. And at that point, I had enough money to buy a ridiculous amount of the Moab Assassin abilities, which also don't cause too much lag, meaning I could actually use them without turning off fast forward. It didn't take too long before every bomb tower was now a Moab assassin, but then something rather tragic happened. Okay, well, that's an exaggeration, but it really sucked, alright? Because I was using something to hold down the 1 key on my keyboard for the special abilities, and when the bomb tower failed on round 172, I lifted it up, which caused the game to return to the main menu, thus deleting the game I had just played. And clearly, the reason I lost was because a few ceramics slipped by, which means this tower can still go further. So I had to spend 2 hours replaying the entire game to finally get back to the point where I was before, and this time I mixed in a few balloon impacts and had all my Moab assassins near the end targeted to first instead of strong. Seriously, if you haven't liked the video yet, surely I must have earned one by now. But this allowed them to set a new record with round 182, but still it was just a few balloons that were slipping by. So I set even more of the Moab assassins to first and got a bunch of balloon impacts to line the end of the track, but this only got us through 1 extra round. So then I began slowing down the game and also activating the bomb's double range activated ability that it gets from its specialist building, along with still using the assassin abilities of course, but this still ended up actually failing. So I believe we have truly hit the limit of the bomb tower now. The next tower up is the Ice Monkey, which is now able to pop white and zebra balloons thanks to its specialist building. Additionally, it can also remove the camo from balloons now as well, so they're not going to be an issue either. In fact, the Ice Monkey is quite powerful against all regular balloons. However, it's not really equipped to handle Moab class balloons, at least not in a traditional sense. So I've been spamming down 2 0 Ice Monkeys since they actually have the Snap Freeze upgrade, which can each do a single damage to the Moab as it passes by. But as you can see, this already was barely enough to actually even pop it. And you might be thinking I should have just gotten the ice shards before, but this is why I said the Ice Monkey isn't equipped for Moabs in a traditional sense, because the ice shards will only try to attack regular balloons. However, if something like a Moab happens to be on top of one of those balloons, then the ice shards can also damage that as well. So my plan was to start mixing ice shards in with all the 2 zeros that will be attacking ceramics, and then also damaging the bigger balloons, at least ideally. And this was sort of working out, but it definitely wasn't as effective as I'd been hoping for. Before the ZOMG came on round 85, I bought the Absolute Zero upgrade so that I could slow it down, and this actually was enough to just barely take it out. However, just a few rounds later, the Ice Monkeys already lost to the first free play ZOMGs that they had to face. But I did have some money saved up, so I got as many 2 0 ice towers as I could for extra damage, and as you can see, I also do have several ice shards mixed into areas where I'm hoping that they'll be attacking ceramics, but this still wasn't enough to beat the round. So I tried selling some of my 2 0 ice towers to get more ice shards near the entrance, hoping that this might make the difference, and I did beat a few more rounds, but it was only because the game decided not to send any ZOMGs on those rounds, and as soon as it did, the ice failed once again. So from everything I can tell, the ice tower is our first that can't even get past the ZOMGs in free play mode. But our next tower probably wishes it could even make it that far, because the glue gunner not only needs a radar scanner village to deal with camo balloons, but it also has absolutely no way to attack Moab class balloons in this game. As you can see, neither one of this tower's 4th tier upgrades have any effect on the first Moab on round 46, so this is where the glue gunner loses. The Buccaneer is the first of 2 towers that I'll be playing on a different map. Since it has to be placed in water, it actually makes sense to use Flooded Lane, which has the most water placements available of any map in the game. If I played on express shipping, I'd have to use portable lakes, and you can't fit that many of them, plus you can only fit 4 Buccaneers into each lake, which you can see is a real pain just to even pull off. Now, since this map is just a flooded version of Monkey Lane, it still has a decent amount of track length as well, and I'm able to place the Buccaneers much more ideally. The Destroyer is already quite powerful for its price, so with the Buccaneer specialist building turning its dart into a fireball, it's even more insane. This also prevents lead balloons from ever being an issue, and pretty soon, the first Moab was easily taken down on round 46. After that, I continued setting up more of the 0-0 towers, while also making sure to upgrade the ones closer to the entrance into more destroyers. A 3-1 Buccaneer should be the most efficient way to deal damage, at least for now. And sure enough, they had no issue with the first BFB, nor with the round 63 or 76 ceramics. And after that, it was time to face the ZOMG, which also went down without much issue. And at this point, you can really see how much better Flooded Lane actually is for this tower, with just how many Buccaneers that I'm actually able to fit. My plan is to have the entire map filled with 3-1 destroyers, and then let them go as far as possible. And once they fail, I'll use whatever money I've saved up from popping balloons to start upgrading the destroyers into aircraft carriers, and we'll see how much further that gets us. And it looks like the destroyers got to round 121 by themselves. Now, I'm not even sure if the carriers are going to actually make that much of a difference, but I have enough money to get a decent amount of them, so let's see what they can do. Well, I should have known all these extra projectiles were going to lag the game, but it does look like the round is getting taken care of, and sure enough, This upgrade is actually a lot more powerful than the destroyer, so I'll keep using the money I earn to upgrade them as I go on, until I lose again, at which point I'll sell some of the destroyers to get more aircraft carriers, and we'll see if that was actually worth doing. The reason I say if, is that an aircraft carrier upgrade costs as much as 4 entire destroyers. So yeah, it's an improvement when you're just upgrading a ship from 2-3 to 2-4, but if you have to sell several destroyers to get one carrier, that's a little bit different. Regardless though, I ended up getting to round 143, so then I replaced some of the destroyers with aircraft carriers, which did get us through 2 more rounds, but as soon as there was a huge rush of 0MGs on round 145, they still couldn't keep up. So then I tried having nothing but the carriers, which also failed on the same round, so this should be just about the true limit of the Buccaneer. Now the Monkey Ace, or if you're like me, the Airplane Monkey, would probably be really bad without any 3rd tier upgrades, but its special this building as its machine gun, which absolutely tears through nearby balloons. However, until you can afford one of the 4th tier upgrades, the Ace actually has no reliable way to pop lead balloons. All it can do is randomly drop these pineapples, which of course have a really good chance of missing. But if you have enough 0-1 aces, you'll end up catching every lead balloon regardless, and pretty soon, I sold my 1-0s to get a 4-2 Spectre, which should have no issue catching everything that the game sends at us for a while. This includes the first Moab and BFB, along with round 63 and 76. Since this tower has such a large base though, I definitely won't be able to fit nearly as many of them as I have been able to with previous towers, which might affect how far it can ultimately go. But pretty soon, the first UMG was also taken down, and my plan now is to actually try filling the map with 2-4 ground zeros, since their special ability does 350 damage to every single balloon on screen at once. And I actually just discovered something amazing. When you destroy balloons with the ground zero, you get 100% of their pop value, whereas normally, pops are worth less and less as you get past round 50. So this allowed me to very quickly fill the entire map with this expensive tower, but there is just one issue: lag. And I mean a lot of lag. So I'm going to stop recording for a while and just have BTD5 running on my laptop in hopes of improving the gameplay quality a little bit. But don't worry, I'll begin recording again as soon as anything important is happening. Surprisingly, the Monkey Aces got to round 155 without me even using any special abilities, but I also realized something while this was happening, which is that I kind of did this whole thing backwards. If I replace all the ground zeros with Spectres, the Ace should be able to survive for a lot longer without me having to use abilities, and once those fail, then I can start getting the ground zeros again and using the ability to get the true max from this tower. And I definitely should have used the Spectres first, because not only are they making it further, but they also lag the game a lot less as well, since there aren't a million projectiles on screen at once. So now I'm going to start off by getting 10 ground zeros since they just failed, and go from there. Alright, well that was actually 13, but you get the point. And from here on out, I started trying to make sure I was evenly spacing out the use of these abilities so that ceramics wouldn't slip by, while also not allowing any to build up in the queue so that I wasn't wasting them. But let me tell you, this has been absolutely crazy. I was able to watch 4 episodes of the show George Lopez while doing nothing besides pressing the 1 key on my keyboard to keep on activating these abilities, and eventually, on round 216, the game started lagging so badly, even without me having fast forward mode on, that it literally stopped me from being able to use abilities anymore, which caused me to lose. But I knew that the Ace was not done yet, so I kept giving myself carpal tunnel syndrome, and finally, it failed on round 227, making the Monkey Ace far and away our new record holder. The next tower we're using is so expensive that I'm actually going to select fast track mode to start on round 25 with 5,400 cash, so that way I can afford a 0-0 Super Monkey. But this tower also can't pop lead balloons until you can afford the Plasma Vision upgrade, so I had to leak them on round 28, 30, and 32, but not the camos on round 33, as the Super Monkey special this building allows this tower to pop camos as a 0-0 now. After that, I got the Plasma Vision, and my plan is to save up for the Sun God upgrade, which should be extremely effective for a while. Now you've all heard this part before, the Moab on round 46 went down without any issues. But to be fair, I did notice that the Plasma Monkey really struggles to actually catch the faster balloons a little bit, but no matter, as it wasn't long before I could afford the Sun God, and for once, I don't think it actually makes sense to start filling the map with 0-0 towers, because the Super Monkey is too expensive to do that with. So instead, I'll just take it one Sun God at a time. All of our standard benchmark rounds went down without any issues, and once free play had begun, I wanted to test something out. Since the Monkey Ace's ground zero ability allowed me to earn more money than normal, I wonder if the Technological Terror's ability can do the same. So I got a few of them in the upper left corner, but alas, they unfortunately do not. Otherwise, I might have actually had the chance to fill this entire map with Sun Gods and set a really insane record. So for now, I'm just going to let the sun gods go as far as possible, and then I will get tech terrors in the upper left corner again and start using their special abilities once the super monkey fails. Although I'm not going to replace all the sun gods, because keep in mind, a tech terror only has 5 pierce from its actual projectiles, which means it can only damage 5 balloons at once per arm. Whereas the sun god has enough pierce to shoot across the entire map, meaning it's damaging dozens of balloons at once with its own projectile. Now, they ended up failing on round 163, so it's time to see just how much further we can get with some technological terror abilities in this upper left corner where the balloons have to loop by several times. And keep in mind, this ability does 1000 damage to as many as 100 Moab class balloons within the radius of the tower activating it. Well, apparently the sun god is so much better than the tech terror that this actually didn't help at all because we failed on the same round. So now, it's time for my final idea, which is to start creating temples. Obviously, I can't sacrifice other towers to it, but I can still sack a $31,000 04 tech tower to each temple, which will give the main projectile its max strength, along with adding a volley of attacks. Now, I don't think this would have actually been able to get any further if the temple didn't get a new activated ability from the special it is building. This allows it to briefly attack with double speed and fire 2 beams at once, which has been enough to get us substantially further. And as we make more money from the balloons, what I've been doing is getting a new sun god and a tech terror next to it, then I'll get a few more sun gods towards the center of the map, and once I know I'll have 80k, I sell those sun gods and turn the other one into a new temple. And ultimately, this got us all the way to round 210, so if the Aces Ground Zero hadn't been so ridiculously overpowered, this would have been a really impressive new first place. And now, it's time to see what the Wizard Monkey can do, which I guess is really called the Monkey Apprentice, but yeah, I'm sticking with Wizard Monkey. Now of course, this tower has zero issue with camo or lead balloons, and in my previous testing, I found that the Dragon's Breath is a better value than the Phoenix, so I'll be filling the map with 1-3 wizards first. But I will still be testing out the Phoenixes once these wizards fail, and the reason I'm skipping over the Lightning is because I can save a good amount of money by not getting it, and I don't think the Lightning actually does much of anything against the Moab class balloons. Now the Dragon's Breath did a good job at handling everything up to round 85, but for a brief moment, I actually thought this game was tossing me a lifeline when it looked like the wizard was struggling with the early free play rounds. But as I kept on getting up more Dragon's Breath, that quickly started to change, and of course, they also make the game lag a ton, so once again, I am going to stop recording for a little bit to hopefully have the game run faster. The Dragon's Breath wizards officially failed on round 134, so I replaced a bunch of them with Phoenixes, and this actually is more powerful, but it's so laggy now that there are times when the game won't let me use the abilities for several seconds despite me constantly spamming down the 1 key and not being in fast forward mode. So I'm going to have to continue not recording and probably restart my laptop again to optimize the game somewhat. And I was able to get things running more smoothly, but honestly, the wizard didn't go as much further as I'd expected, with the Phoenixes ultimately failing on round 138. Now this should go without saying, but the village and farm both cannot do anything. To be fair, the village does have one upgrade that can attack, but even if you use fast track mode, it's completely impossible to save up for it. The mortar should be pretty interesting though. And the first thing you should notice is that it actually now has targeting options thanks to the mortar's specialist building, which is going to make this tower so much better than it would have been otherwise. Every balloon that's hit also gets briefly stunned now, which is just an extra cherry on top. And I don't expect any of the balloons to really be an issue, although it's important to note that since the mortar can't pop black or zebra balloons, I have to make sure to get the Burning Stuff upgrade so that they can set them on fire and damage them that way. I'm also really curious how the mortar will actually fare against Moab class balloons, especially once we get to free play. Based on my experience beating Impoppable mode with this tower, the 4-2 big one is better against them than the 2-4 artillery battery is. However, the battery comes with a special ability that can stun every balloon on screen temporarily, and it's a really temporary thing, it's like a second. But I will be buying and selling the tower over and over to keep stunning the balloons as much as possible once it becomes necessary to do so. You can already tell though, the mortar is struggling a little bit with the first Moab, but with ceramics, it's the complete opposite. And this has to be the first time that you literally can't even see round 63 making it onto screen basically. And for some reason, the big one says it only does 3 damage per shot, but in reality, it actually does 5, just like on the Flash version. So yeah, these balloons never really stood a chance. But honestly, I really do think the mortar would have failed pretty early during free play if it hadn't been for one thing. I quickly noticed I was getting my defense up suspiciously quickly, and as it turns out, the mortar appears to have the same income generation glitch as the Ground Zero. So it didn't take long to get my entire map filled with big ones, and now it's time to see just how far they can make it on their own. I'm definitely really curious about it myself, because honestly I wasn't expecting to get this chance to fill the entire map up with them, so yeah, this could be pretty cool. But can you imagine if I had to try doing all of this micro myself? Like, it would literally be impossible for the mortar to do anything. But with that being said, for a while here, they were handling things really well, but eventually, the mortars would end up failing on round 140. But before I started using the artillery battery, I wanted to see if switching some of the big ones over to strong would actually make a difference, so I switched about half of them, but instead, this just caused some really weird lag, and they definitely did not make it any further. So then I began trying to micro the artillery battery ability, and this did get me through a round, but my micro was already pretty bad, and the lag was making it worse, so I figured I would try selling several of the big ones to replace with batteries, and that way I can have the balloons stun for longer. But this wasn't enough to survive, so then I had the horrible idea to replace every big one that remained, which led to me spending 15 minutes on a single round, as the balloons moved 1 pixel per second since they kept getting stunned, and this ended up failing anyways. So I have to admit, with this tower, if you had better micro than me, you could definitely get a little bit further using all big ones in a single artillery battery, but this is definitely close to the tower's limit, I believe. And now it's time for the Dartling Gunner, which I'm placing in the bottom right corner so it can shoot across the entire map, while also aimed at the upper left corner, where balloons spend the most time. This tower can actually see camos as a 0-0 in the game like the Ninja, but when it comes to leads, the Dartling Gunner has the silliest upgrades imaginable, because for some reason, actual laser beams cannot melt lead, but poison darts can? Okay, if it works, it works. My plan for now is to keep getting more 2-1 Dartlings, which are already extremely powerful, especially for their price. And once I can afford it, I'll be getting the Ray of Doom over the Bloon Aerial Denial system, because when I was trying to beat BTD5 with a single tower, I found that both of them do about the same damage per second to individual targets. However, the Ray of Doom has enough pierce to shoot across the entire map, which the Bloon Aerial Denial system definitely cannot do. So the Ray of Doom is probably going to be better during free play. Additionally, it also nearly instantly destroys anything ceramic and below, so with that tower, there shouldn't really be a chance of leaking any regular balloons, which has caused us to lose several times with other towers. As for now though, the army of 2-1 Dartlings has been able to easily handle the first Moab on round 46, along with the first BFB on round 60. And while they can't handle ceramics like the mortar did, those did not prove to be an issue either. Pretty soon, it was time to face round 85 with the first ZOMG, and now that free play is beginning, I am going to get up my first Ray of Doom, which you will quickly get to see the true effectiveness of. Or maybe I'll just have to eat my words, because at first it did seem to be quite powerful, but somehow the Ray of Dooms actually began allowing ceramics to pass by, and they had already lost on round 129. So I'm going to have to try the Bloon Aerial Denial system after all. And, well, I can admit when I was wrong, because these are actually doing way better than the Rod, despite having the limitation of lower pierce. Although the Dartling Gunner still looks less impressive overall than what I had expected, I can't lie. And as I began pressing the 1 key for the tower's special ability, I realized this was getting ridiculous. So I installed Auto Hotkey, but I got frustrated when I couldn't find a script within 5 minutes, so like a caveman, I'm continuing to sit here, pressing the same key over and over. But honestly, while the bads did make it further, they still ended up failing by around 159, which is really confusing to me, because when I announced this video, someone in my comments said the Dartling was basically infinite and had gotten all the way up to around 445. So I looked to see if they had said anything else in the replies, and as it turns out, they actually used the map called Maze to pull this off and had a mix of Ray of Dooms and Bloon Aerial Denial systems. But this is insane. Apparently they weren't even playing easy mode, it was Impoppable. So I'm guessing they took advantage of the straight paths on this map and probably used the lock in place feature that the Dartling Gunner gets from its special disc building. So that's what I'll be doing now for potentially the next 12 hours, because 445 rounds would take at least that long just to get through, and I'll be back with you guys when something interesting happens. Something I noticed after playing for a while is that the 4th tier Dartlings aren't really getting that many more pops than the simple 2-1s, so I think I should focus on filling up the map with them first before getting the rods and bads. Also, I don't think locking them in place actually makes any sense after all, so yeah, I haven't been doing that. But I was definitely right about getting the weaker Dartlings first, as this was really helping, so I continued filling the map with 2-1s, and then began upgrading them to laser cannons and Hydra rocket pods, which eventually I'll be upgrading into those 4th tiers. This allowed them to quickly get past where they had failed on express shipping, and eventually I had to slow down the game so I could aim the Dartling Gunners, but this part is really tough for me because I still failed on round 187, and I know after what you've seen in that comment, this is incredibly disappointing. I feel the same way. I don't want to deliver such a subpar result, and clearly I'm the one who's playing poorly and allowing the Dartling Gunner to lose, because it's up to me to control it. So I tried again, and I was able to beat the round, but but I also think I should get the bats first, since they're about half the price and seem to be really powerful, and then if I can afford it, I'll worry about getting the rods again. The gameplay was pretty miserable at this point because it was going by so slowly, and I stopped recording to reduce the lag, but eventually, after a few hours, I managed to get to around 270, which involved me failing quite a few times along the way, so I just do not understand what Hunter must have done, but hopefully he sees this video and can let me know, because I'm definitely not very good with the Dartling quite clearly. But now, we're on to the Spike Factory, and I know you're thinking I shouldn't have placed it so far up on the track, but I just don't want every round to take forever in the beginning, so that's why I didn't put it further down, and I promise you this tower will still hold up in the early game regardless. And you might have noticed how the 0-0 Spike Factory was already generating some full spike piles, and that's because each pile of spikes can actually pop 50% more balloons thanks to the Spike Factory special it's building. And then on top of that, they also have a 40% chance of gaining double their normal popping power, which is thanks to the way that the damage upgrade works that comes from your monkey lab. This should go without saying, but the Spike Factory doesn't need an upgrade to pop camo balloons, and it has a cheap way to deal with leads as well. So I upgraded it to a 3-2, which has spiked balls that do extra damage to ceramics and overall handle regular balloons extremely well. Now my plan is to fill this bottom area with Spike Factories next, because balloons have to wrap around this part of the track twice, and it's far enough down to give them a good amount of time to actually cover the track before the balloons reach it. I'm going to start off by getting 3-2s and upgrading them into 4-2 spiked mines, which will be really powerful for a long time, but eventually I do think it will be worth getting some 2-4s as well, since they come with Moab Shredder spikes and an ability that can cover the entire track with them, and those spikes are extremely powerful, well, against Moabs, I mean it's in the name. Now you all know the next line, the ZOMG went down without any issues, and now that we're entering free play, I'm gonna start getting some 2-4s. At first, I tried placing them in the center of the map so the ability could cover the whole map evenly, but then I realized that's kind of dumb on my part, so I filled the left corner with them. That way they can cover the area where the balloons spend the most time, and all the ceramics that don't get caught up here can just be dealt with by all the spiked mine factories at the bottom of the track. At first I wasn't really sure about this plan, but it did start becoming more effective as I was able to build up my defenses further, but as always, the lag was getting pretty bad, so I stopped recording for a while. Eventually, I actually sold the 2-4 so I could fill nearly the entire map with 2-3s, because that is a more reliable form of defense when you have so much lag, as opposed to special abilities that sometimes won't even activate. And just to show you how bad things have gotten, it took the game like 20 or 30 seconds to finally register that I had clicked on an upgrade, and another minute to realize I had clicked off the tower. The game is so bad now, I can't even activate special abilities while fast forward mode is turned off, and apparently it's using about 25% of my CPU by itself, whereas everything else on my laptop combined is using about 5%. If I understand correctly, this game is coded in a way where it can't take full advantage of your system, so I mean I'm really sorry, I literally have 8GB of RAM still free and 70% of my CPU not being used, but the actual game itself is starting to hold me back. The Spike Factories ended up failing on round 151, so I'm going to try selling the spiked mines I have now and replacing them with Moab Shredders, and even though this seems kind of futile, I'm going to spend the rest of my money upgrading a bunch of the 2-3s back into 2-4s near the entrance, even though I only get to use the abilities once at the beginning of the game. Oh, I just realized I actually missed a spot and didn't upgrade one of my Spike Factories, and now it's too late to even use the special abilities that first time, so I restarted the game, fixed the towers, and used all my special abilities for the first and only time this round. Literally, I can spam the 1 key as much as I want, and nothing happens at all. I guess the game is having trouble accounting for every single pile of spikes that is on the ground at once, but this change did get me through the round, and it's funny how all the abilities finally activate right when the next round begins, as the game can finally process things normally for a brief moment. I developed sort of a strategy in all this chaos, where I would crush the first wave of balloons with all the abilities, allowing the rest of the spike factories more time to cover the track, and then I'd wait for moments where I noticed the lag has gone down a bit because a bunch of the spikes got used up, and try to activate all the abilities in those moments as well. Although having OBS running while playing definitely makes those moments a lot more rare, so I only recorded this footage to have something to show for what I was explaining. Ultimately, they ended up getting to round 180, which was definitely helped by the fact that I could actually activate abilities when I was getting close to losing because most of the spikes were being used up for once. Just like with the Super Monkey, the helicopter required me to play on fast track mode in order to start with it, and I have a feeling that this is going to be another laggy tower as well. But after dealing with the Spike Factory, I should be prepared for just about anything. Thankfully, the Razor Rotor upgrade allows the tower to pop lead balloons for a relatively affordable price, and what I'm going to do now is actually lock the helicopter in place on a spot where the balloons pass by several times because the pursuit AI is actually really terrible at using the rotors to pop anything. But once I can start affording to get forward to Apache dart ships, I'll definitely switch those over to pursuit. However, it's important to note that, just like with the sniper monkey, the helicopter actually has its own supply crate from the support Chinook upgrade on the right path, so I'm gonna have to save up for that one first. And here's the thing about that. It doesn't just give you cash, but also gives extra lives. Now thankfully for us, the first crate it gives is always going to be cash, which means you can helicopter farm by selling and rebuying the tower, then using the ability the same way that you can with the sniper monkey. A couple rounds before the first Moab came out, I was able to afford my first support Chinook, which I would then use to afford my second, then my third, and eventually I had the entire map filled. So now, my plan is to go as far as possible with a map full of 2-4 helicopters, so I can generate as many extra lives as possible, but whenever I'm actually about to lose any lives, I'll quit out of the game before the round can end, then come back in and sell a few of these support Chinooks for Apache dart ships, which should have a way better time handling all the balloons. Now, I thought that I was already going to have to do this on round 95, but luckily for me, all the downdraft abilities that you have to buy before getting the Chinook actually managed to blow all the ceramics back to the entrance and they got taken care of. And it wasn't long after that, my lives officially went over the 100,000 mark. But pretty soon, I did end up having a lot of balloons escaping, so now it's time to get a few Apache dart ships. But I really just want to get the minimum amount that can successfully defend, so I can keep as many Chinooks as possible. So I'll try getting 5 and seeing how that does. Well, I guess that's going to be easier said than done because now all the helicopters are in my way, so I can't see anything. But only getting 5 definitely was the right call, as that made a huge difference to the helicopter's firing power, so yeah, I guess I'm just going to keep repeating this process until the entire map has been filled with the Apache dart ships, and they should have quite a few extra lives to keep them afloat. Eventually, I decided I would try switching all the helicopters from pursuit to follow mouse and see if I'm better at controlling them than the game's AI is. But switching them over is super annoying because you can't just use the hotkey, because patrol is between pursuit and follow mouse, which actually locks you out of using hotkeys, so I have to click every single one. And I have no idea why these two are just stuck up here in the corner. I'm certain that I've switched every single helicopter over now. But apparently, my own control is actually worse because I quickly got overwhelmed by all the ZOMGs, so I guess I'll be switching them back to pursuit then. It's a good thing anyways, because that makes it easier to focus on actually activating the special abilities, and this is actually kind of crazy, but pursuit is really doing a better job than I realized. Eventually, I got to the point where I only had 9 support Chinooks left, and by round 168, I was replacing the last of them with Apaches while sitting on 450,000 extra lives. So I'm really curious to see just how much further those are going to let the Apaches actually get. But I do want to be honest, if you are better at controlling the helicopters with follow mouse than I am, I'm sure that would allow you to get further, so I understand my skill issue is sort of a limiting factor here. And honestly, so is time. Because in theory, I could keep restarting every round until I got lucky enough to barely bleed any lives or none at all, and only then allow the game to go on to the next round, which would take several extra hours, but obviously that would allow the helicopter to get even further with all of his extra lives. So I am sorry I can't always get every little bit out of each tower. This video has just been such a massive project, and I'm already getting close to being 100 hours in if you include all the time I wasted on certain towers, like the sniper and bomb. With all that being said though, the Apaches ended up getting to round 201, which I'd say is quite a respectable milestone given the competition they're up against. Up next we have the Engineer, which also has its own way to generate extra income in the form of the balloon trap. You can probably tell from the name, but this upgrade also doubles as a really powerful defensive tool against all non-Moab class balloons. It's also a lot cheaper than the supply crate or support Chinook, so I was able to quickly get my first one up, although the Engineer is so powerful in the early game that the balloons aren't even reaching far enough to actually get into the trap. Regardless though, I was able to get down a few more as well, but quickly noticed how annoying it is to actually try placing Engineers when all the sentries keep spawning everywhere and getting in your way, so I quit out of the game so I could actually sell them all and get a bunch of 0-0s ready. Now, someone in my comments said that the Engineer special this building makes the cleansing foam extremely powerful, and when I tested it out in sandbox mode, they were right. The same amount of 3-1 Engineers destroyed a 0MG more quickly than the 2-3s did. So I'll be filling the map with cleansing foam Engineers, which I can upgrade to balloon traps as I go on. Unfortunately, I already know this is going to make the game lag a lot, potentially even as badly as the Spike Factory did, so I'm definitely not looking forward to that. The Engineer is also one of those towers where you have to be absolutely pixel perfect to fit the most possible, so that's been extremely annoying to deal with as well, just like the Sniper Monkey was. But once I had them setup, I already was making so much money from the balloon traps that it was easy to begin upgrading more of the towers, well, into balloon traps, although I also started getting overclocks as well, because I think their special ability will be worth using on the engineers themselves in order to make them attack faster. Just like I had suspected, the game did begin getting pretty laggy with all the cleansing foams as well, so I stopped recording for a little while, and I also tried to wait until it was necessary to upgrade the remaining 0-0 engineers. And I soon began to realize that the balloon traps really make a huge difference defensively here, honestly, because they can collect all the regular balloons and leave the cleansing foam to deal with all the Moab class balloons, along with just catching all the ceramics that are about to escape. In fact, I quickly realized they were the only thing keeping me alive, and I wasn't getting any use out of the overclocks after all, so I filled the entire map with 4-1 engineers, skipping over the range upgrade because that actually makes the engineers spawn the balloon traps too far away from the ceramic balloons that I need them to catch. And you can really start to see just how many balloons they're actually capturing just from the sheer amount of balloon traps that I'm getting every second when I click down. It's like 10 or more of them, all with $600+ worth of balloons inside. Surely this is taking care of thousands of ceramic balloons that could be trying to escape otherwise. This ultimately got the engineer to round 135, and I believe that is about the limit for it, based on my current knowledge of the game at least. We're on our second to last tower now with the balloon chipper, which is known for being incredibly overpowered to the point where it wasn't even included in BTD6. But one thing this tower can't do is actually pop camo balloons without the help of a radar scanner village. But something else that is nice is that just like the mortar monkey, the balloon chipper does gain the ability to daze balloons thanks to its specialist building. And this makes them move a lot slower upon being released from it. Now, I'm just gonna put my theory out there, and if I'm wrong, so be it. The balloon chipper is incredibly powerful against Moab class balloons, with a 4-2 literally one-tapping Moabs, but I don't know if this tower is going to be so good at handling all the ceramics you have to deal with, especially during free play. So in addition to getting the 4-2 Moab funnels, I'll also have to get some 2-4s with the super vac ability that can suck in a ton of balloons at once. Of course, the first Moab balloon on round 46 was no issue, but then something kind of funny happened. A few rainbow regrows on round 49 turned into an entire regrow farm, so I sold my Moab funnel to get another triple barrel chipper, and I also sold the super vac since it literally did nothing to help when I activated on the rainbows last time, but the chipper still created a huge regrow farm, so feel free to lecture me in the comments, but I don't really know how to even get past round 49 with this tower. And finally, it's time for the last tower of our video, the monkey sub. Just like with the Buccaneer, I'm going to be playing on flooded lane again, and I really expect this tower to do quite well, honestly. Air per starts is already a really cheap and powerful upgrade against the early game, and with the monkey sub specialist building, they now split into 4 instead of just 3. Additionally, the submerged sub can now shock regrow balloons into normal ones in addition to removing camo. This tower also has an upgrade that I always thought was kind of overpowered, which is the advanced intel, because this allows the sub to fire at balloons that are not just within its own range, but the range of any tower on the map. So in other words, every submarine is going to have global range. So it's a good thing that the specialist building also makes their projectiles move 25% faster. As if all of this wasn't enough, the 4th tier upgrade on the right path gives you the first strike ability, which is capable of one-shotting ZOMGs at least before free play. Also, can we just appreciate how many things in this game are named after real weapons of war? I mean, like Ground Zero, Apache Dart Ship, first strike capability. I mean, seriously, this all went right over my head as a young kid. But in any case, my plan is to fill the map with 2-3 subs, which should have the best overall firepower for their price, and then I'll start upgrading them into first strike abilities. After round 82, I actually sold my 4-2 sub since there won't be any more camo balloons, and pretty soon, the round 85 ZOMG was taken down, so now it's time to see how far we can actually go. Only, there was just one issue. The subs are actually struggling to catch all the ceramics, and they've already lost just a couple rounds into free play. So I'm gonna try selling all the 2-3s and getting 2-2s, because maybe the ballistic missile isn't actually worth getting yet. And yeah, it turns out the army of 2-2 subs is actually enough to keep going further. So pretty soon, I filled the entire map with them, and now of course, I'm gonna start getting more ballistic missiles again to add extra firepower, since there isn't any more room for new submarines anymore. With all these projectiles on screen though, the game is getting nice and laggy, just like I've become used to. I was kind of surprised by this, but they actually ended up failing on just round 129, I guess because at this point, the free play rounds will send you several big waves of ZOMGs, so now it's time to upgrade a bunch of these subs into first strike abilities, which I guess I should also target to strong, so they can take out the ZOMGs more quickly. You can really see just how miserable the gameplay becomes whenever the towers are dealing with ceramics, and keep in mind this is without fast forward mode being enabled, but then when the Moabs come out, it's actually completely fine. Now, I really just want to say, if you're still here with the video, thank you so much. We must be getting pretty close to the 1 hour mark at this point, and if you fell asleep to the video, well hey, that still helps it reach more people, so just know you're appreciated either way. Now, I quickly realized I'd gotten the first strikes in a bad spot, because it's easy for weaker balloons to get in the way of them hitting ZOMGs, so I sold the ones up here and put them near the entrance instead, which is also near the exit on this map, so the explosion should also be able to help catch escaping ceramics. Ultimately, the monkey sub ended up reaching round 139, which concludes our testing of every tower's limit in BTD5. And I know this wasn't a perfect test, but I was literally the first person to ever do it, so I'm really hoping that this video could spark some new discourse around the game and allow everyone to share their own personal best with each tower in the comments below. Now, let's take a quick look at our leaderboard. In first place, we have the Dartling Gunner, which made it all the way to around 270, although apparently it can get even much further than that as well, so Hunter, if you're watching, please let me know. In second place, we have the Monkey Ace at round 227, and taking the bronze in third, the Super Monkey with round 210. I also want to give the Helicopter a shout out for being the only other tower to hit round 200, and I'm not going to list off every single one, but it's on screen if you've only been listening to the video and you want to see every single ranking. And I also will say, there were only 2 towers, other than the Village and Farm of course, that couldn't even make it past round 85, with those being the Glue Gunner, which of course fails to round 46, and then the Balloon Chipper, which for me, kept creating a regrow farm on round 49. Today we're going to find out just how far a map filled with every 0-0 tower can go in BTD5, and to make things interesting, each tower is going to be getting a 0-3 MIB village with enhanced range in the center of the map, so that way they'll at least be able to pop camo and lead balloons. The first tower we're going to be starting off with is the Dart Monkey, and you can already see that getting them all placed down is probably the biggest challenge of this whole video, and something that's important to note with this tower is that it gets a huge boost from its specialist building, as the Dart Monkey is now equipped with explosive darts, which should have a decent amount of extra pierce compared to their regular projectile. Now I just want to say, this video was obviously inspired by the Neo God, shout out to all the effort he puts into his videos. And coming into this video, I was honestly expecting the Dart Monkeys to already start struggling with something basic like the first Moab, but that assumption could not have been further from true. As round 46 passed by so quickly, I hardly even noticed it. And you can tell the balloons aren't making it that far yet by looking at just how many of the Dart Monkeys that still remain in their default position. Round 60 marks the first BFB in this game, and that too didn't really present any challenge for our 0-0 army. Now if you've seen Neo God's video, you might expect round 63 to be nearly unbeatable, with it having 3 dense rushes of ceramic balloons. But with their explosive darts, the 0-0 Dart Monkeys really had no issue here either, nor did they with the packed regrow ceramics on round 76. So now, there are really just a few rounds left before we have to face the first ZOMG on round 85. And after that, we'll be entering true free play mode, which consists of random waves of ceramics, Moabs, BFBs, and ZOMGs. That's why I'm establishing a 3-strike rule when it comes to failing past round 85. Because the tower can easily fail once because it got unlucky RNG, but once it has failed a total of 3 times during free play, the tower will officially be out. I wasn't sure what to expect on round 85, but the Dart Monkeys still have no real issue taking down an entire ZOMG. So now the question is whether they can handle multiple. Free play always starts out with a relatively low RBE compared to what's coming past round 100, so you often don't have to face ZOMGs, at least on the first couple rounds of it, but there were 3 on round 87, and that still went down pretty easily, along with another 5 on round 89, but soon after, the Dart Monkeys were facing 2 different waves of ZOMGs at once, in addition to all the other balloons, and they were still putting up a great fight with all things considered, but 0-0 Dart Monkeys ended up suffering their first loss on round 94. So I tried it again, and they got lucky enough to beat it this time, along with round 95, but then the Dart Monkeys lost twice in a row on round 96, marking their second and third strike, which means that they're officially out at this point. Next up we have the Tac Shooter, which was quite a pain to set up, because this tower's hitbox is smaller than it looks, so you have to place them pixel perfectly in order to fit the most possible in certain areas, and when I got to the bottom of the map, I thought you could only fit 4 of them vertically, so I moved the bottom 2 rows to be closer to the bottom of the track so more of their shots will hit, but then I realized there is literally 1 pixel of space to fit a 5th one, so I repositioned certain tac shooters and got as many jammed in there as I could. All in all, it took me 47 minutes just to get the entire map filled. And was it worth spending so much time trying to get it perfect? Well, if you like and subscribe, it definitely will be. Now I'm going to toss my theory for this tower out there right now. I think the tack shooter is going to struggle more against ceramic balloons because it doesn't get anything like explosive darts, but if it can actually get to free play, I do think that it's going to do a lot better against the actual Moab class balloons because it can fire 8 tacks at once, which means it does 8 damage per shot as a 0-0 tower. And I think that's the highest of any in the entire game. It took me a little while to realize though, I actually hadn't activated the tack shooter special this building yet, so I took care of that and also filled up this little area on the right that I had neglected to before. And pretty soon, they were taking care of the BFB without any issues. But like I had suspected, the round 63 ceramics were a lot tougher for the tack shooter, but nevertheless, they were still able to take out all of the ceramics, so they're not going to be losing to round 63 at least. And it didn't take too long after that before they were facing the round 85 ZOMG, and with how quickly they were able to dispatch it, I think it's fair to say I was right about this tower being better against the Moab class balloons. But in free play mode is where the theory is going to truly get tested. I feel like the tack shooters were getting a bit unlucky compared to the dart monkeys, as they already had to face 2 waves of ZOMGs on round 91, but this is where they proved their value by taking it down quite confidently. And on round 93, they had to face 12 ZOMGs at once, and here you can really see just how strong the tack shooter is, even as a 0-0 tower. But surprisingly, they would end up failing for the first time on round 96, which is where the dart monkey ultimately got to as well. So hopefully the tack shooter does something with its next 2 tries, and that it definitely will, managing to get all the way to round 100 before failing twice here, probably because of how much the RBE has increased by this point. Now it's time to see what the sniper monkey can do, and this should be an interesting tower because it has global range, so every sniper will be constantly able to damage the balloons at once. It also does an extra damage point per shot thanks to the sniper's special this building, which effectively increases the damage output of a 0-0 by 1.5 times. So I'm curious to see what this tower can actually do. It's hard to see the full power of the sniper in these early rounds though, because there aren't that many balloons coming out yet for them to shoot, but let me show you guys what happens when a Moab tries to get on screen. Did you see it? Well, here, I'll slow it down for you. Yeah, that's actually kind of insane when every sniper gets to damage the same target at once. So as you would imagine, the BFB on round 60 didn't pose any threat either, but of course the real question is, how will this tower handle the round 63 ceramic balloons? Well, I thought it was going to struggle a lot more, but with so many of them firing at once, all the ceramics went down without any issues at all. And not even the ZOMG could survive for more than like a second with every sniper hitting it at once. So now I'm really curious, just how well can this tower do in free play? But there is just one issue with the sniper, which is that it really starts to struggle when it has to face a huge amount of balloons at once. During the regular rounds, this never became an issue, but in free play, that's quickly changing, with them experiencing their first loss on round 92. On their second try, they were able to eke out a couple more rounds, but ended up failing twice on 95, putting the sniper monkey in a surprising last place out of our first 3 towers. Now the boomerang might be a little stronger than you expect, because this tower's specialist building allows it to throw 2 rangs at once, which makes it the only specialist building that literally doubles the popping power of its respective tower. So if we fit 200 boomerangs for example, it's really going to be like having 400. Now I just wanted to point this out, but I know it looks like I missed a couple spots. However, for some reason, this map has something that blocks you from placing a tower even though it doesn't look like anything should be in the way and a couple random spots on it, so you have to work around those, and also, I cannot fit 4 of them vertically at the bottom no matter how hard I try. And since the boomerang has a larger hitbox than the first 3 towers, it also can't fit any extras over here on the right either. Now I have to say, this tower is looking quite powerful so far, not allowing pretty much any of the early balloons to even make it on screen, and the first Moab was taken down quite quickly as well. The same thing goes for round 60 with the first BFB, and the packed ceramics on round 63 also aren't looking to be much of an issue. I'm not exactly sure how the boomerang is going to hold up during free play, but I think it might have a decent chance of becoming our new record holder. Pretty soon it was time to face the first ZOMG on round 85, and that also went down without any issues, although I think it's fair to say the boomerang is getting kind of unlucky with it already having to face a few more ZOMGs on the first round of free play, but they were able to survive here as well. However, just 2 rounds later, that would no longer be the case. On their second try, the boomerangs beat 1 more round before failing again, which is also what happened with the third try. So, I was wrong. Round 90 is quite opposite of being the best tower so far. In fact, it's actually the worst now, and I think it's mainly because the boomerang just can't keep up once there are so many ceramics to deal with. Next up is the ninja monkey, which actually gains a pretty interesting activated ability from its specialist building. And this is the ability to create a 0-0 clone of itself, which in this case just means a regular clone. Now it's important to note, this clone does not last super long, so it won't double the ninja's popping power, but we'll see just how far they can make it without abilities, and then I'll begin using them once it's actually necessary. Just like the boomerang, the ninja is doing really well against the early game, but I don't want to jinx it, so I won't venture any guesses here. I do just want to say really quick though, I don't normally push my own stuff very often, but I do have channel memberships if you're ever interested in joining, and I also want to shout out Smooth and Shurikenlord, who have both been members for several months now. I also have a creator code, which is code Phenom in the BTD6 and Bloons Card Storm shops, so if you're ever making a purchase in one of those games, you can use that code to help support the channel further. Of course, I want to make it clear, I also greatly appreciate if you just engage with the video, so maybe leave a comment to let me know what you think of it so far. But for everyone who's just listening, the ninjas did a good job of tearing through all the normal benchmark rounds, and even in the early free play rounds, they were still holding up pretty solidly. But on round 95, the balloons became a bit too much for them to handle, and this doesn't count as one of their strikes since I wasn't using the abilities yet. Although when I tried, they actually got really unlucky with how high the round's RBE was, and ended up failing again to 95, even with all the extra 0-0 ninjas being spawned. But thankfully, with their second attempt, they were able to clear this round and ended up reaching all the way to 99, just one round short of the tack shooter. So this is it. One shot for one round to tie, or 2 rounds to take the lead. And they are going to take out 99, but I'm not too confident with the RBE of round 100 being so huge, and yeah, the ninja and tack shooter are going to have to settle for a tie. Now we're going to find out just how strong the 0-0 bomb tower is. This one also gets an activated ability from its specialist building, but if you're in the know about BTD5, this ability is sort of notorious because by doubling the bomb tower's range, you actually make the tower more prone to missing shots if it doesn't have the missile launcher upgrade, since the regular bomb is a pretty slow projectile. However, I'm still going to test out whether or not it can help us during free play. The first Moab and BFB weren't too bad, and something I quickly noticed is just how well the bomb tower actually does against round 63, since it's aiming for a much larger target in the form of a whole row of ceramic balloons. The bombs can now take advantage of their superior peers compared to pretty much every other 0-0 in the game. I was curious what was going to happen on round 84, but they also handled that fairly well, and the reason I say this is because this round does have 50 Moabs and 10 BFBs, so it's actually a pretty decent test for a lot of towers. And with that being said, the ZOMG definitely survived for a very long time, since the bombs have a low overall DPS thanks to their slow rate of fire, but they did succeed in taking it down, and free play is where things really began to get more interesting. Because the bomb tower has so much pierce, each shot it takes is damaging several of the Moab class balloons at once, so they ended up making it all the way to round 96, which is tied with how far the tack shooter made it without failing. So now let's see if their activated ability actually helps, because I think the bomb tower is a lot less likely to miss a ZOMG than it would be with regular balloons. And yeah, sure enough, this is helping them to actually survive even longer, all the way to round 100 in fact. So now I really want this tower to finally break past that mark, as it still has 2 more tries left. Unfortunately, on our second attempt, that's just not going to be possible. So now it all comes down to this last try, and I think the bombs are getting lucky with only 1 wave of ZOMGs, so yes, finally, round 100 has been taken down by a group of 0-0 towers. Round 101 was also a lot closer than I expected, all things being considered, but this is ultimately where the bomb tower will have to end up failing for good. Now, both the Ice Monkey and Glue Gunner cannot damage balloons as a 0-0 tower, even with an MIB village, so I hope you can understand I'm gonna save myself some time by not filling the map with them, as they'd both fail by round 10 regardless. The Buccaneers are first of 2 water-based towers, so I'm playing on the map Flooded Lane, as this should allow us to place the most water towers of any map in the game. Now I just want to point out, with its specialist building enabled, the Buccaneer is the only 0-0 tower in the game that can actually pop camo lead balloons, as level 3 grants all towers camo detection, and level 4 turns the main dart projectile into a flaming cannonball. However, I am still placing a village in the center of this map, since every other tower is getting one, it would feel unfair if this one didn't, but if I wasn't allowing the village for this challenge at all, the Buccaneer would be absolutely goated. But unfortunately, this tower is instead being nerfed by the fact that it has to be played on a different map, which of course has a shorter track length, so if anything, it probably won't get as far as our other towers. But to be fair, they are handling the ceramics really well, and the first Moab also didn't give any trouble, neither did the first BFB, and thanks to all the pierce of their projectiles, round 63 was also solid. But pretty soon, my theory was going to be proven right, as on just round 86, they already failed for the first time. Then, something kind of funny happened. When the Buccaneer got literally the best RNG ever on its second try, with round 86 now only having an RBE of just 29,000, which is less than half of what round 84 has. So naturally, all they had to face were Ceramics and Moabs, which they had no issue at all against, but then on round 87, they did actually face a proper round with a few ZOMGs, and managed to actually just barely take it down. But that would prove to be their limit, as round 88 would cause the Buccaneer to fail 2 more times, marking its final point. The Monkey Ace is also going to be a bit limited, not by having to play on a different map, but rather the fact that you really can't fit that many of them because they have such a large hitbox. However, without their special building, this tower would probably be really bad. But thankfully, each Monkey Ace now has a machine gun that can fire at nearby balloons, in addition to its main attack. And I gotta say, that machine gun is definitely quite powerful in the early game at least, as none of the balloons are even getting a chance to make it on screen. The Moab got destroyed more quickly than I've seen by anything other than the Sniper Monkey, which is pretty great because the Ace shouldn't have that same weakness to group balloons that the Sniper does either. And round 63 is a perfect test for that, which they passed with flying colors. So now I'm starting to get excited about the potential of the Monkey Ace to really do something big here. And sure enough, the round 85 ZOMG was also no match for this tower. During free play, they continued handling things really well, making it all the way to 98 before suffering their first fail. So now, the Ace is poised to potentially set a new record, and that it would indeed pull off, making it to round 102 before failing for the second time, and then managing to get to 103 for its final mark. So not a huge jump, but still a new record nonetheless. Now I'm really curious what the Super Monkey is going to be able to do. Considering this tower also has a high rate of fire, along with you being able to fit way more of them on the map than what was possible with the Monkey Ace. And sure enough, they are absolutely tearing through these early rounds as well, once again making it impossible to even see the balloons on screen before they have already been destroyed. In fact, I think the Super Monkeys took down the Moab even faster than the Monkey Ace did, so, as you could probably guess, the same went for the first BFB, and round 63 was also destroyed in record time. And with the way they're handling the first ZOMG, I'm pretty excited to see what the Super Monkey can do coming into free play. You can always tell after the first few rounds of it whether or not a tower is actually going to go the distance, and I'd say this one definitely is, as the first free play ZOMGs are still being handled quite well. In fact, it wasn't until all the way on round 110 that the Super Monkey suffered its first loss, then managing to get to 112 and then to 114 with its final attempt, putting this tower into a pretty clear first place so far. The Monkey Apprentice, which I'll always call the Wizard Monkey, is a tower that I'm a lot less confident in though. But to be fair, its specialist building does add a Seeking Bolt attack that significantly increases the damage output of a 0-0, so I do think that should make a pretty huge difference at least. Now, I think in the early game, the Wizard Monkey was actually doing better than average as they destroyed the first Moab pretty quickly, but definitely not as fast as like the Super Monkey or Ace did. Although I know that doesn't mean anything, considering the Sniper could nearly instantly destroy an entire ZOMG, and it still didn't go as far as the Ace or the Super Monkey. But with that being said, the Wizard Monkey continued performing well against the standard rounds that I use as benchmarks, but you can already kind of tell where it's gonna fail. Or at least I can, after watching so many 0-0 towers go before it. Like, this tower definitely isn't going to fail before free play, but it also isn't going to make it very far once it gets there either. But I've been proven wrong a couple times in this video, so let's hope that's the case here and the Wizard somehow gets to round 110 or something. Okay, well, that's not really possible when it's already losing on 93, but to be fair, a second try got the Wizards to 96, and then on their third, 98. So I think getting to nearly round 100 is actually quite respectable in this challenge. Of course, just like with the Ice Monkey and Glue Gunner, the Monkey Village and Banana Farm both don't have a way to damage balloons as a 0-0. In fact, the farm never can deal damage, so these towers would also fail on round 10. Now the Mortar I'm pretty curious about though, because its ability to damage Moab class balloons, especially as a 0-0, isn't going to be very significant. However, with its specialist building enabled, this tower actually has targeting options now. This means that every mortar can attack the incoming balloons at once, without any micro required on my end. So that's going to give them a chance to actually do something decent here, at the very least. Now I do have to say, The first Moab on round 46 actually completely subverted my expectations, as it was taken down much more quickly by the mortars compared to the resulting ceramics, which ended up being a little bit more difficult. But I think that's because global range towers can all lock onto a Moab class balloon at the same time, but only one can lock onto a regular balloon at a time, which is the same reason why the snipers could basically one-shot ZOMGs, but fail to the ceramics right after. Now thankfully, this tower has a lot of pierce, just like the bomb tower does, so round 63 still went down really fast, and round 76 was actually kind of trippy to watch because a wave of balloons would be regrowing through the rush each time they were hit. Thankfully, that regrowth was slower than the damage output of the mortars, and after that, they were taking down the round 85 ZOMG as well, but this triumph would be quite short-lived, because just one round later, they had already failed, and while retrying did get us through one more round, the mortar would ultimately fail to round 87 twice, making its final defeat here. But the Dartling Gunner should be a lot more powerful, although it's up to me to control it, so I hope I don't hold this tower back or anything. Although you really don't get to control the Dartling Gunner's aim as much when you don't have the focus firing upgrade available anyways. Now, I think this is looking to be our craziest tower yet. I mean, not only are these early balloons getting instantly destroyed, but even the Moab had basically zero time to appear on screen. And this trend continued through round 60 with the first BFB, round 63 with all those packed ceramics, round 76 with its own rush of regrow packed ceramics, and pretty soon, it continued all the way through the round 85 ZOMG as well. So now, it's time to see what this tower is truly capable of. I guess I should slow down the game now so I can actually make sure none of the balloons escape, and what I'm doing is basically trying to attack the larger balloons for as long as possible, and then I'll flick the Dartlings over to catch ceramics that are about to leak. And I ended up reaching round 108 before failing for the first time. And you can see eventually, there are just too many balloons for them to catch everything. But on my second try, I was able to get to round 112, and on my third, 113. And if you saw last week's video, you might remember I ended up using a map that's called Maze for the Dartling Gunner to get further, so I'm also going to try that for this video. I do think this is still the second longest map in the game behind Express Shipping, which is the one I've been using, but it also has the advantage of stacking all the balloons on top of each other, which should really help to keep the Dartling Gunner from having to chase down the ceramics so much. At first I was hopeful, but soon realized that this map is definitely not going to be better for the 0-0s, as they were already starting to struggle on round 95 and had failed for the first time by round 98, a full 10 rounds earlier than on Express Shipping. I think the spike factory is going to be interesting, as the 0-0s are now able to produce some full spike piles due to the fact that their special disbuilding increases every spike pile by 50%, and they also get a 40% chance of having double popping power thanks to my monkey knowledge lab being maxed out. So the way this works is that the full piles actually pop 14 balloons each, because a 0-0 normally produces piles of 5, which get an extra 50% popping power, and then the resulting 7.5 has a 40% chance of being doubled to 14 by the 40% popping power increase in the monkey lab. And thus, I really wonder how far this tower is actually going to be able to make it. But with all these spike piles comes a very common enemy of BTD YouTubers, which is of course lag. Thankfully though, it's nothing compared to last week's video, so I really can't complain honestly. Now, I was wondering how the spike factories would do against the first Moab, but even a small amount of spike piles was able to destroy it pretty easily. And I honestly started to get really confident in this tower after I saw the way it handled the first BFB as well. But pretty soon, free play started to expose the Spike Factory's weakness to large quantities of balloons, with them failing for the first time on round 88, and then twice more on round 90. Now the helicopter is probably my least favorite tower to deal with in a challenge like this, because they love getting in the way when I'm trying to see where to actually place each one down. But one thing that should help them get further is the fact that their special disbuilding makes the helicopter's landing pad have a 20% smaller hitbox, so more of them are able to fit on the map. And I'm not exactly sure how this tower is going to do, but I feel like even as a 0-0, it's going to be somewhat powerful, which is why they're the second most expensive in the game if you don't include the village. So with that in mind, I am hoping for a decent result here at least. Now, it's going to be hard for you to actually tell what's going on, but I will say, the helicopter is looking really strong in the early game, taking down the first ceramics in Moab really quickly, at least I think. I mean, the helicopters are kind of in my way too, but it's a lot easier to tell with the first ZOMG, and yeah, clearly the helicopter has a good bit of firepower. In last week's video, I found that pursuit was way better than my own control, so this time, I'm going to try controlling the helicopters the same way that it does, by keeping them on top of whatever balloons are first and kind of flicking them back and forth. and from what I can tell, this actually worked really well, as I never lost to something like a few random ceramics leaking, but instead, it took over 1 million RBE on round 106 to make it impossible for the helicopter to defeat all the ZOMGs. On their second try, they got a bit luckier with a lower RBE, but the next round was able to take them out twice, marking their final defeat as round 107. The engineer is one of the smaller towers in the game, so we can fit quite a few of them down, but it's just a shame that they won't be getting any help from their sentries today. Still though, I think this could be a solid tower, but I'm definitely not expecting any records out of it. Their performance in the early game is solid, well, I just said that, didn't I? But if you remember what I was saying about the wizard monkey, it's the same thing with the engineer. You can tell that it's not going to fail before free play, but once it starts and really starts picking up intensity, this tower is not going to be able to survive. Now for everyone who's still with me, I just want to say how much I appreciate the support on last week's video. At the time I'm writing this, it's a bit over 5 days old and is already about to hit 50,000 views, which for me is pretty insane. I think nearly 500 new people have subscribed from that as well, and if you're one of them, let me know in the comments, cause I'm really glad to have you with the channel. Now as far as the engineer goes, they performed like I was anticipating. Of course, they weren't going to fail to the ZOMG. And at first, they even actually looked pretty decent in free play. Since their projectile has a solid amount of pierce, I believe it's 4 as a 0-0 tower, they're able to shoot through 4 Moab class balloons at once. But as soon as the going got tough, they buckled under round 94 and then twice more on 95. A solid result though, nonetheless. The balloon shipper is a bit of a sad case though, as it can't damage Moab class balloons as a 0-0 at all. But I am still going to fill the map with them so we can see the chipper against regular balloons. However, it's still going to fail on round 46 with the first Moab regardless. Or at least that's what I thought, until I learned that the balloon chipper is the only tower that doesn't gain the ability to pop lead balloons from an MIB village, so it's actually going to fail even earlier on round 37 instead. And finally, the monkey sub, which of course is the other water-based tower in this game besides the Buccaneer. Now, I can't pretend like I expect it to do very well either, because this tower is not very good as a 0-0 with a relatively slow firing projectile that I believe only has 2 pierce. The sub also doesn't really gain any value from its special disbuilding when it doesn't have any upgrades, along with it having to play on a shorter map as well. And while they did handle the really early balloons just fine, even the first ceramics are able to make a little bit of progress on rounds 40 and 43. And while they did handle the first Moab and BFB decently, the packed ceramics on round 63 got as close to leaking as possible, and it really looked like round 76 was going to be too much, but somehow we barely survived with a third of our lives left. And another wave of ceramics on round 78 proved to be way too much for them to handle, making the sub our only tower besides the balloon chipper that can deal damage, but cannot make it to free play as a 0-0. And now, let's take a look at our leaderboard. If you've just been listening to the video and want to see every result, now's the time to take a look at your screen. In first place, winning by just 1 round, we have the Super Monkey, which got all the way to round 114 as a 0-0. And right behind it is the Dartling Gunner with its own record of round 113. In third place, getting to round 107, is the Helicopter. And like I was just saying a minute ago, there were only 2 towers that couldn't make it to free play out of every tower that's capable of dealing damage. Those were the Bloon Chipper with just round 37, and the Monkey Sub at round 78. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also be interested to know how I beat BTD5 without any monkeys at all. I really want to beat the hardest map in BTD5, Tar Pits, while playing on Impoppable difficulty with Mastery Mode enabled. However, I currently lack the skill and dedication that's required to pull this off. But thankfully, gaming has come up with a little solution for problems like this, and it's called pay to win. Lucky for me, BTD5 allows you to directly buy cash injections by using your own monkey money, and it only costs 500 monkey bucks to get 10,000 in-game cash. Now a reasonable person might buy 2 or 3 injections so they can easily farm in the early game while still securing a win that's somewhat respectable. But that's not what pay to win is all about, so I bought 30 injections instead. This should allow me to afford both the Monkey Temple upgrade itself and all the towers you need to sacrifice in order to maximize its strength. You've got $30,000 worth of wizards, glue gunners, mortar monkeys, ice monkeys, and other towers. And I decided to be efficient here by choosing the village for this, because the temple can actually absorb the jungle drums, monkey fort, and monkey town upgrades to use for itself. Now there's only one thing left to do, which is sit back, relax, and let this maxed out temple do all the work for me. this isn't very good. It's already failed on just round 47. But apparently, the temple still needs a village with the monkey beacon upgrade to give it extra range, because it can't absorb that particular upgrade for whatever reason. So let's see if this helps it fare any better, now that it can reach the bottom left corner. There we go, round 47 wasn't so bad. Well, that's what I planned to say at least, until it failed literally one round later. It looks like some of these balloons are just too quick for a single temple to reach, so I bought 30 more injections to get myself a second one on the other side of the map. Having 2 of them is definitely making a huge difference, and I'm pretty happy to see just how quickly they destroy the round 60 ZOMG. Round 63 will also be a good test, as Mastery Mode turns the packed ceramics into Moabs, and again, the temples are having no issues so far. The end of round 65 becomes pretty crazy on Mastery Mode as well, and on a map like Tar Pits, where you have 5 different paths to defend at once, this is the kind of round where things get really difficult. Even though the temples are incredibly fast and powerful, they can only really handle one path at a time, which really gets exposed by round 77 having a ZOMG on nearly every path at once. Thankfully, I'm only going to have to buy around 20 injections this time, since I already have nearly 100,000 in-game cash, but I certainly hope 3 temples is going to be enough. I've already spent over 40,000 monkey money on cash injections now, which is a little over half of what I started with. And this is only the first challenge I'm doing in this video. I could always use the Dark Temple abilities, but that requires timing and thinking, and that's not in the spirit of pay to win. Round 77 still looks pretty tough even with 3 temples, but they're just barely gonna pull through. Everything past round 80 is gonna be pretty insane because the amount of ZOMGs we gotta deal with, but if they can make it through this, round 85 is actually going to be a bit easier because it still only has 5 ZOMGs like it normally would. It looks like I'm going to get lucky on round 84 with all 10 ZOMGs coming out on the same spot, which is allowing the 3 temples to focus a lot of their damage where it's most needed. I think they're actually going to do this, and boom, with round 84 down, like I said, round 85 is actually a good bit easier. I'm so thankful I didn't have to spend any more monkey money on this, and I think it's fair to say I now have the most illegitimate clear of tar pits in the history of BTD5. Another fun idea could be trying to buy enough extra lives to survive without doing anything, which someone suggested in the comments of my newest video. Now you can't buy extra lives on Impoppable, and I put all the rounds into a Google Sheet since I was curious how many lives you'd need for hard mode, and well, it's not looking very good to say the least. At just over 535,000 lives, and the worst part is, you only get 200 lives for 300 monkey money, meaning it would cost over 800,000 monkey money just to pull this off. But if you played on easy, and used fast track mode to skip the first 25 rounds, it would only be rounds 26 through 50, which would still require almost 30,000 lives, and I would have had enough monkey money for this had I not spent so much on the first challenge. It would probably also be kind of boring to just watch me literally do nothing for 24 rounds, so instead, I'm going to use all my premium upgrades, including the incredibly broken double cache, in order to beat another very difficult map on Mastery Mode, down the drain. You might be wondering why I only chose hard difficulty though, but I want to be able to earn extra lives from my banana farms, which of course doesn't work on Impoppable, so here we are. I also have my engineer specialist building enabled, allowing me to get by with a couple 1-0 towers while I focus on farming. And keep in mind, all the premium upgrades and the specialist buildings cost monkey money as well. On round 19, I got a village, and its range is just a tad bit bigger than normal now, but I figured this would allow me to make some of the farms cheaper, while also giving the engineers camo detection. I also placed the banana farmers in spots where they can place banana peels onto the track, and you guessed it, these also cost monkey money. Soon after, I had already got my first factory, but I could tell I was going to need more defense, so I got 2 super monkeys, which quickly turned into 2 sun gods. I also got a pretty interesting idea here. If I use the support Chinook abilities to get even more extra lives, I could potentially survive a round or 2 without any defense. Once I figured I had plenty of extra money, I sold all my farms for more helis, using their specialist building to make them 20% smaller. I wasn't using the space super efficiently, but I was able to get up to 10,000 lives pretty quickly. And while things didn't go quite as I had planned, I still had enough extra lives to tank round 85. This wasn't nearly as hands-off as the first challenge, but you can see how much of a difference having all those premium upgrades really made for me. Something else I want to try is beating the advanced map Mount Magma on Mastery Impoppable using nothing but the most expensive special agent in the game, the Bloons Tower Defense. Thankfully, I already happen to have 35 of them in stock as well. I chose the map Mount Magma because all the balloons come from one central point, which isn't very common once you get past the intermediate level. As you can see, not only does the special agent allow you to produce a powerful beam, but since I have the pro version unlocked, it also leaves behind a goo that's corrosive to balloons. I was curious how they fare against the Moab class balloons, but needless to say, they got absolutely vaporized. This happened to the BFB on round 46 as well, and even the round 60 ZOMG, surprisingly enough. So basically, all I really had to do was sit here hitting 1 on my keyboard to activate the beams from each tower, and they took care of literally everything. I'm not exaggerating when I say I didn't even move my mouse a single time, and thus, I was able to watch a YouTube video while mindlessly earning another illegitimate win. For my final pay to win glory, you might be wondering why I'm only playing on an intermediate map. Well, you see these 2 thrones in the center? Any tower that you place on them gets a modest 15% extra range, but also a much more prominent 5 times higher attack speed. I think it's actually a lot easier to tell when I turn off fast forward mode. So, I'll be using cash injections to get a max tempo once again, but I won't stop there this time. I'm also going to get an overclock engineer and a village with a call to arms ability, as both of these towers will allow the temple to attack much faster with their activated abilities. I'll also be using the dark temple ability that comes from the Super Monkey Lair specialist building, which has the same effect as the others. Just like the Bloons Tower Defense, this tower is obviously going to be incredibly broken, and even though it does require me to actually do a bit of work on my end, I still spent quite a bit of monkey money to ensure I don't actually have to think or have any real strategy, which of course is in the spirit of pay to win. The BFB on round 46 barely even had time to appear on screen without me even using the abilities. I've also seen at least a couple people saying that you can stack the engineer's abilities on top of each other, so I got 4 more overclocks to test it out. At the very least, there are definitely 5 effects visually appearing, so I guess they were right. Considering this map is very far from being Tar Pit's difficulty, the temple probably would be enough without any abilities or the throne itself, but it's always fun to go a little overkill. And I really wanted to see just how powerful the temple was going to be with all of its abilities active, so here it is attacking the round 84 ZOMGs with no abilities, and here it is with everything. I'd say there's a pretty noticeable difference. I figured I would keep playing past round 85 as well, and in mastery mode, each round in free play really does seem to take forever, but the tower had no problem making it to round 100, and if you want to see the absolute limits of this temple, make sure you click the video that appears on your screen.